A satisfied grin slowly spread across Joo-Heon's face. Forget the money, that relic knife would soon belong to him as well. Unable to contain his rage any longer, Kyung-tae charged forward with the blade raised high, fully intending to kill his former subordinate in a single strike. But Joo-Heon calmly sidestepped at the last possible second. The knife sliced through nothing but empty air. Before Kyung-tae could recover, Joo-Heon grabbed his wrist and twisted it with surprising force. Pain shot through Kyung-tae's arm as his balance crumbled. Looking almost disappointed, Joo-Heon remarked that he admired Kyung-tae's courage. After all, not many people were foolish enough to point a relic at him, forcing the knife's edge against Kyung-tae's throat. Seeing their boss completely overpowered, the surrounding gang members rushed forward to rescue him. In one swift motion, Joo-Heon snatched the relic knife from Kyung-tae's grasp. Holding it up before his eyes, he smiled. "Let me show you how it's actually supposed to be used." The moment he activated the relic, a mysterious blue mist wrapped itself around the blade. A strange light flashed across his eyes. Instantly, the world around him changed. The relic's power allowed him to see straight through the human body. Every gangster standing before him appeared as nothing more than exposed skeletons, covered with muscles, tendons, and internal organs. Every movement of their bodies became crystal clear. Just as the gang members prepared to attack, Joo-Heon's body suddenly began to dissolve into thin air. One moment he was standing there. The next, he had vanished completely. The gangsters froze in confusion, frantically looking around. Before anyone could figure it out, a sharp blade suddenly cut across several of their shoulders from behind. Cries of pain echoed through the street. Looking down at the relic knife, Joo-Heon couldn't help but grin. So it has another ability. Not only could it reveal the internal structure of living beings, but it also granted its wielder the power to conceal their presence. One of the gang members screamed in terror, insisting that the former subordinate had literally disappeared. Another man clutched his bleeding shoulder, shouting that he'd been cut. Holding the knife casually in front of him, Joo-Heon looked at the terrified gang with a calm smile. "So far, I've only given you a few scratches." His expression instantly turned cold. "But things can get much worse. If you don't want to die, hand over every last bit of the money." His icy voice sent chills down everyone's spine. Even Kyung-tae, whose nose was now bleeding from the earlier struggle, could only grit his teeth in frustration. His injured men silently nodded. Defeated, Kyung-tae reluctantly agreed to hand over everything. Night soon fell over the city. Stars shimmered above the sprawling metropolis, while lights glowed from the windows of countless buildings. Inside one of those buildings, a bright sign illuminated the entrance, as Kwon Kyung-ja stood holding her phone with an expression of complete disbelief. She couldn't believe what she had just heard. Her own subordinate had single-handedly defeated Kyung-tae's entire gang and stolen every bit of their money. To her, the story sounded completely absurd. There is absolutely no way that happened, she shouted through the phone. On the other end, Kyung-tae shut his eyes in frustration. Even he still couldn't understand what had happened. Yesterday, that kid barely knew how to throw a proper punch. But today, he had transformed into someone entirely different. Just remembering those cold eyes and overwhelming confidence sent a chill down Kyung-tae's spine. There had been something frightening in that boy's gaze. Trying to stay calm, Kyung-ja rubbed her forehead before asking the question that mattered most. How much did he take? Scratching the back of his head awkwardly, Kyung-tae admitted that Joo-Heon had taken everything. Not only the cash, but also the sample product they had been preparing for their upcoming deal. She cursed her useless brother before asking another urgent question. Did he take the Buddha statue too? Meanwhile, completely unaware of the panic he had caused, Joo-Heon calmly counted the stacks of money he had just collected. Looking down at the terrified gang members kneeling before him, he casually asked if they had anything else worth taking. The men exchanged nervous glances before timidly shaking their heads. Joo-Heon slowly turned toward Kyung-tae. His smile remained friendly, but his eyes weren't smiling at all. "If I find out you're hiding something, you're going to regret it." The threat alone was enough to make every gangster shudder. Just then, Joo-Heon's attention landed on a beautiful golden Buddha statue resting nearby. His eyes immediately lit up. It looked incredibly expensive. The moment Kyung-tae realized what he was looking at, his face turned pale. "Don't touch that." Ignoring the desperate plea, Joo-Heon simply smiled. "If you're begging me not to take it, then it must be worth quite a bit." Without another word, he picked up the statue. Kyung-tae nearly lost his mind. He desperately shouted for him to stop and demanded that he return the Buddha immediately. But Joo-Heon didn't even bother looking back. He simply walked away, carrying the statue under one arm. Back inside the office, Kyung-ja's face darkened the moment she heard the news. He took the Buddha too? Holding the phone nervously against his ear, Kyung-tae could only nod despite knowing she couldn't see him. With fury written all over her face, Kyung-ja ordered him to recover the statue immediately. No matter what it took, that Buddha had to be brought back. The following day, Joo-Heon walked into a nearby pawn shop carrying the golden Buddha statue. After examining it for several minutes, the appraiser casually placed it back on the table. With an indifferent shrug, he declared that the statue wasn't even worth 50,000 won. In fact, he suggested it would probably serve better as nothing more than a decorative ornament sitting on someone's shelf. Joo-Heon blinked in disbelief. How is that possible? The appraiser waved his hand dismissively. He explained that after years of experience, he could tell at a single glance whether something had value. According to him, nobody would ever pay serious money for that statue. Leaving the shop, Joo-Heon couldn't help but frown. Something didn't add up. Kyung-tae had acted as though this Buddha was worth millions. There was no way someone would panic over an ordinary ornament worth only 50,000 won. As he walked through the city streets, Joo-Heon let out a tired yawn. He stared at the Buddha statue in his hands. Maybe my appraisal ability failed, he muttered. After all, he still lacked a proper archaeological relic that could accurately identify hidden treasures. Just then, something strange caught his eye. A faint purple aura was leaking from inside the Buddha. Joo-Heon immediately stopped walking. Before he could react, a transparent notification window suddenly appeared in front of him. Reconnaissance skill activated suspicious object detected inside the statue. He blinked in surprise. Out of habit, he tried swiping the floating window away, but the notification remained. There really is something inside. Curious, he gently shook the Buddha. Faint rattling sound echoed from within. A grin slowly spread across Joo-Heon's face. So that's why Kyung-tae was so desperate. There was no way he'd lose his mind over something worth 50,000 won. Without hesitation, he pulled out the relic knife he had taken the previous night. If something valuable was hidden inside, there was only one way to find out. With a swift strike, the Buddha statue shattered into dozens of pieces. A nearby pedestrian stopped in shock, staring with his mouth hanging open as someone casually destroyed what appeared to be a golden statue in broad daylight. Among the broken fragments, a small glass bottle rolled onto the pavement. Joo-Heon picked it up and carefully examined its contents. His expression immediately changed. Inside was a highly concentrated liquid narcotic designed to be dripped onto cigarettes before smoking. Realization instantly dawned on him. So that's it. Kyung-tae hadn't been running an antique business at all. He had been using the statues to smuggle illegal drugs. Glancing around carefully, Joo-Heon couldn't help but think that every single decorative item in Kyung-tae's collection was probably stuffed with the same expensive narcotics. No wonder the man had been so desperate to recover the Buddha. With a knowing smile, Joo-Heon pulled out his phone. There was no reason to keep this discovery to himself. He immediately called one of his trusted contacts. Joo-Heon remembered something important. The government was currently offering a reward of nearly 100 million won to anyone who reported a major drug smuggling operation. Evening had settled over the city, and the lights inside the office were still burning brightly. The atmosphere was tense as Kwon Kyung-ja stood with a phone pressed against her ear, desperately trying to calm the furious person on the other end of the call. She insisted that the delay wasn't because the shipment wasn't ready. They simply couldn't move the goods yet. Someone had been following them, and making a move now would only expose their entire operation. The furious shouting coming from the phone was so loud that she instinctively closed her eyes. Turning away from everyone in the room, she apologized and promised that she would contact them again soon before ending the call. The moment the line disconnected, her expression twisted with frustration. A man sat quietly behind her, watching her reaction. Clicking her tongue, Kyung-ja cursed under her breath. She complained that she had absolutely no reason to keep all of the money for herself, yet everyone kept acting as though she had betrayed them. Just then, she heard movement behind her. Turning around, she froze. Standing in the doorway was her older brother. He wasn't alone. His face was swollen and covered in bruises. His wrists were locked in handcuffs, and 2 police officers stood behind him. Her expression instantly changed. What happened? Kyung-tae lowered his head with a defeated expression. The situation couldn't possibly get any worse. Before he could explain further, one of the officers stepped forward and presented his identification. Detective Jinwoo calmly introduced himself before explaining that they were investigating a large-scale illegal drug trafficking operation. Kyung-ja immediately spread her arms in protest. There must be some misunderstanding. The detective simply smiled. Holding up a bag containing the bottle recovered from the Buddha statue, he casually replied that criminals always tried to come up with excuses after they had already been caught red-handed. Then, his expression became serious. This isn't the only evidence. We're also investigating your storage facilities. Are the rest of the drugs hidden inside the warehouse? Hyung-ja silently gritted her teeth. Inside, however, she remained surprisingly calm. So they found out about the warehouse in Jongdo. That's fine. Every warehouse has its own access code. There's no way they'll be able to open them all. Confident in that fact, she crossed her arms and stared directly at the detective. If you don't have stronger evidence, then stop making false accusations. She reminded him that even the police had no right to interfere with a legitimate business without proper proof. For a brief moment, everything remained silent. Then, the radio clip to Detective Jung-woo's shoulder suddenly crackled to life. A voice echoed through the speaker. "Report, we've completed the inspection. Illegal narcotics have been discovered inside all 600 exhibits stored at Hwasong Art Gallery." The room fell silent. Hyung-ja's confident expression completely disappeared. The officers immediately moved in and secured her in handcuffs. Still struggling to process what she had just heard, she demanded to know how they had managed to open every storage room. Detective Jung-woo simply smiled. Closing his eyes for a brief moment, he answered calmly, "We had some help. Someone on the inside cooperated with us." Earlier that day, Joo-Heon had personally accompanied the police to the warehouse. One of the employees pointed toward a locked storage room and explained that the door had always remained sealed. Without saying a word, Joo-Heon walked straight toward it. He entered the password. Click! The heavy door unlocked immediately. The officers behind him looked at each other in confusion. One of them couldn't help but ask how he knew the password. Joo-Heon simply smiled. "I have a very good memory." It wasn't false modesty. His phenomenal memory had always been his greatest natural talent. Ironically, that very ability was one of the reasons Kyung-ja had hired him in the first place. Back when he worked for her company, he had been responsible for transporting goods between countless storage facilities. Each warehouse used a completely different security code. At first, it had been incredibly frustrating. Eventually, tired of constantly asking for passwords, he secretly wrote every single one down and memorized them all. At the time, it had simply been a way to make his job easier. He never imagined that one day, those same passwords would become the key to destroying the entire organization. One storage room after another, the police unlocked every door. Each room revealed exactly what Joo-Heon had expected. Boxes filled with expensive artifacts, each one secretly hiding illegal narcotics. Watching the officers uncover more evidence with every room they opened, Joo-Heon quietly smiled to himself. Everything was unfolding exactly according to his plan. Once the authorities finished their investigation, he would receive the enormous reward money, and with that money, he could finally begin hunting relics in earnest. One of the officers picked up another bottle and immediately confirmed that it contained drugs. Another officer shook his head in disbelief. These smugglers became far too confident. Turning toward Joo-Heon, the officer smiled. "You did the right thing by reporting this." Joo-Heon simply nodded. "I'm glad I could help." Then he hesitated for a moment before making one small request. The detective looked at him curiously. "What is it?" Meanwhile, Kyung-ja struggled furiously as the officers restrained her. She screamed that none of this made any sense and demanded to be released immediately. Just then, Detective Jung-woo's phone rang. After answering the call, he listened for a few seconds before looking back at her. Then he smiled. "My assistant wants to say something." He held the phone toward her. The moment she heard the familiar voice coming through the speaker, her face darkened. It was Joo-Heon. With a relaxed smile, he spoke into the phone. "You really should have treated your employees better." Kyung-ja's eyes narrowed with fury. Joo-Heon continued speaking. "And maybe you should have paid their salaries on time." Her eyes widened. "So this was all because of you?" Joo-Heon chuckled softly. "No, you just should have changed your warehouse passwords more often." Before ending the call, he left her with one final sentence. "Enjoy your stay in prison." The line disconnected. Kyung-ja completely lost control. Fighting against the officers holding her back, she screamed at the top of her lungs, "I'll kill you." Later that night, the city had grown quiet. Only the lights shining from apartment windows illuminated the streets as Joo-Heon casually walked home. His phone suddenly vibrated. He pulled it from his pocket and smiled after seeing the sender's name. It was Detective Jung-woo. The detective thanked him once again for helping expose the smuggling operation and informed him that the government reward for assisting with the investigation would be processed soon. Reading the messages, Joo-Heon couldn't help but smile. Jung-woo had always looked out for him. Soon, he would finally have the startup capital he desperately needed. Once he received the reward money, he could begin searching for relic tombs much sooner than expected, and after that, his future would finally begin to change. His smile slowly faded as another face appeared in his mind. Tae-jin, his former enemy. Joo-Heon's eyes hardened. "Just wait, I'll settle the score with you soon enough." Suddenly, he stopped walking. His eyes widened in disbelief. Standing on top of a small hill, he stared toward the neighborhood where his house was supposed to be. Then his face froze. What? Where did my house go? The entire residential district had disappeared. In its place stood an enormous mountain of golden sand stretching high into the sky. An ancient tomb had suddenly emerged from beneath the earth, swallowing the entire neighborhood in the process. Chaos erupted everywhere. Residents cried in confusion. Some people burst into tears after realizing their homes had vanished. Others began arguing with one another, ignoring the panic surrounding him. Joo-Heon quietly walked past the gathering crowd, his eyes fixed on the massive tomb towering before him. Unlike everyone else, he understood exactly what this meant. These people were terrified because this was the first time they had witnessed something like this. But Joo-Heon knew the truth. This was only the beginning. Soon, mysterious tombs would continue appearing across the entire world. Memories from his previous life came flooding back. He remembered exactly how everything had unfolded the first time. Back then, he had still been working under Kyung-tae. Kyung-tae had received a mysterious phone call. At the time, Joo-Heon hadn't thought much of it. When he finally returned home later that evening, everything had looked completely normal. The apartment buildings were still standing. Lights shone from every window, and there wasn't a single grain of sand in sight. Relieved, he had assumed nothing unusual had happened. Only much later did he learn the truth. A tomb had actually appeared in his neighborhood that very day. Someone had discovered it, entered it, cleared it, and made it disappear within just a few hours, before ordinary civilians ever realized it had existed. Now, standing before the massive tomb once again, after regressing to the past, Joo-Heon finally understood. Whoever had claimed that relic the first time was somewhere among the crowd right now, and this time, he had absolutely no intention of letting anyone beat him to it. Suddenly, loud shouting echoed through the streets. "Don't shoot." Joo-Heon turned toward the commotion. A soldier in full camouflage gear had raised his assault rifle and was pointing it directly at an unarmed civilian. Recognizing the terrified man immediately, Joo-Heon realized it was one of his neighbors. The soldier barked at everyone nearby. "Everyone stay where you are. Stop panicking and keep quiet." Without the slightest hesitation, Joo-Heon walked straight over. Before anyone could react, bam! His foot shot upward and slammed directly into the soldier's chin. The soldier was launched backward before crashing onto the ground. Silence instantly fell over the crowd. Everyone stared at Joo-Heon with their mouths hanging open. Even his neighbor, Kim, looked completely dumbfounded. Joo-Heon frowned at the fallen soldier. "What gives you the right to wave a machine gun around at civilians?" Then, as if nothing had happened, he turned toward Kim with a friendly smile. "It's been a while." Kim blinked in confusion. "What are you talking about? We literally saw each other a few days ago." From Joo-Heon's perspective, however, it truly had been a very long time. The soldier slowly climbed back to his feet while rubbing his aching jaw. Another soldier rushed over in concern. "Are you all right?" The dazed soldier wiped the blood from his mouth before apologizing awkwardly. "I don't know what came over me." Sweat trickled down his face as he tried to regain his composure. Ignoring the awkward atmosphere, Joo-Heon casually placed his hands on his hips. "So, why has the military mobilized so quickly?" That was the question bothering him the most. Had the Korean government already learned about the tombs, or were they simply reacting to an unexplained disaster? Standing among the frightened civilians, Joo-Heon continued questioning the soldier. "Have your troops already entered the tomb?" The soldier immediately stiffened. "I'm not authorized to discuss military operations." Joo-Heon simply looked away. So they're keeping everything confidential. His priority now wasn't gathering information anymore. It was getting inside the tomb before the government did. Straightening his posture, he spoke loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "This is our neighborhood. The residents deserve to know why soldiers carrying assault rifles suddenly surrounded our homes." The soldiers exchanged nervous glances. Joo-Heon then added another layer of pressure. "If necessary, I'll make sure your superiors hear about what happened here today." The soldiers visibly panicked, not wanting unnecessary trouble. One of them sighed before finally giving in. "We're here to destroy the structure. But before that, we have to recover something from inside. Don't worry, no civilians will be harmed." Joo-Heon stroked his chin thoughtfully. "Destroy it? So the government doesn't even understand what a tomb really is yet." The soldier continued speaking. "We've brought several scientists with us. They know much more about this phenomenon. Everything should go smoothly." Hearing that, Joo-Heon's understanding of the situation became much clearer. The government was completely inexperienced. They were blindly following the advice of researchers who understood almost nothing about relics. Smiling politely, he nodded. Thanks, you've been very helpful. The soldier scratched the back of his head awkwardly. Joo-Heon simply waved as he walked away. Good luck. The confused soldier even thanked him before realizing how strange that conversation had been. Kim hurried after Joo-Heon. Did you learn anything useful? Joo-Heon shook his head. Not really. For now, all we can do is wait. Kim raised both hands in confusion. Wait? Before he could ask another question, Joo-Heon had already disappeared into the crowd. Watching him leave, Kim scratched his head. Why is he acting so differently today? Near the massive tomb, only a handful of people were allowed past the military barricade. Among them stood a blonde woman named Linda Walker. Keeping her eyes on the soldiers, she raised a phone to her ear. Double-check all the intelligence. By now, the Korean government should know something about these tombs. A voice answered from the other side. Our sources confirm they know absolutely nothing. Linda slowly looked around at the large military presence surrounding the area. Strange. If they don't know anything, why are there soldiers everywhere? The voice calmly reassured her. Everything is proceeding according to plan. Continue following protocol, and whatever happens, do not discuss the existence of the tombs. The information remains top secret. Linda nodded. Understood. The man then asked for a status update. Walking toward the excavation site, Linda smiled confidently. The explosives have already been planted. We're ready to breach the entrance whenever the order is given. Excellent, the voice continued. Maintain protocol. And remember, every relic must be recovered safely. The call ended. Almost immediately afterward, another person approached her. It was a curly-haired Japanese man named Abe. Smiling politely, he greeted her. So, it seems America isn't the only country hoping to profit from this new era. His eyes narrowed slightly. I honestly didn't expect the CIA to arrive before us. It must have been quite the flight. Linda returned his smile, though there wasn't a trace of warmth behind it. Inside, she couldn't hide her irritation. These Japanese rats really move fast. Placing both hands on her hips, she answered confidently. Unlike your organization, the United States isn't collecting relics for selfish gain. Our purpose is scientific research. We intend to study these artifacts and use them for the benefit of the entire world. She maintained a perfectly diplomatic smile. Our goal is international cooperation. Abe simply smiled back, but both of them understood the truth. Neither side had traveled halfway across the world out of kindness. If America is really doing this for the good of humanity, he mocked, then why is the CIA making sure no one else gets anywhere near these relics? Linda remained calm. And what makes you so certain that's our intention? Abe simply spread his arms. Let's stop pretending. We both know why we're here. Instead of wasting time talking, let's see who reaches the relic first. Linda let out a quiet laugh. Then I wish you the best of luck. The two exchanged polite smiles, but neither trusted the other for a second. Hidden behind a nearby corner, Joo-Heon had been silently observing the entire exchange. So those two really were representatives of the CIA and the Japanese excavation team. Just as he remembered, his eyes shifted toward the enormous mountain of sand towering over the city. Its surface was covered with gigantic carved human faces. Although tombs had already begun appearing around the world, only a handful of powerful governments knew the truth. Soldiers surrounded the massive sand mountain, while excavation teams carried sealed containers filled with relics recovered from previous tombs. From the very beginning, only the world's strongest nations had competed for ownership of these treasures. The United States, Japan, and a few other global powers had secretly established specialized excavation units whose sole purpose was to locate tombs, clear them before anyone else, and claim every relic hidden inside. Watching everything unfold from the shadows, Joo-Heon narrowed his eyes. Not this time. That relic belongs to me. As Linda stepped forward to continue arguing with Abe, Joo-Heon quietly slipped away. The two foreign organizations were too busy trying to outmaneuver each other to notice him. A satisfied smile appeared across his face. Perfect. While they're distracted, I'll clear the tomb before either side even realizes what happened. He chuckled to himself. They never had a chance. Without another moment of hesitation, Joo-Heon stepped toward the tomb. The instant his foot touched the ground, ancient glyphs suddenly burst into existence beneath him. Countless glowing hieroglyphs spread across the road in a massive circular pattern. Their mysterious light illuminated the dark streets. Rather than being surprised, Joo-Heon smiled. To him, relics weren't simply lifeless objects. They possessed their own will. Almost like living beings, they longed to be discovered, to be acknowledged, to choose worthy owners. Looking at the glowing symbols beneath his feet, Joo-Heon couldn't help but think, these relics really do see themselves as the main characters of history. The civilians nearby immediately panicked. Very few people in the world understood their true purpose. Those capable of reading these ancient glyphs could uncover the tomb's greatest secrets. The runes revealed hidden passages, deadly traps, secret chambers, and sometimes even the exact path leading straight to the relic itself. Unfortunately, almost nobody could actually decipher them. But Joo-Heon wasn't almost nobody. The moment his fingers touched the glowing symbols, a brilliant flash erupted before his eyes. One translucent purple notification after another appeared in the air. New title acquired, new skill, unlocked young linguist skill effect, grants the ability to understand and analyze ancient languages. Decipher unknown scripts, and interpret tomb glyphs. Another notification followed immediately afterward. The new skill quietly settled into his growing list of abilities. Joo-Heon casually waved his hand, dismissing every floating window. He quietly reminded himself that there were still 2 more essential skills he needed before everything truly began. Nearby pedestrians stared at him in confusion as he repeatedly waved his hand through empty air. To everyone else, it looked like he was simply talking to himself. Following the directions hidden within the glyphs, Joo-Heon eventually reached the riverside that cut through the city. Near the embankment stood a single ancient stone pillar. Its entire surface was covered with glowing hieroglyphs. Standing before it with both hands in his pockets, Joo-Heon smiled confidently. So this is the entrance. Without hesitation, he pulled out the relic knife he had stolen earlier, swinging it once he drove the blade directly into the pillar. The instant the knife pierced the stone, every glyph began shining with overwhelming brilliance. A blinding pillar of light shot into the night sky, illuminating the entire city. Holding the knife tightly, Joo-Heon prepared himself. It's time for a tomb raider to go to work. Suddenly, another purple notification appeared before him, warning an unknown entity is approaching. At the same moment, the ground beneath the pillar violently cracked apart. A massive gateway slowly opened beneath his feet as an enormous column of light erupted into the heavens. The explosion of light instantly caught everyone's attention. Not far away, Abe stared toward the sky in complete disbelief. Where is that light coming from? One of his subordinates came running. Someone opened the tomb. Without another word, Abe sprinted toward the source of the light. Linda quickly called after him. Where are you going? Ignoring her completely, Abe continued running. Both foreign teams raced toward the mysterious gateway. We should wait for backup, Linda warned. Abe didn't even slow down. They'll only get in my way. Moments later, they finally reached the source of the light. A massive hole had opened in the earth. At its center stood the entrance to the tomb. Peering into the endless darkness below, Abe frowned. I can't see anything. The light's too bright. Linda picked up a nearby stone and tossed it into the abyss. The two quietly listened. Several seconds later, splash, Abe pointed downward. There's water. Linda nodded. And judging by the sound, it's a very deep pool. Before she could stop him, Abe jumped. What are you doing? Linda shouted in panic. But he had already disappeared into the darkness. Far below, Joo-Heon was already making his way deeper into the tomb. An underground river flowed beside the narrow stone pathway. Then, he heard footsteps. Someone had entered after him. Lighting the ancient walls with a small lighter, Joo-Heon smiled mischievously. Looks like my guests have arrived. Maybe I'll have a little fun. Ahead of him lay the tomb's very first trial. Every wall was completely covered with glowing glyphs. After surviving the fall, Abe dragged himself onto the muddy shore. The foul smell immediately assaulted his senses. What an awful stench. Moments later, Linda climbed down using a rope. I was trying to warn you about that. Before either of them could continue, a strange rumbling echoed throughout the cave. They immediately froze. Linda switched on her flashlight. Where did that sound come from? Abe narrowed his eyes. Something's coming. Suddenly, an enormous wall of water burst from deep inside the cavern. What the? Neither of them had time to react. The tidal wave raced toward them with unstoppable force. They turned and ran, but it was already too late. The flood swallowed both agents whole. Linda vanished beneath the raging current. Abe barely managed to raise one hand above the water as he desperately fought for air. Meanwhile, Joo-Heon calmly continued walking deeper into the tomb, completely undisturbed. Eventually, an intense light shone ahead. He stepped into a breathtaking underground grotto. Crystal clear blue water stretched across the cavern like a mirror. Looking at the relic knife in his hand, he smiled. Good thing I brought you along. Without hesitation, he threw the knife into the water. Ripples spread across the lake. Moments later, the water exploded upward. A gigantic white serpent slowly emerged from the depths. Its enormous golden eyes locked onto Joo-Heon. The creature opened its mouth. Inside rested 2 identical knives. One was made entirely of gold, the other pure silver. An ancient voice echoed throughout the cavern. Traveler, you have lost your blade. Tell me, which one belongs to you? The golden knife or the silver one? Joo-Heon couldn't help but grin. He immediately recognized the trial. The Tomb of the Two Axes. It was modeled after Aesop's famous fable, The Honest Woodcutter and Mercury. Anyone familiar with the story would immediately assume the correct answer was to choose the ordinary blade and reject the precious ones. But Joo-Heon wasn't about to fall for such an obvious trap. Looking directly into the serpent's eyes, he calmly answered, "Neither of those knives belongs to me." The giant serpent slowly closed its mouth. Then, after a brief silence, it opened its jaws once more. This time, only a single knife rested inside, the very same relic knife that Joo-Heon had thrown into the lake. The ancient voice echoed through the cavern once again. "Then, is this your blade?" Joo-Heon carefully studied the enormous white serpent before him. A sly smile slowly spread across his face, while his sharp eyes gleamed with unmistakable cunning. Instead of answering immediately, he shrugged casually. "I'm not entirely sure that's my knife," he said. "Mind if I take a closer look?" The ancient voice echoed through the cavern. Permission granted. The serpent slowly lowered its head, presenting the blade resting inside its mouth. Joo-Heon calmly reached forward. His fingers gently wrapped around the knife's hilt, and in the very next instant slash. Without a hint of hesitation, he swung the blade upward. The knife sliced straight through the serpent's mouth. A painful roar echoed throughout the underground grotto as the massive creature collapsed onto the stone floor, writhing in agony. The ancient voice cried out in disbelief. "Why? You had already passed the trial. Victory and your reward were only one step away." Joo-Heon merely smiled. The very first rule of relic hunting is never trust a relic. He looked down at the wounded serpent without the slightest bit of sympathy. Relics are nothing but pure evil. Who could guarantee that your so-called reward wouldn't become a curse the moment I accepted it? The serpent's forked tongue flickered weakly as it stared back at him. Its voice trembled. "How? Does a mere mortal know so much about us?" Joo-Heon's thoughts briefly drifted to the future he had once lived. There had been a man who successfully obtained the famous Twin Axes relic. At first, everyone celebrated him as a hero, but before long, the relic slowly twisted his mind. The once ordinary man transformed into a ruthless serial killer. By the time anyone realized what had happened, his list of victims had already become far too long to count. Gripping the knife tightly, Joo-Heon quietly spoke. "I know far more than you could ever imagine." He looked directly into the serpent's glowing yellow eyes. "It's honestly disappointing. A trial that's supposed to reward honesty ended up becoming one giant deception." Before the creature could react, Joo-Heon leaped high into the air. The knife flashed brilliantly. Stab. The blade plunged deep into the serpent's back. The monster let out another agonizing scream. Its massive body violently crashed against the cavern floor. Joo-Heon frowned coldly. "This is simply the natural consequence of your own actions." The serpent glared at him with widened yellow eyes. Its voice was filled with rage. "Do you truly believe that after this, I will willingly become your servant?" Joo-Heon didn't answer immediately. Instead, his mind wandered toward one of the most important truths about relics. Simply clearing a tomb wasn't enough. Passing the trial wasn't enough either. Even obtaining a relic didn't mean it would obey. Every relic had to form a connection with its owner. Some called it synchronization, others called it compatibility. But without that bond, a relic could never reveal its true power. Most people believed relics were divine treasures worthy of worship. Countless individuals bowed before them. They prayed to them. But what almost nobody understood was that relics hated humanity more than anything else. That hatred ran so deep it bordered on instinct. Even after becoming their owners, people slowly paid the price. Some coughed up blood, others developed incurable illnesses. Many gradually descended into madness. Some completely lost their sanity. Only a handful of incredibly rare relics possessed the ability to heal those curses. The few people lucky enough to obtain them were considered blessed by fate itself. That was also one of the reasons Joo-Heon could never forgive Tijuca and the people who had used relics to control the world. Fortunately, there wasn't only one way to make a relic obey. There were 3 different methods of forming a contract. The first, friendship, a healthy relationship built upon mutual trust and respect. It was by far the safest and most common method. The second, dominance, completely crushing a relic's will until it had no choice but to obey. Brutal, merciless, but undeniably effective. The third, compatibility, the rarest and strongest connection of all. This bond was formed when both the relic and its owner naturally shared the same ideals, desires, and purpose. It was similar to the relationship between a musician and their favorite instrument. When such harmony existed, the relic willingly offered every ounce of its power. Because friendship was easier, almost everyone chose the first method. Very few people dared to dominate a relic instead. Joo-Heon had no intention of wasting his time earning the serpent's trust. He knew exactly what friendship with a relic eventually became: a slow death. Without hesitation, he drove the knife even deeper into the serpent's back. Blood erupted across the cavern floor. The serpent shrieked in unbearable pain. Looking down coldly, Joo-Heon spoke in an emotionless voice. "I'm not interested in becoming your friend. I'm going to make you obey." He twisted the blade even further. "You have two choices. Serve me faithfully, or be destroyed forever. There are countless relics in this world. If you disappear, I'll simply replace you with another." The serpent trembled violently. Fear filled its enormous eyes. Its voice shook. "Why? Mortals are supposed to worship us, to desire us. Why are you treating me like this?" Before Joo-Heon answered, a brilliant golden light burst from the serpent's body. Its massive form dissolved into countless glowing particles before disappearing completely. The water beneath it exploded upward in shimmering waves. Floating gently in the air, a magnificent golden axe appeared before Joo-Heon. At the exact same moment, a familiar purple notification appeared. Basic skill awakened, primary archaeology. Another essential skill had finally been unlocked. Only one final requirement remained before completing his quest. Then another notification appeared. Dominance affinity +1, friendship affinity decreased. Joo-Heon blinked in confusion. Looking toward the black raven that silently observed everything from above, he asked, "So dominance goes up while friendship drops?" He waited for an answer. The raven remained completely silent. Eventually, Joo-Heon simply shrugged. "Whatever." Just then, voices echoed from deeper inside the cavern. "There, I found the core." Joo-Heon's expression immediately changed. The foreign agents had finally arrived. Hidden safely behind a massive rock, he watched as Abe and Linda Walker rushed into the grotto. Abe's eyes lit up. "It's exactly like the prophecy described." Joo-Heon frowned slightly. "They got here faster than I expected." Abe suddenly pulled a small crimson vial from his pocket. Linda looked at him in confusion. "What are you doing?" He didn't answer. Instead, he tossed the vial straight into the pond. Watching from the shadows, Joo-Heon couldn't help but grin. "Too bad. You're already too late." He carefully observed both agents. "Looks like we'll be seeing each other quite often from now on." His fingers slowly tightened around his knife. "Should I just kill them here?" Suddenly, another purple notification appeared. Relic status durability 54/100. Joo-Heon's eyes widened. So that's why. He stared at the damaged knife. After everything it had endured, the relic had already lost nearly half its durability. It wouldn't survive much longer if he kept using it recklessly. Glancing toward the silent raven again, Joo-Heon had a strange feeling. Was it trying to stop me from spilling more blood? Meanwhile, Abe looked around furiously. "This makes no sense. The prophecy clearly said the relic had to be thrown into the pond." Linda looked at him in surprise. "Wait, do you actually possess a seer's relic?" Abe shot her an irritated glare. "That's irrelevant." He clenched his fists. "Someone got here before us. They stole the relic." Linda quietly nodded. Looking down at the ground, she remembered the footprints she had noticed near the ruins earlier. "So that's it. The tomb has already been cleared." At that exact moment, a loud crash echoed somewhere deeper inside the cave. Joo-Heon smiled. The trap had finally activated. Looking at the glowing golden axe in his hand, he quietly muttered, "Time to leave." Before the tomb disappears, holding the relic high above his head, he calmly issued a command. "Seal the tomb." The golden axe radiated dazzling light. Instantly, the entire cave began shaking violently. Massive cracks spread across the ground beneath Abe and Linda's feet. Abe's face turned pale. "This isn't good. We have to get out." Linda frantically looked around. "Where's the exit?" Fortunately for Joo-Heon, he had already prepared an escape route long before entering. A nearby sewer hatch suddenly swung open from below. Climbing back to the surface, Joo-Heon dusted himself off with a satisfied smile. Always prepare your escape before entering a tomb. That's another rule every Tomb Raider should remember. Without attracting any attention, he quietly blended into the frightened crowd gathering outside. By the time he returned to the scene, the entire tomb had already vanished without a trace. As the commotion around the vanished tomb slowly died down, Kim turned around after hearing someone call his name. Slipping both hands into his pockets, Joo-Heon walked over with his usual relaxed expression. "What are you staring at?" he asked. Kim kept his eyes fixed on the empty space where the massive sand mound had stood only moments ago. "I still can't believe it," he muttered. The whole thing just disappeared. Joo-Heon casually waved his hand as if it were nothing extraordinary. "That's great news for me." He stretched lazily before patting his stomach. "Because right now, I'm starving." Meanwhile, far away, Abe sat on a park bench with an expression twisted in fury. His grip on his phone tightened until his knuckles turned white. Why wasn't I informed about this sooner? He shouted into the receiver. If this was how things were going to turn out, I should have known every single detail beforehand. On the other end of the call, a calm voice answered apologetically. The prophecy only appeared a few hours ago. Our analysts barely had enough time to decipher it. Abe's expression darkened. So read it again. His hands trembled with frustration. The voice hesitated before replying. We've already tried. We can't. Abe suddenly shot to his feet. What do you mean you can't? He roared. What are all of you even doing over there? And why isn't that child helping? The reply came after a brief silence. He's simply not in the mood today. Abe stared blankly at the dark phone screen for a moment before letting out an irritated growl. Understanding his anger, the caller tried to reassure him. We'll make sure this never happens again. We'll recover the lost opportunity. There was another pause before the voice spoke again. However, that Tomb Raider is a very unusual individual. Abe narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? Elsewhere, Joo-Heon sat comfortably inside his apartment with a can of beer in one hand while browsing countless websites on his computer. An untouched plate of food rested beside the keyboard. His newly acquired linguist skill allowed him to effortlessly read languages that ordinary people couldn't even recognize. Dozens of foreign websites filled his monitor. Yet despite searching everywhere, there was still almost no information about relics or tombs online. That wasn't surprising. The world hadn't officially discovered their existence yet. Those secrets would only become public much later. Joo-Heon shifted his search to someone else, Tae-Jun. His fingers rapidly danced across the keyboard as he searched every database he could access. Nothing, no information, no records, not even a trace of the organization behind him. So they're still completely hidden. Just then, Kim walked into the room and stared at the monitor filled with unfamiliar symbols. He scratched his head. Wait, are you seriously reading all of that? Or are you just pretending to understand random scribbles? Joo-Heon looked over his shoulder. Need something translated? Kim immediately waved both hands. No, I'm good. He stared at his neighbor with newfound admiration. I really live next door to a genius, he thought. Joo-Heon slowly spun around in his chair. Kim, have you ever heard of an organization called TKBM? Kim shoved his hands into his pockets before shaking his head. No, why? What is it? I need information about its chairman. Kim blinked. The chairman? What for? He scratched the back of his head awkwardly. Is this related to that investigation you've been working on? Joo-Heon turned back toward the computer. I already quit. Kim's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. You quit? When did that happen? And why are you suddenly investigating the director of TKBM? Joo-Heon didn't answer. Instead, his fingers slowly rested on the keyboard as another idea formed in his mind. If I can't find information about Tae-Jun directly, then I'll approach him another way. Behind him, Kim continued asking one question after another. Unfortunately, every single one of them was met with complete silence. At that very moment, inside a rundown warehouse, two former gang members were cleaning the room while grumbling about their miserable situation. One of them sighed deeply. We really don't know anything about running a business, but we've still got families to feed. Nearby, Hyun angrily shoved a cigarette into his mouth. His face twisted with resentment. The next time I see Joo-Heon, I'm beating him senseless. This whole mess, it's all because of him. His blonde companion laughed. You know, we probably should jump him next time. Smirking confidently, the blonde man tapped his forehead. I told the boss from the beginning. I was always right. We've got to avenge him. Suddenly, a ringtone interrupted the conversation. The blonde man glanced at his phone, then immediately froze. His face turned pale. The caller ID displayed a name that sent chills down his spine. Joo-Heon. He instinctively grabbed the phone with both trembling hands. His partner frowned. Answer it. The blonde man swallowed hard before nervously bringing the phone to his ear. Hello? The moment the call connected, Joo-Heon's calm voice came through the speaker. You sure took your time picking up. The blonde man's face immediately turned red with anger. You're unbelievable. I'll find you and shut up. Joo-Heon's cold interruption instantly silenced him. Leaning back comfortably in his chair, Joo-Heon smiled. I've got a business proposal. Hyun slammed his hand onto the table. Business? We lost everything because of you. Our entire operation is finished. Joo-Heon's smile only grew wider. It doesn't have to stay that way. There might still be a future for you. Both men exchanged confused looks. What are you talking about? I want to hire you. I need loyal people working inside Midas. Joo-Heon's thoughts drifted toward a dazzling city lit by thousands of lights. Midas. the world's largest underground auction house, a place where priceless treasures, legendary relics, and unimaginable fortunes, gold, jewels, ancient artifacts, everything the black market desired, eventually found its way there. More importantly, Tae-jun regularly visited Midas whenever a high-grade relic appeared on the market. If Joo-Heon wanted to track him down, he first needed eyes and ears inside that organization. Holding the phone against his ear, Joo-Heon continued calmly, "I need information about a certain person." A mental image of a man dressed in an elegant black suit flashed through his mind. Find someone named Jake Kamen. He also goes by the initials J.K., a convenient alias designed to hide his true movements. Hyun clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles turned white. "You've lost your mind. Midas is in Las Vegas. It's crawling with dangerous criminals. People like us can't just walk in there." Joo-Heon answered without the slightest concern. "That's not my problem." He casually leaned back in his chair. "You can refuse if you want." The room fell silent. Then, a faint smirk appeared on Joo-Heon's face. "But I don't think you'll refuse after you hear how much I'm willing to pay." The two gang members immediately stopped breathing for a second. Their expressions slowly changed. No matter how dangerous the mission sounded, money had a way of making impossible jobs suddenly seem very tempting. On the other end of the phone, the gang members were still shouting at the top of their lungs. Joo-Heon casually pulled the phone away from his ear before the yelling became unbearable. The blond man, Hyun, screamed furiously. "We're not falling for your pathetic handouts. If we want money, we'll take it ourselves." His face was flushed with anger, but beads of sweat had already begun forming across his forehead. Joo-Heon simply smiled. "So, you're refusing?" His voice remained calm, almost amused. "In that case, I'll just have to convince you another way." Hyun's confident expression immediately stiffened. Joo-Heon's smile slowly widened. "I don't think you idiots realized something the last time we met. Things have changed." He leaned back comfortably in his chair before continuing in an almost cheerful tone. "I'll come find every single one of you and beat you up over and over again. I'll keep doing it until you're the ones begging to work for me." The threat was delivered so casually that it somehow sounded even more terrifying. Hyun's face instantly lost its color. "Wait." His voice trembled. "We can still but..." Before he could finish, click, Joo-Heon had already ended the call. Standing up, he grabbed a worn brown backpack and slung it over one shoulder. Sliding both hands into his pockets, he looked toward the city outside his window. "Interesting. If those idiots are gathering information on Tae-jun, I'll go claim another tomb." A confident smile appeared on his face. There was no reason to waste valuable time. Every relic he obtained before anyone else was another step toward changing the future. Night had completely fallen over the city. Bright headlights streamed along the crowded streets, while people wandered between convenience stores and late-night restaurants without realizing that history was quietly beginning to change around them. Inside a nearby convenience store, a television mounted above the counter broadcast the evening news. The anchor reported an unusual incident. Last night, a woman attempted to set herself on fire in the middle of the city. Joo-Heon, who had just stopped outside the store, immediately narrowed his eyes. A woman suddenly trying to burn herself. He recognized the pattern immediately. It has to be another relic. Although he couldn't be completely certain, his instincts, strengthened by memories from the future, told him he was probably right. Still, there was only one way to confirm it. Just as he was thinking, an irritated voice suddenly shouted from behind him. "Hey! What are you staring at? Move already! You're blocking everyone's view." Joo-Heon slowly turned around. Standing behind him was a dark-haired man with an annoyed expression. The moment Joo-Heon saw his face, his eyes narrowed. Interesting. He recognized him instantly. Abe, one of the foreign agents he had encountered inside the Tomb of the Two Axes. Joo-Heon studied him carefully. He's definitely not wandering around here by coincidence. If Abe is here, then another tomb is probably about to appear nearby. A small smile spread across his face. So that's how it is. The Japanese division is working alongside a Seer's relic. They already know where the next tomb will emerge. Abe frowned. "What did you just say?" Then, noticing Joo-Heon's appearance, he casually asked in Japanese, "Are you Japanese too? I've had a really exhausting day." Joo-Heon couldn't help smiling. "My linguist skill really is useful." He understood every single word perfectly. However, instead of answering honestly, he simply scratched his head. "I'm sorry. I didn't understand a single thing you just said." For a brief second, Abe completely froze. His eyes widened in disbelief. Joo-Heon almost laughed. "You should have seen your own face." Then, without warning, he replied. Flawless Japanese flowed effortlessly from his mouth. Abe nearly jumped in shock. "What? That's not funny." Joo-Heon chuckled. "You started being rude first. I was only returning the favor." Abe immediately shot back. because you were blocking the entrance. Ignoring him, Joo-Heon walked inside the convenience store toward the cashier. Abe stubbornly followed close behind. "Do you even know who I am?" he demanded proudly. Joo-Heon glanced sideways at him. At that exact moment, he sensed it. A powerful aura radiating from Abe's body. He's carrying a relic, and he isn't even trying to hide its presence. Joo-Heon's eyes sparkled mischievously. "Maybe I should just steal it." Abe reached out and grabbed Joo-Heon's shoulder. The instant Joo-Heon turned around, he casually popped open the can of soda he had just purchased. Fizz. The drink exploded everywhere. Sticky soda splashed directly across Abe's face and clothes. The Japanese agent immediately gritted his teeth. "You've got some nerve." Joo-Heon blinked innocently. "Oh? That was completely accidental." With an apologetic smile, he began brushing imaginary dust from Abe's clothes. "Someone must have shaken the can before I bought it." While pretending to clean him off, Joo-Heon's hand quietly slipped into Abe's pocket. His fingers brushed against something cold. A bracelet? Unfortunately, stealing it now would be far too obvious. Reluctantly, he withdrew his hand. Still smiling, he leaned closer. "I'd happily pay your laundry bill, but I spent my last bit of money buying that soda." He looked Abe up and down before adding with a grin. "Besides, maybe this is a good excuse to throw those ugly clothes away and buy something decent." Abe stared at him speechlessly. Before he could respond, Joo-Heon suddenly crouched down. "Oh, you dropped something." He picked up several documents from the floor before politely handing them back. "Be more careful." Abe quickly snatched them away. His expression became noticeably tense. "My archaeological documents, I can't let anyone see these." Just then, boom! A deafening explosion echoed across the city. Both men instinctively turned toward the sound. People throughout the street suddenly froze. What was that? Within seconds, panic spread like wildfire. Some pedestrians collapsed in fear. Others began screaming, "Run! Get away from here! Something's happening!" Joo-Heon's lips slowly curled upward. "Right on schedule. A new tomb has appeared." Without wasting another second, he immediately sprinted toward the source of the disturbance. Watching him disappear into the distance, Abe smiled. The seer was right again. He quickly pulled out his phone. "Everything is proceeding exactly according to plan." Then, the voice on the other end spoke again. Its tone suddenly became serious. "The individual who cleared the Tomb of the Two Axes will interfere with your mission once again. The child gave us another warning. Whatever happens, avoid alcoholic beverages." Abe froze. His pupils shrank. In an instant, a memory flashed through his mind. Joo-Heon, opening a drink, spilling it all over him only moments earlier. It was him, the man from the prophecy. Realizing the truth, Abe's face turned pale. Damn it! He looked around wildly, but Joo-Heon had already disappeared into the chaos. Joo-Heon suddenly stopped and looked around uneasily. With both hands buried in his pockets, he watched the people running through the area and muttered that something about this relic didn't feel right. In fact, he had a bad feeling that this particular relic was going to become a massive headache. Before he could investigate further, Abe raised his gun and shouted at him to freeze, or he would shoot. Joo-Heon stopped and turned toward the man. Abe immediately ordered him to open his backpack. His face was twisted with anger as he declared that he wouldn't lose to Joo-Heon again. But before the protagonist could respond, a strange noise caught his attention. He turned around. Suddenly, several purple system windows appeared in the air. A notification immediately popped up, warning him that an unknown aura was approaching. At the same time, bright yellow lines began spreading across the ground. Joo-Heon crossed his arms and gritted his teeth. Then a blinding flash of light engulfed the entire area. A massive yellow beam could be seen from far away, illuminating the city like an explosion. When the light finally faded, something horrifying had happened. Sharp blades were now sticking out from the walls and surrounding structures. People sat frozen on the floor, looking around in complete confusion, unable to understand what had just happened. Joo-Heon touched his forehead and closed his eyes, gritting his teeth as the people around him desperately asked what was going on. But Joo-Heon already knew. Everyone here was in danger. This relic wasn't simply dangerous. It was thirsty for blood. Joo-Heon stood up and stared at the countless blades scattered around him. Where had all these weapons come from? Then he remembered. This was the tomb of Muramasa. Joo-Heon immediately recalled everything he knew about Muramasa. Muramasa was a famous Japanese swordsmith who lived during the Muromachi period around the 16th century. He was known as the founder of the Muramasa school, and his blades were famous for their extraordinary quality and the mysterious legends surrounding them. One of those legends involved the infamous curse placed upon the Tokugawa family. According to the stories, Muramasa had opposed the policies of Tokugawa Ieyasu, the shogun who sought to unite Japan under his rule. Because of this hatred, Muramasa supposedly cursed the Tokugawa family through his swords. Joo-Heon imagined the countless battles and tragedies connected to those blades. It was widely believed that Muramasa's swords were connected to numerous deaths and accidents involving the Tokugawa dynasty. Because of this reputation, many of Muramasa's blades were eventually destroyed. Meanwhile, the people around Joo-Heon began picking up the swords scattered across the floor. Unfortunately, there was one more thing he knew. This relic possessed an unbelievable hatred toward humanity, and now it had noticed him. The system immediately confirmed it. Joo-Heon had attracted the relic's attention. He had also suffered a minor injury and required treatment. Joo-Heon closed one eye and looked away before rolling up the sleeve of his jacket. There were several wounds on his arm. He sighed. The tomb needed to be cleared as quickly as possible. But before he could move, Abe approached from behind. With an arrogant smirk, Abe reminded Joo-Heon that he had already ordered him not to move. He pressed the barrel of his gun against Joo-Heon's back and once again demanded that he open his backpack. Joo-Heon spread his arms wide. Abe was becoming seriously annoying. He wasn't going to listen to some guy trying to rob him. Joo-Heon slowly turned around. Abe smirked and told him to stop acting tough. After all, he was pointing a gun directly at him. Joo-Heon calmly raised both hands. Then he smiled. "Go ahead, shoot." Abe's expression immediately darkened. Joo-Heon repeated himself. "Come on, shoot." Abe finally lowered his weapon and shouted that Joo-Heon had no idea what he was dealing with. Maybe he would understand once Abe put a bullet through his leg. But then a flash of light suddenly appeared. Abe stopped speaking. His gun fell from his hand. He grabbed his smoking palm and screamed in pain. Joo-Heon simply smiled. With his hands returning to his pockets, he casually explained that tombs had rules. Modern firearms didn't work properly inside them. Otherwise, clearing these tombs would be far too easy. Abe stared at him in disbelief. How did Joo-Heon know all of this? At that moment, Abe became almost completely certain. Joo-Heon was the person who had stolen their relic the previous day. Joo-Heon didn't even bother denying it. Instead, he grabbed Abe by his clothes. With a smirk, he dragged the man along and told him to forget about the axes. Abe desperately asked him to let go. Joo-Heon ignored him. He had decided to get rid of Abe. The protagonist suddenly slammed him onto the ground. Abe let out a painful groan. But then something far worse happened. Monsters began surrounding him. Abe stared at them in horror. Where had these creatures even come from? Joo-Heon turned around with a grin. "Maybe we'll meet again." Then he walked away. The monsters immediately reached for Abe. One of them grabbed him by the throat as he struggled and angrily swore that he would kill Joo-Heon. Meanwhile, the other survivors stared at Abe in fear. Abe quickly tried to calm them down. He desperately asked if anyone could speak Japanese. One person stepped forward and admitted that he knew a little. Abe immediately began shouting for help. However, the people in the group warned the man that Abe could be dangerous. After all, he had a gun. Abe's face was now covered in sweat. He awkwardly smiled and tried to reassure them. He extended his hand and introduced himself as an important Japanese official and archaeologist who had come to deal with the situation. The people stared at him with disbelief. Abe promised that he could help them escape the tomb. Someone finally stepped forward. Meanwhile, Joo-Heon had already moved on. He pulled out the phone he had taken and examined it. He wanted to see what kind of useful item Abe had been carrying. Then he remembered how he had grabbed Abe by his clothes earlier. Luckily, he had been quick enough to search through Abe's pockets while doing so. Joo-Heon smiled. It was fortunate that humanity still knew so little about the tombs, because that lack of knowledge was working entirely in his favor. Joo-Heon reached into his belongings and pulled out a bracelet along with a cake. Raising an eyebrow, he examined the bracelet and immediately recognized its origin. It came from a famous Korean folktale about a brother and sister who eventually became the sun and the moon. Joo-Heon imagined the story playing out in his mind. Their mother had been attacked by a tiger who demanded rice cakes, and eventually, the beast turned its attention toward the children as well. Desperate to escape, the siblings grabbed onto a rope that mysteriously descended from the heavens, allowing them to flee from the tiger. Joo-Heon frowned as he looked at the purple system windows. Probably not a powerful relic. Still, it could prove useful. The system suddenly issued several notifications. A new title and skill had been unlocked, and the basic skill Sleight of Hand had also awakened. Purple system windows appeared around Joo-Heon as he realized that all 4 basic skills were now available to him. The system displayed information about the F-rank Sleight of Hand skill, followed by details about the basic abilities belonging to a plunderer. Joo-Heon suddenly froze. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. The system announced that he had unlocked every basic skill and successfully completed the mission. Joo-Heon smirked. It seemed Ran was turning this whole thing into some kind of game. Fine, keep playing while you can. Of course, Joo-Heon didn't particularly care as long as the system's games continued working in his favor. But before he could think about it any further, a terrifying scream echoed through the tomb. Joo-Heon's expression changed. Ahead of him was a bridge, and desperate cries for help were coming from somewhere below. He walked toward the edge and looked down. Sharp blades were protruding from the walls beneath the bridge. A large group of people was trapped below. Joo-Heon immediately recognized the situation. Another trap. A young girl stood among the crowd, gripping a knife tightly in her hand, as the terrified survivors desperately begged her to calm down. The girl clenched her teeth. Her eyes suddenly turned completely white. The others quickly realized something was wrong. They couldn't hear her anymore. Joo-Heon's expression darkened. The girl had been possessed, and if anyone touched her now, the same thing would happen to them. Against the red background, silhouettes of people could be seen fighting one another. Joo-Heon understood exactly what was happening. The more people that fell under the influence of the cursed swords, the harder it would become for anyone to escape. Eventually, everyone trapped inside this place would die. That was the true nature of this tomb. Standing beside the bridge, Joo-Heon looked down and wondered how these people had even ended up there. Then he asked if Abe was responsible. A man wearing a cap raised his hand toward his mouth and shouted back. Apparently, Abe had suddenly started singing some strange song. As he sang, several of the tomb's traps gradually disappeared. The survivors had helped Abe escape, only to receive a horrifying reward in return. Abe had apparently told them that every single person there had to die in order to keep the tomb's secrets hidden. Joo-Heon frowned. So there really were relics hidden here. Without hesitation, he began sliding down the rocky wall. The people below shouted warnings, telling him that the area was filled with blades. Joo-Heon calmly pulled out a dagger. Suddenly, fragments of blades flew into the air. The possessed girl immediately turned around after hearing the noise. Joo-Heon extended one hand toward her. The girl charged at him with the knife raised. Joo-Heon tightly grabbed the rope relic. "Let's see what you can do." He threw it forward and commanded it to stop the approaching enemy. The rope instantly wrapped itself around the girl's body. She was completely immobilized and crashed onto the ground. Joo-Heon smiled. That was easy. He reached for the dagger, preparing to retrieve it. But then the weapon spoke. An arrogant voice ordered him to kill every person around him. Joo-Heon's expression immediately darkened. He stared at the relic. How dare a mere relic tell me what to do? He checked the system's information and couldn't believe the weapon's arrogance. It was only a C-rank relic, yet it acted as if it were some legendary treasure. Joo-Heon immediately threw the dagger aside. What a waste of time. He wasn't interested in dealing with a useless relic. Instead, he asked where the main relic of the tomb was. The girl, still tied up, begged him to release her. The rope relic suddenly spoke as well, asking whether she wanted to have some fun. Joo-Heon narrowed his eyes. He already knew what would happen if he turned his back on these relics. The moment he stopped watching them, they would do whatever they wanted. Joo-Heon turned toward the survivors. "Follow me." The confused people stared at him. He warned them not to ask unnecessary questions. "I'm not a bad person." With that, Joo-Heon led them forward. Meanwhile, countless swords were sticking out of the floor. Then a loud laugh echoed through the tomb. Abe appeared with a sinister grin. He proudly announced that he had eliminated all the troublesome witnesses and had finally discovered the room where the Muramasa relic was hidden. Walking between the countless swords, Abe explained that he now only needed to find Muramasa itself. Then he would finally be able to get rid of that annoying protagonist. Abe leaned forward with a bloodthirsty grin. Joo-Heon had stolen his relics. Now he wanted to make him suffer. Suddenly a sword fell to the ground. Abe's expression changed. He quickly realized something was wrong. They were all fake. He still had no idea where the actual relic was hidden. Abe gritted his teeth and turned around. But then a crowd of angry people appeared behind him. They were shouting at him to get out. Someone grabbed Abe by his clothes. His eyes widened in shock. How had these people escaped? Before he could figure it out, Abe was thrown to the ground. The survivors immediately began kicking him. Joo-Heon casually walked between the swords, grinning at the pathetic sight. "Abe, you look ridiculous." With his face pressed against the floor, Abe gritted his teeth. He immediately realized who was responsible. Joo-Heon. Joo-Heon smirked. Who else could it be? He couldn't believe that Abe had entered the tomb first and still hadn't managed to find the main relic. Joo-Heon raised his hand. A glowing axe appeared in his grasp. He pointed it toward Abe. "Find the relic." Suddenly, one of the swords nearby began emitting a mysterious purple aura. Joo-Heon looked toward it. The answer had been right in front of Abe the entire time. The protagonist reached down and pulled the relic from the ground. Abe stared in shock. Was this really a broken fragment of the legendary Muramasa sword? Joo-Heon raised the weapon. A brilliant blue flash erupted from its blade. He immediately understood. Once activated, the relic would reveal its true form. But the sword itself complained that its current shell was in terrible condition. Joo-Heon tightened his grip around the hilt. Then the relic revealed the horrifying truth. If Joo-Heon wanted to unlock its true power, he would need to offer it 10 sacrifices. The Muramasa relic demanded human blood. It needed the lives of 10 people to restore its original power. Otherwise, it warned, the broken sword would remain buried inside this tomb forever, along with everyone else trapped inside. Joo-Heon now faced a terrifying choice. The most dangerous relic in the tomb had finally revealed itself, and it was hungry for blood. Abe could only stare with one eye half closed, completely unable to believe what was happening. The people surrounding him immediately began to panic. 10 sacrifices. The relic wanted 10 of them dead. Joo-Heon's expression darkened as he stared at the Muramasa sword. What exactly is this test? The answer was simple. The sword demanded that Joo-Heon kill the people around him. Joo-Heon frowned. Absolutely not. Instead of following the relic's demand, he grabbed the sword's hilt with both hands. The blade immediately began glowing red. Joo-Heon gritted his teeth and shouted angrily, "Why should I kill anyone when I can simply subjugate you?" The survivors looked up in shock. Joo-Heon tightened his grip. "If you refuse to obey me, I'll smash you into pieces." The sword would now undergo his test. Joo-Heon raised an eyebrow. "Muramasa, hurry up and obey." Red sparks exploded from the sword as Muramasa cursed furiously. How dare a mere human treat it like this? A powerful wind suddenly swept through the area, nearly knocking the survivors off their feet. In the middle of the swirling white mist, Joo-Heon stood firmly, gripping the sword. Blue flames began burning along the blade. While Joo-Heon dealt with Muramasa, he also prepared an escape route for the others. He grabbed hold of a rope and shouted at the survivors to climb. They hurried toward it, thanking Joo-Heon as they escaped the tomb. But just as Abe was about to follow them, Joo-Heon placed a hand on his shoulder. Abe froze. Joo-Heon smirked. "You're not going with them." He already knew what Abe was planning. Once they escaped, Abe would probably try to eliminate every witness. Abe nervously promised that he wouldn't do anything like that. He begged Joo-Heon to let him leave. Then, seeing that Joo-Heon wasn't convinced, Abe quickly offered him something far more valuable. He promised to convince his superiors to recruit Joo-Heon. According to Abe, Joo-Heon could earn around 10 billion yen by working with the Japanese team. Joo-Heon raised an eyebrow. Abe continued, explaining that the Japanese team possessed a powerful relic. If Joo-Heon could gain access to that power, his future would become much easier. Joo-Heon suddenly laughed. Abe's eyes widened. The protagonist crossed his arms. "You're hilarious." He couldn't understand Abe's logic. How exactly was Joo-Heon supposed to use a relic that could only be activated by its original owner? Abe quickly assured him that his team would do everything possible to help him. Joo-Heon finally allowed Abe to use the rope. But there was one condition. Abe would be the last person to climb out. Abe secretly smiled. It seemed Joo-Heon had fallen for the promise of 10 billion yen. As the two climbed the rope, Abe apologized for everything he had said earlier. Joo-Heon smirked. "Then let's talk about this deal." But before agreeing to anything, Joo-Heon wanted information. He needed to know more about the Japanese team that possessed the relic. Abe smiled confidently. "Don't worry about it." Then he revealed the name. The famous Japanese group, TKVM. Joo-Heon's eyes immediately widened. Then he smiled. Abe suddenly felt the rope slip from his hand. Before he could react, Joo-Heon kicked him directly in the chest. Abe went flying backward. He desperately stretched his arms out, completely confused about what had just happened. Joo-Heon looked down at him. Abe had been so desperate to survive that he had practically handed over all the important information himself. His mouth had betrayed him. Abe's face was now covered in sweat. He desperately begged Joo-Heon to wait. Was he really going to kill someone so cold-bloodedly? Joo-Heon simply stared at him. Later, the brightly illuminated signs of a building lit up the dark streets. Joo-Heon entered a men's restroom and walked toward the mirror. He rolled up his sleeves. He needed to examine his injuries. But from behind him came a familiar voice. Muramasa was screaming for freedom. The relic threatened to kill Joo-Heon if he didn't release it. Joo-Heon's expression immediately darkened. He opened his backpack. Who started all this noise? The screaming continued from inside. Muramasa couldn't believe the way Joo-Heon was treating it. Joo-Heon pulled out the katana. "So you're Muramasa?" The sword immediately demanded to be released. Joo-Heon had enough. He threw the sword directly into the toilet. "Shut up already." Muramasa cursed furiously. Joo-Heon ignored it. Pain shot through his body. Joo-Heon grabbed his arm. He rolled up his sleeve and examined the wounds covering his forearm. All of this damage was caused by Muramasa. More specifically, the consequences of forcing the relic into submission. Normally, obtaining a relic required passing the test it assigned. But Joo-Heon had ignored Muramasa's test completely. Instead, he had attempted to dominate the relic through sheer force. That method came with a serious price. The stronger the relic, the more violently it resisted, and the longer Joo-Heon continued forcing it into submission, the more damage his body would suffer. Then, suddenly a system window appeared. Joo-Heon froze. The notification announced that he had successfully exited the tomb, his basic Tomb Raider skills had been unlocked, and the reward for completing the quest had been received. Joo-Heon stared at the screen. What is this? Another status window appeared. This time, it presented him with two possible reward paths. The path of subjugation, or the path of friendship. Joo-Heon stared at the two options. So this was what Raven wanted him to choose. A method for controlling the relics? Why did Raven even care which path he chose? Was this some kind of test? Joo-Heon looked down at his injured hand. Despite the pain, he wasn't going to stop because of something as minor as an injured arm. He had already made his decision. The path of subjugation. Joo-Heon clenched his fist. Bright sparks surrounded his hand. The system immediately confirmed his choice. The reward for completing the quest had been activated. Joo-Heon frowned. But what exactly had he received? He looked around the restroom. Nothing seemed different. No new relic. No obvious reward. Nothing. Joo-Heon scratched his head. Was this really all he got? He couldn't help but complain. If you're going to imitate a game system, at least do it properly. After everything he had just endured, Joo-Heon expected something a little more impressive. But apparently, the system wasn't finished with him yet. Joo-Heon reached into his jeans pocket and pulled out a small silver pill. He opened his palm and stared at it. A relic. In the form of a pill? A status window appeared before him. Name, unknown rank, unknown type, consumable food. Joo-Heon frowned. So it's a consumable relic? He stared at the mysterious pill. Should he really eat something when he didn't even know what it was? Joo-Heon shrugged. Well, I've got nothing to lose. If the pill killed him, he could only blame his luck. Without wasting another second, he tossed it into his mouth. At the same time, Joo-Heon prepared to leave. He carefully pulled Muramasa out of the toilet, using a piece of paper to avoid touching it directly. Come on, we're going home. Joo-Heon needed to get out of this place. Then he glanced at the katana, although I probably shouldn't have dunked you in a toilet. The smell coming from the sword was absolutely horrible. Muramasa immediately threatened to kill him, but before Joo-Heon could respond, his eyes suddenly widened. The katana slipped from his hand. What the? The pill had started working. Joo-Heon narrowed one eye as sweat poured down his face. Then something incredible happened. The wounds covering his arm began disappearing. The injuries transformed into glowing energy before completely vanishing. Joo-Heon stared at his perfectly healed arm. A healing relic? He smiled and rubbed his wrist. What a ridiculous waste. Healing relics were incredibly rare and expensive. Yet somehow, he had just eaten one. But then, another system window appeared. The system announced that Joo-Heon had successfully endured the relic's effects and completely recovered. A new skill had also been activated. Joo-Heon's eyes widened. He had never seen an ability like this before. His irises began glowing with a brilliant purple light. A unique ability, created specifically for me? Joo-Heon couldn't help but wonder. Was this another gift from that mysterious raven? Meanwhile, the world was beginning to learn about what had happened. A news broadcast showed images of destroyed buildings. The report revealed that a massive earthquake had struck Seoul's administrative district during the night. But the earthquake wasn't the real story. At its epicenter, an unidentified object had suddenly appeared. Around 50 people were reportedly trapped inside. According to eyewitnesses, the mysterious structure was filled with deadly traps. The news anchor continued reporting that one of the survivors had claimed there was someone inside the mysterious object who intended to eliminate everyone trapped within it. A short-haired man with arched eyebrows appeared on the television. Kim-do was leading the broadcast. According to the report, the Korean government had already contacted Japan and was waiting for an explanation. Meanwhile, Russia and China were also demanding answers from the Japanese government. If Japan failed to explain what had happened, they would be forced to respond accordingly. The United States soon released an official statement as well. But before the broadcast could continue, someone turned off the television. Inside the central office of the Japanese research team, several high-ranking officials stood over a bowing man. They were furious. Do you have any idea what you've done? The information about the tombs was now being broadcast across the entire world. Worse, the incident had created a massive diplomatic crisis for Japan. The man's subordinate had caused an international scandal and died inside the tomb. And for someone in his position, failure was simply unacceptable. The man bowed deeply. "I sincerely apologize." Hiroyuki slowly raised his head. He forced a smile. This was an unforeseen circumstance. He explained that the Korean from the prophecy had appeared inside the tomb. But before he could continue, one of the officials angrily interrupted him. Wasn't Hiroyuki the one who had promised to handle everything? Even after learning that the Korean had appeared? Hiroyuki raised his hands defensively. Yes, they had discussed such a possibility. But there had been too many unexpected variables. Then his expression changed. There was another option. They could use the prophetic relic. With it, they could locate the Korean. The official frowned. Hadn't he already explained that the relic could only track someone after its owner made contact with them? Hiroyuki smiled. That's exactly why they could do it now. Behind him stood Abe. Their subordinate, who had been marked by the relic, had already made contact with Joo-Heon. The contact wasn't perfect, but it was enough. They could now track Joo-Heon's location. Hiroyuki gritted his teeth. The scientists who weren't the relic's original owners had been working tirelessly to find a way to activate it without suffering its effects. The TKVM group had invested enormous amounts of time and resources into this research. The official stared at him. Then he offered Hiroyuki one more chance. Hiroyuki smiled nervously. Thank you. He promised that they would do everything possible to eliminate the Korean. Elsewhere, under a clear blue sky, Joo-Heon lay comfortably on a bed inside a tall gray building. He examined his completely healed arm. His mind was focused on one thing: immunity. If this new ability could protect him from the harmful effects of relics, then it was an incredible power. Joo-Heon knew better than anyone how dangerous relic side effects could be. In his previous life, the problem had become so severe that healing relics eventually became some of the most valuable treasures in existence. He sat up while continuing to stare at his hand. If this ability could protect him from the effects of relics, then it was undoubtedly an incredibly rare power, perhaps something only he possessed. And that raised one important question. Was this all because of the Raven? Joo-Heon looked up. What exactly are you thinking? Why would the Raven give him an advantage over everyone else? What did it gain from doing so? The Raven was usually incredibly talkative. It constantly used the glowing system windows to communicate with him. So why was it silent now? Come on, answer me. Joo-Heon waited. Then a sound suddenly came from somewhere. Joo-Heon's eyebrows rose. He lowered his head. Then he smiled. You idiot. Before he could investigate further, his phone suddenly began ringing. Joo-Heon looked at the screen. It was Jinwoo. Why is he calling? He answered. How are my expensive minions doing? Immediately, an irritated voice came through the phone. Joo-Heon chuckled, but his expression quickly changed. Jinwoo was currently in Los Angeles. Apparently, he had checked the visitor list from the auction. There were 3 people with similar names. Joo-Heon immediately became interested. Jinwoo continued explaining what he had found. Joo-Heon swung his legs off the bed. Looks like I'll have to go there myself. Jinwoo's voice suddenly became louder. Wait, you're actually coming here? But before Joo-Heon could answer, a system notification appeared. Joo-Heon froze. An S-rank relic had been used on him, and his future had been predicted. Joo-Heon stared at the glowing window. His expression immediately darkened. This is really starting to piss me off. Jinwoo's voice came through the phone again. Joo-Heon? Are you still there? Joo-Heon smiled. He held the phone against his ear. Looks like I'll be staying a little longer than I planned. His eyes narrowed. There was somewhere else he needed to visit first. A man presented a thick book with a brown cover. According to him, it was an apocryphal work supposedly written by Prince Shotoku that contained a prophecy about Japan's future. Prince Shotoku had been a regent heavily involved in politics during his lifetime. However, rumors claimed that sometime during the Asuka period, he had secretly written a book capable of predicting the future. There was no concrete evidence that the book had ever existed. Yet, ancient scriptures frequently mentioned a mysterious prophetic relic connected to the legendary text. It was also considered one of the earliest relics to infiltrate human society. Joo-Heon imagined a young girl with long blonde hair tied into loose braids. Unlike ordinary relics, this one didn't create a tomb. Instead, it chose its owner. The prophetic scripture appeared at the girl's feet. Curious, the girl picked it up and examined the strange book. What kind of book is this? She wondered aloud, worried that leaving it on the ground would eventually damage it. Her name was Sasaki. She had been chosen by the prophetic relic. But when Sasaki continued walking, she left the book behind. That should have been the end of it. Except, the book followed her. Sasaki suddenly noticed it lying in front of her. She was confused. She tried everything. She burned it. She tore it apart. But no matter what she did, the book always appeared in front of her again. The more the relic followed her, the more frightened Sasaki became. Even when she found it sitting on a store counter, she could only stare at it helplessly. Eventually, the Japanese authorities discovered the existence of the prophetic relic. They recruited Sasaki into the Japanese research team. Her life changed overnight. In a photograph, Sasaki stood alongside her parents. Thanks to the relic's predictions, Japan was able to locate countless other relics. Her family was no longer struggling financially. It seemed like Sasaki's future had already been decided. She had the power to predict what was coming. But not everything goes according to plan. Sasaki sat at a table, pointing at a strange symbol in the prophetic book. What does this mean? The man beside her explained that the symbol was something only Sasaki could see. There was another problem. Sasaki had dropped out of school to dedicate herself to interpreting the relic's predictions. Because of that, she struggled to understand many complicated kanji. Without understanding the language, she couldn't fully utilize the prophetic relic's power. Eventually, another relic owner surpassed her abilities, and Sasaki died not long after. Her hand fell lifelessly to the ground. Meanwhile, at Incheon International Airport, Joo-Heon thought about the situation. Originally, he had planned to leave the owner of the prophetic relic alone. After all, she was destined to die soon anyway. But now things had changed. They had attempted to track him. That meant Joo-Heon could no longer ignore them. Worse, their connection to Kwon made him even more suspicious. He couldn't simply forget about that. Back in Japan, someone called out Sasaki's name from the doorway, but the girl was sitting in front of the television and didn't even react. A man entered the room. "Isn't it time to get to work?" Sasaki hugged a pillow tightly. She was more interested in the television. "Sasuke-san isn't just handsome. He's an amazing singer, too." She looked at the man sadly. "Do I really have to start right now? The best part is about to happen." The man stared at her. "You're watching this for the fourth time." Sasaki ignored him. She walked past him while still holding the pillow. "I still like it." The man awkwardly scratched the back of his head. "Right, sorry." A woman with her hair tied into a bun was already waiting for Sasaki. Sasaki finally sat down at the table. Once again, she had to decipher the complicated inscriptions inside the prophetic relic. The woman explained that if Sasaki encountered symbols she couldn't understand, she should carefully redraw them and show them to the research team. Sasaki nodded. Then she suddenly screamed. Both the man and woman immediately tensed. Sasaki jumped out of her chair and rushed toward the woman, hugging her tightly. The girl was terrified. "This book says I'm going to die." Everyone froze. This time, the writing was unmistakably clear. It said that Sasaki would be killed. The strange hieroglyphs began glowing brightly. Sasaki couldn't understand why this prediction was different. She clenched her fists. It has to be because of that Korean. After all, Abe had also died because of him. The others immediately approached her. The woman tried to calm Sasaki down. If the relic can predict the future, then surely there's more information. She urged Sasaki to concentrate and look again. The man leaned against the chair. "She's right. If Joo-Heon really intended to come to Japan and kill Sasaki, the prophetic relic should have provided more details." Meanwhile, the target's arrival time appeared on a screen. The plane was scheduled to land at Handa Airport. The Japanese forces were already on high alert. Their target was a Korean relic user, and he had finally arrived. Should we detain him at the airport? The answer was immediate. No, they would let him enter Japan. For now, their goal wasn't to capture Joo-Heon. They wanted to observe him. More importantly, they needed to use the prophetic relic to track his movements. Joo-Heon walked through the airport alongside the other passengers. The Japanese team continued monitoring him. "Are we having any problems tracking his movements?" The answer came quickly. No, everything was working perfectly. The prophetic relic could sense Joo-Heon's presence. Hiroyuki raised his hand. This was their chance. Use this opportunity. They had finally found a way to deal with their biggest problem. They would solve everything once and for all, and this time they would make the first move. Elsewhere, Joo-Heon sat alone at a table. A plate of sushi sat in front of him. He picked up a piece with his chopsticks and dipped it into soy sauce. After taking a bite, his eyes widened. As expected, this sushi had been prepared by a true master. It was delicious. Joo-Heon continued eating while checking his notebook, but he was starting to get impatient. How long are they planning to wait? He had been openly threatening Sasaki for some time now. Surely, they should have made their move already. Joo-Heon glanced at his notes. Then he smiled. There was something he was counting on. The prophetic relic should have already shown Sasaki what he had written, and if it had, there was no way the relic could simply ignore such a threat. Joo-Heon leaned back with a confident grin. The Japanese team thought they were secretly tracking him, but they didn't realize that Joo-Heon had already figured out exactly what they were doing. Now, all he had to do was wait for them to make their move. Joo-Heon deliberately moved as slowly as possible. He knew the Japanese team had been struggling to track him for quite some time, so there was no reason to make things easy for them. If they wanted to find him, he would simply give them more time. Joo-Heon glanced around. By now, the Japanese soldiers should have already arrived. Meanwhile, a man hiding around the corner raised his index finger to his lips. Shh. The people on the other side quietly apologized. Sasaki approached the man wearing a white cap. Are you ready? The girl nervously nodded. Is this really okay? The man reassured her. According to their plan, Sasaki only needed to meet Joo-Heon's gaze. That was all. Once she looked directly at him, the prophetic relic would be able to track his future. The man explained that Joo-Heon didn't even know what Sasaki looked like, so everything should go smoothly. Sasaki frowned. She had been told that her prophetic relic was the strongest weapon they had. That meant she had the advantage. At least, that's what everyone believed. Sasaki took a deep breath. She only needed to walk inside. Joo-Heon was sitting at a table when he heard his food had arrived. He turned around and smiled. Sasaki froze. The moment she saw him, her eyes widened. He's handsome. He was even cooler than Seokse. Sasaki nervously covered her face. And they're planning to kill someone this handsome? What a complete waste. She walked toward Joo-Heon and placed the sushi on his table. Joo-Heon looked at her. Thank you. Sasaki smiled. But then Joo-Heon's expression changed slightly. He had already figured it out. So this is the owner of the prophetic relic. Joo-Heon reached for the hilt of his sword. It was impressive that she had actually come to meet him herself. The Japanese team immediately noticed Joo-Heon's movement through the surveillance cameras. He drew his sword. The man holding the walkie-talkie immediately ordered everyone to prepare. Sasaki is in danger. A soldier in a white cap tightened his grip on his weapon. What is she doing in there? Why hasn't she come out yet? The man sitting beside him looked equally confused. What is that girl thinking? Suddenly the door opened. Everyone froze. Sasaki stepped outside. But she wasn't running. She wasn't injured. And Joo-Heon wasn't chasing her. Instead, Sasaki suddenly turned around. Are you a fan of Appa? Joo-Heon stared at her. What? Sasaki smiled awkwardly. Sorry, are you an actor? The Japanese soldiers watching through the cameras were completely confused. Why did she close the door? One of them pointed at the screen. Look, Joo-Heon and Sasaki were talking. The soldiers assumed Sasaki was trying to gather information from him. Coordinate with Captain Mori. Joo-Heon stared at Sasaki. What did you just say? Sasaki raised her hand. Wait, she pulled out her phone. You probably don't understand me. After typing something, she held the phone in front of Joo-Heon. The message was written in English. I want to be friends with you. Joo-Heon stared at the screen. His expression twisted. What is wrong with this girl? How could she possibly be acting this casually? She was standing in front of someone the Japanese government considered a dangerous enemy. And instead of being afraid, she wanted to be friends. Joo-Heon smiled. Actually, this could work in his favor. He took the phone from her hands and typed something. When he turned the screen back toward her, Sasaki's eyes sparkled. She smiled happily. Meanwhile, the soldiers outside were growing impatient. Did you hear anything? Before they could get an answer, crash. A table suddenly flew through the doorway. The soldiers froze. What the hell? A rope suddenly dropped from above. Then another. And another. The soldiers screamed as the relic ropes wrapped around them. Within seconds, the entire group was tied up. One of them struggled helplessly. What is happening? Joo-Heon stepped out with Sasaki. He smiled. I knew you would try something like this. That's why he had already installed a relic beforehand. The Japanese soldiers had walked directly into his trap. Joo-Heon and Sasaki continued down the hallway as the soldiers desperately shouted after them. Joo-Heon didn't even bother looking back. Don't worry about them. He had already made sure they wouldn't cause any more trouble. Then, Joo-Heon looked at Sasaki. Do you want to go on a date with me? Joo-Heon and Sasaki soon sat together at a table. Sasaki curiously watched him use his phone. Joo-Heon handed it back to her. Sasaki's eyes widened. Do you really want to go on a date with me? Then she immediately asked another question. Do you speak Japanese? Joo-Heon adjusted his jacket. A little. He glanced at her. Did you come here alone? Sasaki looked surprised. Joo-Heon continued. The Japanese army should be with you. He smirked. There's no way they'd let you go with me, willingly. They don't exactly like me. Joo-Heon placed his hand on Sasaki's head. Let's run away together. He turned around. And don't fall behind. Sasaki blushed. He doesn't seem that scary anymore. The Japanese forces quickly realized what had happened. They chased after Joo-Heon and Sasaki. Stop. But Joo-Heon didn't slow down. Sasaki looked at him nervously. Is this really the man who's supposed to kill me? Eventually, they reached a quieter area. Joo-Heon stopped. That's far enough. Sasaki stood behind him. She suddenly remembered something. Oh no. She had left her prophetic relic at home. That meant she couldn't read Joo-Heon's future. But she wasn't afraid. Joo-Heon suddenly raised his sword. The blade stopped directly against her neck. Sasaki remained surprisingly calm. Joo-Heon narrowed his eyes. Don't make unnecessary noise. He held out his hand. Give me your phone. Sasaki handed it over. Joo-Heon smirked. Good girl. Then crack. He stepped on the phone and shattered it. Sasaki's eyes widened. What are you doing? Joo-Heon immediately placed a finger against his lips. Quiet. He rested the sword against her shoulder. I'm just getting rid of anything they could use to track us. Joo-Heon turned Sasaki around. If the Japanese forces tried interfering now, things would become annoying. Then he leaned closer. His voice dropped to a whisper. I know who you are. Sasaki froze. Joo-Heon looked directly at her. You're the owner of the prophetic relic. Tears appeared in Sasaki's eyes. She finally understood. This man wasn't simply dangerous. He had known everything from the beginning. A glass of ice juice sat on the table as Joo-Heon and Sasaki sat opposite each other. The waiter smiled politely. Please enjoy your stay. The door slowly closed behind him. Sasaki stared at it with tears in her eyes. Joo-Heon calmly ordered a rope. Bind her hands. Sasaki's eyes widened. You liar. She couldn't believe it. He had actually lied to her about the date. Joo-Heon simply smirked while eating his ice cream. What are you talking about? Aren't we having a great time? Sasaki burst into tears. Are you going to kill me like the relic predicted? Joo-Heon casually held up his spoon. That was my plan from the beginning. He pointed toward his bag. I even have Muramasa with me. If you had come any closer back then, I would have chopped your head off. Joo-Heon looked at her. You're just lucky you're stupid enough to have brought us this far. He placed a notebook on the table. Take out your relic. Sasaki nervously stuttered. I left it at home. Joo-Heon rolled up her sleeve. A strange mark was visible on her skin. This appeared after you started using the relic? He grabbed her hand. Touch it. Sasaki looked confused. By doing that, you can summon the relic. Joo-Heon couldn't believe what he was hearing. You don't even know the basics? Sasaki touched the mark. A moment later, the prophetic relic appeared. Joo-Heon sat down. Now start writing. He continued eating his ice cream. Write down everything you saw. Sasaki nervously stared at him. And if you miss even one line, Joo-Heon smiled. I'll kill you. With her hands tied, Sasaki began writing. Time passed. Joo-Heon had already finished his ice cream. The glass in front of him was empty, and he was now scrolling through his phone out of boredom. Suddenly, he looked up. Why did you stop? Sasaki's hand trembled. My hand hurts. She nervously asked how much more she had to write. Joo-Heon glanced at his phone. As much as what's written there. Sasaki stared at the enormous amount of writing. I'll give you the prophetic relic. She desperately begged him. Just let me go. Joo-Heon immediately refused. Keep writing. He wasn't interested in taking the relic. If he wanted it, he could have taken it himself. But the prophetic relic was an S-rank relic, one of the highest-ranked relics in existence. And there was another problem. Joo-Heon glanced at his injured arm. Even after subduing Muramasa, his body had suffered considerable damage. Trying to subdue another powerful relic right now wouldn't just damage his arm, it could seriously hurt his entire body. And unfortunately, he didn't have any healing relics. Suddenly, bang, the Japanese army stormed inside. The woman working there immediately tried to stop them. You'll scare away the customers. Hiroyuki ignored her. We'll be finished quickly. Don't interfere. He gestured toward his soldiers. Check every exit. The soldiers immediately spread throughout the building. Search every room. Joo-Heon looked toward the doorway. They're already here. He turned toward Sasaki. How much have you written? Sasaki looked confused. I'm almost finished. Joo-Heon took the pages from her. This is enough. Sasaki's eyes lit up. Can I leave now? Joo-Heon paused. One more thing. He slowly raised Muramasa. Sasaki's face turned pale. Don't. She desperately begged him. I'll write more fortunes. I'll tell you anything. Isn't that enough? Joo-Heon stared at her. Do you really think you're important to me? He looked down at the notebook. You think you're using the prophetic relic. His expression became cold. But you've got it backward. Joo-Heon raised Muramasa above her. The relic has been using you this entire time. Sasaki's eyes filled with tears. Joo-Heon smirked. This is the only way you'll survive. Then slash. Muramasa plunged directly into the notebook. Brilliant blue sparks exploded from the pages. Sasaki screamed. Her eyes widened in horror. Whatever she saw inside the notebook left her completely speechless. Then, suddenly, she collapsed. At that exact moment, screams echoed throughout the caf. Joo-Heon looked around. Countless system notifications appeared before his eyes. One message immediately caught his attention. Because the user destroyed a high-ranking relic, the title, Great Hunter, has been awarded. Joo-Heon stared at the endless notifications. Why are there so many this time? The Japanese soldiers rushed into the room. We found him. Hiroyuki followed behind them. What happened here? His eyes immediately fell on the notebook. Then he noticed the missing relic. What happened to the prophetic relic? Joo-Heon glanced at Hiroyuki from the corner of his eye. He smirked. It's almost completely destroyed. Hiroyuki's expression twisted with rage. You. He pointed directly at Joo-Heon. Kill him. At that very moment, every soldier in the room raised their rifles and aimed them directly at Joo-Heon. The atmosphere instantly became suffocating. One wrong move, and dozens of bullets would tear straight through him. Yet instead of showing even the slightest hint of fear, Joo-Heon simply smiled a slow, mocking smile that only made everyone even more uneasy. With complete confidence, he looked at Hiroyuki and sarcastically remarked that it was quite the joke. If Hiroyuki was really so confident in his own strength, then he should go ahead and try pulling the trigger. Hiroyuki's face twisted with rage. The sheer audacity of this man made his teeth grind together. Then, without warning, Joo-Heon casually tossed something into the air. Catch, you can have this. Every soldier instinctively looked upward. A small package spun through the air before dropping toward Hiroyuki. The moment he caught it, everyone realized what it was. It was the mochi relic, the magical rice cake from the brother sun and sister moon relic. Joo-Heon smirked. Since the relic originally belonged to Abe's excavation team, he figured it was only fair to return it. But before anyone could relax, he added one final sentence. They say people would kill for a taste of this mochi. The instant those words left his mouth, Joo-Heon's body slowly dissolved into smoke before everyone's eyes. Within seconds, he had completely vanished. Hiroyuki's eyes widened. No, where did he go? He frantically looked around the room while tightly clutching the mochi relic. Then he frowned. What exactly is that bastard planning now? Before he could think any further, someone nearby suddenly sniffed the air. What's that smell? The next second, the expressions on every soldier changed. Their eyes became clouded. Their breathing grew heavier. Almost instantly, two soldiers lunged straight at Hiroyuki. Give it to me. That's mine. Hiroyuki staggered backward in disbelief. What are you idiots doing? He immediately grabbed his sidearm and pointed it at his own men. This mochi belongs to me. Learn to respect your commanding officer. But nobody was listening anymore. The relic's enchantment had completely taken over. Every soldier became obsessed with possessing the mochi relic. Within seconds, the entire room erupted into complete chaos as soldiers tackled each other, wrestled across the floor, and even pointed their weapons at one another, all over a single piece of enchanted mochi. Meanwhile, far away from the chaos, Joo-Heon calmly sat inside a plane preparing for takeoff. Looking out the window with a satisfied smile, he couldn't help but admire how useful that relic truly was. There wasn't a better escape relic anywhere in the world. The enchanted mochi didn't just captivate everyone who smelled it. It also instantly teleported its rightful owner to safety. Relaxing in his seat, he opened the notebook containing copies of the prophecy relic's predictions. Now that he finally had some peace and quiet, it was time to figure out what the prophecy had actually foretold about him. As he flipped through the pages, he remembered something important. The TKBM group had been supporting relic research in Japan for years. If Sasaki Yuka had ever crossed paths with Chairman Kwon, then the prophecy relic should have recorded something about him as well. Carefully turning each page, Joo-Heon searched for any prediction connected to the mysterious chairman. Eventually, he found it. His eyes narrowed as he quietly read the prophecy. It stated that within 1 month, he would descend into an underground world overflowing with greed and desire. Beneath that prediction was another chilling sentence. There, the great calamity shall begin. Joo-Heon lowered the notebook slightly. An underground world overflowing with greed and lust. There was only one place that description could possibly refer to. Midas, the world's largest underground relic auction, hidden beneath Las Vegas. A place where priceless relics, stolen treasures, and unimaginable wealth exchanged hands every single day. Joo-Heon recalled the 2 men he had sent to infiltrate Midas. They were gathering information on Chairman Kwon, because the initials JK matched 3 different individuals connected to the auction. One of them had to be Kwon Seok-won. It seemed the prophecy relic had been pointing directly toward him all along. Joo-Heon leaned back in his seat and continued reading. The final sentence still bothered him. The great calamity. Closing his eyes, memories from his previous life resurfaced. He remembered countless crimson beams piercing the heavens, ancient tombs appearing across every continent, relics awakening everywhere, the entire world collapsing into chaos. That was the great calamity. It was the event that revealed the existence of relics to the entire world. After that day, tomb raiding became one of the most dangerous and profitable occupations on Earth. But something didn't add up. According to Joo-Heon's memories, the great calamity wasn't supposed to happen this early. As the aircraft slowly began preparing for landing, he read the prophecy once more. One particular line immediately caught his attention. The deity who understands your greed shall ask for your cooperation. Joo-Heon's eyes widened. He immediately understood what it meant. A god-class relic was about to appear at the Midas auction. He couldn't help but grin. So that's how Kwon Seok-won became so powerful in my previous life. If Kwon had obtained that divine relic, everything suddenly made perfect sense. Joo-Heon's smile slowly turned into a wicked grin. If that's really the relic he obtained, then this time I'm taking it first. Meanwhile, inside the headquarters of Japan's Relic Research Division, the atmosphere couldn't have been more different. A military officer stood before several high-ranking officials. Sasaki Yuka has regained consciousness, but she's still extremely weak. He paused before continuing. It also appears that the prophecy relic has been completely destroyed. The conference room instantly fell silent. One executive frowned. So you're telling me Captain Mori and the members of his unit ended up shooting one another with their own service weapons, and they're all seriously injured? The soldier nodded. Yes, sir, they're all currently receiving treatment. Suddenly, one of the executives slammed both hands onto the table before shooting to his feet. Does any of that even matter anymore? Do you people actually think this is some kind of joke? Another executive quickly tried calming him down. We need to stay rational. But the chairman refused to calm down. How am I supposed to stay calm? Our greatest strategic relic has been destroyed. Our military has become an international laughingstock, and one man is responsible for all of it. A young woman quietly stepped into the hallway while speaking on her phone. She calmly reported that the prophecy relic had been destroyed. Japan's self-defense forces had also suffered tremendous losses during the incident. The man on the other end immediately exploded with anger. You're telling me one person did all of this? The woman continued walking through the corridor. Based on everything we've confirmed, yes, it was all done by a single individual. Hearing that answer, the man couldn't hide his disbelief. Who the hell is this lunatic? The camera shifted, revealing the enormous TKBM Corporation logo displayed prominently on the wall. The woman respectfully asked what their next course of action would be. Should we seek revenge for everything we've lost? There was a brief silence. Then the man calmly answered, No, we won't seek revenge. The woman stopped walking. She couldn't understand his reasoning. But we've lost years of research. Our investment in relic studies has practically been wiped out. The man stood beside a massive office window overlooking the city skyline. Without raising his voice, he calmly replied, That's one way of looking at it. But there's another. If someone possesses enough power to destroy the prophecy relic without hesitation, then that person is far more valuable as an ally than as an enemy. The woman frowned. She wasn't convinced. He destroyed one of the world's most important relics without showing even the slightest hesitation. What happens if he destroys one of our company's relics next? What if he destroys the president's relic? A slow smile spread across the man's face. Rather than looking worried, he almost looked excited. Then he quietly laughed. That won't happen, as long as we pay him well. He adjusted his glasses before continuing. Money. There is nothing in this world that money cannot buy. After a brief pause, he gave his final order. For now, keep watching Joo-Heon. I want to know everything he does. The woman nodded silently. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada was alive with dazzling lights, despite the late hour. Beneath the glittering skyline, inside one of the city's most luxurious hotels, seated beside the enormous window was Joo-Heon, calmly sipping a glass of juice. He stared out at the sea of neon lights before placing his glass back onto the table with a faint sigh. They're late. His voice carried obvious annoyance. I told those idiots exactly when to get here. Just then, loud voices echoed from the restaurant entrance. Joo-Heon glanced sideways. There stood Hyun, accompanied by his partner, arguing with one of the hotel's security guards. The guard blocked their path with a professional smile while repeatedly explaining the rules. Hyun immediately spotted Joo-Heon sitting across the restaurant. There he is. We're with that guy over there. We've got business to discuss. The guard, however, remained unmoved. I'm sorry, gentlemen. This restaurant is reserved exclusively for registered guests attending the Midas auction. If you are not official participants, I'm afraid I have to ask you to leave. Hearing that only irritated Hyun even more. Will you shut up already? We're telling you we're here for him. Joo-Heon rested his cheek against one hand, quietly watching the argument unfold with an exhausted expression. The guard sighed. If you continue disturbing our guests, we'll have no choice but to escort you out by force. Hyun completely lost his temper. What are you even saying? Speak Korean. The entire restaurant turned to stare. Joo-Heon finally couldn't hold back anymore. We're in America, and you're demanding they speak Korean? Hyun froze. Only then did he realize exactly how ridiculous he sounded. Without another word, Joo-Heon casually raised his hand toward the guard. They're with me. They're my guests. I'll take responsibility for them. The guard's expression instantly changed. My deepest apologies, sir. I sincerely apologize for the misunderstanding. The three men stared blankly. One sentence from Joo-Heon had completely changed the guard's attitude. As soon as he disappeared, Hyun turned toward Joo-Heon with his jaw hanging open. You can actually speak English? A sarcastic grin appeared on Joo-Heon's face. That's not important. Sit down. Tell me what you found. A short while later, Hyun slid a small notebook across the table. We investigated everyone with the initials SK who will be attending this month's auction. Joo-Heon quietly flipped through every page. His eyes scanned the information one name at a time. Then, a satisfied smile slowly spread across his face. Perfect. He had found exactly what he had been looking for. Looking at Hyun and the others, he silently admitted they had proven more useful than he'd expected. Unable to contain his curiosity, Hyun pointed across the table. So, did you find your guy? Without looking up from the notebook, Joo-Heon calmly answered. I did. He tossed the notebook onto the table. So this is the fake identity that Kwon Tae-jun used in my previous life. His suspicion had been confirmed. Closing the notebook, Joo-Heon picked up a luxurious green catalog lying beside it. This catalog listed every relic scheduled to appear at tonight's Midas auction. Quietly flipping through its pages, he thought to himself, if Tae-jun personally came here, then there has to be something extraordinary being sold tonight. I already confirmed that much beforehand. Slowly turning each page, he carefully examined every relic listed inside. There were priceless historical artifacts, ancient weapons, lost treasures, legendary relics from every civilization imaginable. Joo-Heon studied every single item. If the prophecy was correct, then somewhere in this catalog should be a god-class relic. Yet, no matter how many pages he turned, there wasn't a single relic worthy of that description. His brows slowly furrowed. That's strange. He quietly muttered several famous relic names to himself. The Code of Hammurabi, Shakespeare's pen, neither of them appeared. Hyun leaned over in confusion. What exactly are you looking for? Joo-Heon didn't answer. Instead, he continued flipping through the catalog. There are still a few things I'd like to confirm. Suddenly, Hyun shot to his feet and slammed both hands onto the table. Wait a second. You're not seriously planning to participate in the auction, are you? Without even lifting his eyes from the catalog, Joo-Heon calmly replied, I am. The answer nearly gave Hyun a heart attack. This is the Midas auction. The opening bids alone are ridiculous. We only came here to make connections with wealthy collectors. We never planned on actually buying anything. Guests throughout the restaurant began glancing over after hearing Hyun shouting. Completely unfazed, Joo-Heon slowly closed the catalog. Then he looked directly at Hyun. A playful smile appeared on his face. You actually think I don't have enough money? Without waiting for a reply, he stood up from his chair and started walking toward the exit. Hyun and the others hurried after him. Hands tucked casually into his pockets, Joo-Heon stopped beside the hotel doors before looking back over his shoulder. Hyun, you seem to have forgotten something. This is Las Vegas, the city built on gambling. A confident grin spread across his face. Sometimes all it takes is a little money to make a fortune. Hyun's face instantly turned pale. Don't tell me. You're planning to earn auction money by gambling? He broke into a cold sweat. This guy's completely insane. A few hours later, Yoon could only stand there speechless. The digital counter on the slot machine continued climbing higher and higher and higher. The numbers had become absolutely absurd. Can slot machines even display numbers this high? Around them, casino patrons had gathered into a massive crowd. Every single person stared at the machine in complete disbelief. Meanwhile, Joo-Heon calmly sat in front of the slot machine, as though nothing unusual was happening. A faint, confident smile rested on his face. To everyone else, it looked like impossible luck. But Joo-Heon knew exactly what he was doing. The jackpot counter continued spinning until it finally stopped on an astronomical amount. Hyun wiped the sweat from his forehead. I've never seen someone win this much money from slot machines. If you don't cash out now, you could lose everything in one spin. Joo-Heon simply smiled. A few moments later, the machine printed a payout receipt. He casually pulled it free before waving it in front of Hyun's face. Come on, we're going to the cashier. Time to exchange this for real money. Hyun grabbed the receipt. The moment he saw the amount printed on it, he screamed, That's insane. You've completely overdone it. What if someone decides to kill us for this much money? Just as they started walking away, a voice called out behind them. Sir, Joo-Heon stopped and turned around. A casino security officer approached politely. If you don't mind, we'd like to carry out a routine inspection. He smiled awkwardly before continuing. You see, this is the first time in our casino's history that someone has won this many consecutive jackpots. Joo-Heon merely shrugged. No problem. He calmly stretched both arms out. Go ahead, it's just a waste of time. I don't have anything on me. The security officer nodded and carefully searched him from head to toe. After a thorough inspection, the man looked slightly embarrassed. You're right, it seems perfectly normal. Then, his eyes stopped on something. There was a small golden keychain attached to one of Joo-Heon's fingers. The guard pointed directly at it. "Excuse me, what exactly is that?" Joo-Heon casually held up the tiny golden folding knife and smiled. "It's nothing special," he said. "Just a cheap little trinket I bought, because I liked the color." The casino security officer took the knife from his hand and examined it carefully from every angle. After inspecting it for a moment, he nodded. "It really does look ordinary. There doesn't seem to be anything suspicious about it." Satisfied, the guard handed the knife back. A faint, knowing smile appeared on Joo-Heon's face. "Of course it looks ordinary. That's exactly the point." Deep down, he couldn't help but chuckle. The keychain wasn't an ordinary accessory at all. It was actually the golden axe relic, perfectly disguised. Just then, the relic rumbled inside his hand. "Seriously? How much longer do I have to stay in this boring little form?" The golden axe sounded thoroughly annoyed. Joo-Heon ignored the complaint. Changing a relic's appearance was one of the most valuable abilities a relic owner could possess. A powerful relic that looked like nothing more than an everyday object could fool almost anyone. And this particular relic wasn't useful only because it could disguise itself. The golden axe possessed another incredible ability. It could instinctively sense wealth, value, and fortune. Joo-Heon remembered sitting in front of the slot machines earlier, with the disguised axe quietly resting in his hand. That was exactly how he'd known which machine was hiding the next jackpot. The relic naturally gravitated toward the greatest concentration of value. Not only could it identify winning slot machines, it could even guide him toward whichever casino held the greatest opportunity to make money. For someone like Joo-Heon, it was an unbelievably useful relic. A few minutes later, after leaving the inspection area, Yoon could barely contain his curiosity. "You actually got away with it? Seriously, what's your secret?" Joo-Heon didn't even bother answering. "Come on, time to move to another casino." Joo-Heon walked straight to the cashier's counter and placed the massive payout receipt on the desk. Wearing a relaxed smile, he calmly said, "I'd like to cash out." The entire amount. The cashier accepted the receipt. The moment she saw the total printed on it, her eyes widened. "All of it?" Her hands visibly trembled. "I'm terribly sorry, sir. For an amount this large, I'll have to escort you to our VIP room first." "I'll pass," Joo-Heon answered without hesitation. "Just hurry up and bring me the money." Not long afterwards, the group had moved into a private lounge while the payout was being prepared. Several enormous bags overflowing with cash now rested on the table. Yoon stared at them in complete disbelief. "I've never seen this much money in my life." His companions were just as stunned. Joo-Heon quietly took another sip of his beer before looking at them. "You seem to have misunderstood something." Everyone froze. "This money isn't yours." Silence filled the room. The three men awkwardly forced smiles onto their faces. "Oh, of course, we knew that," although judging by their expressions, they clearly hadn't. Yoon picked up a small bundle of banknotes and stared at it in amazement. Then he looked back at Joo-Heon. "Do you really have to participate in the auction? Wouldn't it be smarter to take all this money and go back to Korea?" Joo-Heon calmly shook his head. No, for him, gambling had never been the objective. The money itself wasn't his goal either. The only reason he'd come to Las Vegas was to obtain the relics hidden inside the Midas auction. And, if he wanted to stand on equal footing with Kwon Tae-jun in the future, he would need far more money than this. Setting his empty beer glass back onto the table, Joo-Heon stood up. "Finish eating. We're heading out. The second round starts now." Hyun nearly choked. "You're gambling again?" Cold sweat rolled down his forehead. A short while later, the group arrived at another famous casino. Goodbye World Casino. Inside Joo-Heon's pocket, the disguised golden axe suddenly laughed. "Heh, I can smell money everywhere." Then it complained again. "So when are you finally changing me back to my original form?" Joo-Heon simply held up the tiny golden folding knife. "Enough talking. Just find me the next jackpot." The golden axe instantly became enthusiastic. "Got it. Leave it to me. Let's see where all the money's hiding." Just then, several system notifications suddenly appeared in front of Joo-Heon. He blinked. Another message immediately followed. Joo-Heon frowned. He understood why. Places overflowing with greed, desire, suffering, and obsession were paradise for relics. Casinos were practically heaven to them. "I hate giving these damned relics what they want," he muttered quietly. Tightening his grip around the disguised golden axe, he planned to earn enough money as quickly as possible before leaving. But before he could take another step, a loud scream echoed across the casino. Joo-Heon instantly turned toward the sound. A young man wearing a purple t-shirt was desperately struggling to hold onto his backpack. It's inside. It's going crazy." Without hesitation, Joo-Heon snatched the backpack from him and unzipped it. The moment he looked inside, his expression changed completely. Lying within the bag was the silver axe relic. The relic trembled violently while shouting over and over, "It's coming. It's almost here. It's coming very soon." Joo-Heon immediately remembered the pair of relics. The golden axe possessed the ability to locate wealth, fortune, and valuable treasures. The silver axe, however, served an entirely different purpose. It could detect and mark anyone who posed a threat to its master. Joo-Heon's eyes narrowed. The warmth disappeared from his expression, replaced by cold suspicion. Staring directly at the frantic silver axe, he silently wondered, "What exactly are you reacting to?" Suddenly, loud shouting erupted from the center of the casino. Two men had grabbed each other by the collars, and one of them screamed that the other was nothing but a con artist. What started as a simple argument quickly spiraled into complete chaos. People began shoving each other in panic. Poker chips scattered across the floor. Slot machines toppled over one after another. Someone's wallet was snatched. Several guests started fighting over dropped money, while others screamed and rushed for the exits. Yoon stood frozen. What the hell is happening? Before he could process the situation, a man armed with a knife quietly crept up behind him. At the same moment, another attacker charged straight at Joo-Heon, shouting, "Hand over all your money." Joo-Heon reacted instantly. Before anyone even realized what had happened, the attacker was already lying on the floor, screaming in pain. Joo-Heon looked down at him calmly. Judging from the man's clothes, he looked like nothing more than an ordinary casino employee. "So you decided to rob a random customer? Do you even realize what you're doing?" His expression slowly became more serious. Something wasn't right. There shouldn't have been a tomb nearby. No gate was supposed to appear here. Then why was everyone suddenly losing their minds? Just then, a terrifying presence sent chills racing down his spine. It was so overwhelming that every instinct in his body screamed at him. Joo-Heon immediately spun around. Walking calmly through the crowd was a beautiful young woman with long platinum blonde hair. Unlike everyone else, who was panicking and fighting, she remained perfectly composed. She wore an elegant evening dress that made her stand out effortlessly among the terrified crowd. The moment Joo-Heon saw her, his eyes widened. Cold sweat immediately ran down his face. Meanwhile, Hyun and the others reacted completely differently. "She's gorgeous. Who is she?" Without answering, Joo-Heon suddenly shouted, "Pack everything. We're leaving." Hyun blinked. "What?" Joo-Heon ignored him. "Of all the people I could have met, why her?" Now everything made sense. The chaos, the people acting irrationally, the unbelievable bad luck spreading throughout the casino. There was only one person capable of causing something like this. His eyes remained fixed on the approaching woman, Irina Hilton, the youngest daughter of the powerful Hilton banking family. "Move." Joo-Heon barked. His group hurriedly grabbed their belongings and rushed toward the exit. Irina only caught a brief glimpse of them disappearing through the crowd. As Joo-Heon walked, memories from his previous life surfaced. After the Great Catastrophe, countless relic users had appeared across the world, but among them, the strongest possessed divine-class relics. People capable of completely subduing those relics stood above everyone else. Eventually, the world began giving them titles worthy of their overwhelming power. They became legends. Among those legendary relic users was Irina Hilton. She wielded one of the most horrifying relics in existence. Because of that relic, people eventually gave her a terrifying title, the Goddess of Misfortune. Anyone who remained close to her gradually lost their luck. Some lost their fortunes overnight. Others watched their businesses collapse. Entire corporations went bankrupt simply because they crossed paths with her. In Joo-Heon's previous life, Irina had even become one of the catalysts behind a global financial crisis. That alone made her someone to avoid at all costs. Joo-Heon quickened his pace toward the exit. He wanted nothing to do with her. "Excuse me," Irina suddenly called out. Joo-Heon stiffened. Turning slightly, he saw her running directly toward him. Without hesitation, he pretended not to hear and immediately sped up. "Just ignore her." He reached for the exit door. The instant his fingers touched the handle crack, a violent electric shock shot through his entire body. Several system windows instantly appeared before his eyes. Another message appeared immediately afterwards. Then another. Cold sweat poured down Joo-Heon's face. "Seriously?" Before he could react, Irina caught up to him. She rushed past the stunned Hyun and grabbed both of Joo-Heon's hands with a bright smile. "Please. Just hear me out." Joo-Heon sighed internally. "Great, now I can't escape." Irina smiled innocently. "I've been looking everywhere for you." The moment she held on to him, a dark purple aura spread across his body. More system notifications appeared. Joo-Heon's expression darkened. Without hesitation, he slapped her hands away. "Please stay away from me." Irina froze. Immediately realizing she'd gone too far, she bowed apologetically. "I'm so sorry. I just got a little too excited." Meanwhile, Hyun looked completely confused. "What on earth is wrong with you? You look like you'd seen a ghost." Just then, the young man carrying the silver axe suddenly gasped. I know who she is. Everyone turned toward him. That's Irina Hilton, the daughter of the Hilton family. At first, nobody believed him. Then another man suddenly remembered. Wait, he's right. I've seen her picture online before. Irina shyly hugged her handbag before looking back at Joo-Heon. You're the person everyone has been talking about. The man who won all that money in the casino, aren't you? Joo-Heon frowned. I've been looking all over for you. Irina continued with an innocent smile. If it isn't too much trouble, would you tell me how you managed to win so much? Joo-Heon simply looked away. Why would someone from one of the richest families in the world care about gambling? Without another word, he answered, You've mistaken me for someone else. Then he walked away. Irina stood there speechless. Yoon immediately caught up with Joo-Heon and wrapped an arm around his shoulders. Are you insane? Do you even know who she is? That's Irina Hilton. She came all the way here looking for you. And you just ignored her? Joo-Heon's expression only became darker. Hyun kept talking. You're throwing away the opportunity of a lifetime. Are you even listening? Just then, Hyun suddenly waved toward Irina. Miss Hilton, I'm sorry about him. Joo-Heon immediately turned around. You idiot. Only, the scene before him had completely changed. All three of his companions were lying flat on the ground, clutching their stomachs in agony. A crimson aura surrounded their bodies. They groaned in pain. My stomach, it hurts. Joo-Heon pinched the bridge of his nose. Idiots. He walked over and dragged them to their feet. I told you to stay away from her. A little later, Joo-Heon and Hyun sat together in a quiet park outside the casino. Joo-Heon looked at him seriously. Listen carefully. No matter what happens, stay away from Irina Hilton. At all costs. Hyun blinked. Why? Instead of answering, Joo-Heon stood up. When those idiots recover, find somewhere safe. Guard the money. Hyun frowned. Where are you going? To the auction. As soon as I'm finished, I'll call you. Bring the money when I do. As he walked away, Joo-Heon couldn't help feeling irritated. Originally, he had planned to earn much more money before the auction began. But now, that was no longer an option. With Irina's cursed aura affecting his luck, continuing to gamble would only end in disaster. There was no choice. He would have to enter the auction with the money he already had. A short while later, Joo-Heon stepped inside the luxurious auction hall. The enormous venue was already packed with wealthy collectors, businessmen, and influential figures from around the world. Blending naturally into the crowd, he silently made his way toward the entrance. Irina shouldn't have any reason to follow me here. Just then you're blocking the entrance. A cold voice interrupted his thoughts. Joo-Heon turned around. Standing before him was a young man wearing glasses. His expression was filled with arrogance. This entrance is reserved for VIP guests. Ordinary people use the other entrance, so move. Joo-Heon stared at him for a moment. Then his eyes narrowed. Yoon Shi-Hoo, Kwon Tae-jun's trusted right-hand man. He looked much younger than Joo-Heon remembered from his previous life. If Shi-Woo was here, then there was only one conclusion. He was here too. A few seconds later, Kwon Tae-jun himself walked toward the entrance. Shi-Woo immediately smiled respectfully and stepped aside. Chairman, this way. Joo-Heon's fists unconsciously tightened. At last, he had finally come face to face with the man who had ruined his previous life. Memories flooded back instantly. He remembered lying in a pool of his own blood. He remembered Tae-jun looking down at him with complete indifference. Even now, Joo-Heon could still picture that monstrous creature opening its enormous jaws. Back then, even as death approached, he had sworn to himself that if he ever became a ghost, he would drag Kwon Tae-jun into hell with him. But this time, things were different. In this life, the hunt had already begun. Completely unaware of the hatred burning only a few meters away, Kwon Tae-jun glanced briefly at Joo-Heon before calmly walking deeper into the auction hall with Shi-Ho beside him. He didn't recognize him. A confident smile spread across Joo-Heon's face. This auction was different from the last one. In his previous life, Kwon Tae-jun had walked away with countless priceless relics, but this time, Joo-Heon intended to claim every relic worth having. Just as he was about to move farther into the auction hall, loud shouting suddenly erupted behind him. People began pulling out their phones one after another. What the hell? My stocks just crashed. Another man stared at his screen in disbelief. I've lost everything. What is going on? Someone else repeatedly pressed the power button on his mobile. My phone isn't working. Joo-Heon slowly scanned the crowd. Something felt wrong. Then his eyes landed on a familiar figure. Irina Hilton. She was standing only a short distance away. Joo-Heon's eyes widened. She actually followed me here? As if sensing his gaze, Irina looked directly at him. Out of the hundreds of people surrounding them, she had somehow found him immediately. Irina called out as she hurried toward him. Please listen to me. Joo-Heon sighed in frustration and immediately turned away. But before he could get far, bang. He walked face first into a glass door. Clutching his nose, he grimaced in pain. Irina quickly rushed over. Are you all right? Joo-Heon slowly looked up at her with an irritated expression. Do I look all right? Then, he pointed directly at her. Stop following me. Everything that's happening is because of you. Irina lowered her head before giving a bitter smile. You're right, and that's exactly the problem. Joo-Heon frowned. What kind of answer was that? Irina stepped closer before speaking quietly. I don't know if you'll believe me, but I think I bring bad luck to everyone around me. Joo-Heon remained silent. I wish I could be lucky like you. If I were, maybe the people around me could finally be happy. For a brief moment, Joo-Heon remembered the woman he knew from his previous life. The goddess of misfortune, the terrifying relic user whose existence had ruined countless lives. Entire businesses had collapsed because of her. Yet, the timid young woman standing before him looked nothing like that terrifying figure. Irina gently held both of his hands. Joo-Heon couldn't understand her behavior. Was she acting? Or was she genuinely this innocent? He quietly pulled his hands away. But Irina stepped even closer. Please, can you tell me how to become lucky like you? I'm begging you. Just then, a system notification suddenly appeared before Joo-Heon's eyes. Irina continued speaking. If it's money, I'll gladly pay you, no matter how much you want. At that exact moment, another notification appeared. Joo-Heon blinked. More messages rapidly appeared one after another. His eyes narrowed. The silver relic pill he had consumed earlier had granted him the tolerance ability. He had known the skill existed, but until now, he hadn't fully understood how it functioned. Now, as system messages continued appearing, everything suddenly became clear. His tolerance skill wasn't simply resisting poison. It was adapting, growing stronger every time his body endured a relic's harmful effects. Joo-Heon slowly smiled. He looked directly into Irina's eyes. Are you feeling all right? Irina immediately looked embarrassed. I'm sorry, my request was too sudden. She smiled awkwardly. Looking into her innocent eyes, Joo-Heon reached a conclusion. If his guess was correct, then there was no longer any reason to avoid her. Quite the opposite. Every second he remained near Irina, her relic's curse continued strengthening his tolerance skill. Not only that, her cursed aura was silently sabotaging everyone else around her, which meant every other bidder at the auction would gradually lose their luck. It was the perfect situation. He would strengthen himself, while weakening every competitor. Two birds with one stone. His eyes drifted toward another corner of the hall. Kwon Tae-jun stood there shouting furiously at one of his subordinates. What do you mean our factory in China caught fire? What exactly happened? His assistant Byung-sik trembled nervously. I only just received the report, Chairman. Kwon Tae-jun's expression darkened. What about today's shipment? Will everything still arrive on schedule? Joo-Heon quietly watched the scene unfold. Why are you still standing there? Kwon Tae-jun roared. Go! Call them back. I want answers immediately. Joo-Heon smiled to himself. Even Kwon Tae-jun had fallen within Irina's range. If this had happened during his previous life, Kwon would have immediately fled the area. That meant something important. He still didn't know about the existence of the goddess of misfortune. Joo-Heon's smile slowly widened. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. This girl was going to be far more useful than he had expected. Irina's face immediately brightened when Joo-Heon finally spoke. Your proposal doesn't sound so bad. She looked at him hopefully. Joo-Heon extended his hand. Obtaining good luck isn't easy. Irina nodded enthusiastically. I understand. Joo-Heon smiled. Then we'll need to discuss the details. He glanced toward the entrance to the auction hall. I'll be attending the auction shortly. Then he looked back at her. Would you mind accompanying me? I'll understand if you refuse. The tickets are incredibly expensive. Irina blinked before happily waving her handbag. That's not a problem at all. Joo-Heon smiled inwardly, just as he expected. For someone from the Hilton family, buying an auction ticket was no different from buying a packet of chewing gum. I'll go get one right away. Irina happily ran off toward the registration desk. Joo-Heon quietly watched her disappear into the crowd. He couldn't help wondering, what exactly turned this kind-hearted girl into the terrifying goddess of misfortune he remembered. A few minutes later, the auction hall lights dimmed. The auctioneer stepped onto the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 74th Midas auction. Let the bidding begin. Joo-Heon and Irina now sat side by side among the audience. Looking around, Joo-Heon immediately noticed something interesting. The hall wasn't nearly as full as it had been earlier. After Irina entered the auction, guests had mysteriously begun leaving one after another. Some rushed outside to deal with unexpected emergencies. Others received disastrous phone calls. Within barely 3 minutes, nearly half the audience had disappeared. Even so, Kwon Tae-jun remained seated. Despite his factory burning in China, despite the enormous losses, he still refused to leave. That meant only one thing. There was something at this auction valuable enough for him to ignore everything else. Irina pointed excitedly toward the stage. That bottle is several hundred years old. It's a royal wine once owned by Russian nobility. She tilted her head. Aren't you going to bid on it? Joo-Heon smiled. No, the relic I'm after won't appear until later. It should be near the end of the first half of the auction. As he spoke, his eyes drifted back toward Irina. She looked completely different from the terrifying woman he remembered. There wasn't even a hint of malice in her expression. It didn't seem like she was pretending. He remembered everything she had told him earlier. The strangest part was, she genuinely didn't know anything about relics. Joo-Heon rubbed his chin thoughtfully. There was only one explanation. The relic had attached itself to Irina without her knowledge. His thoughts returned to the future once more. The ruthless goddess of misfortune hadn't always been that way. Originally, she had simply been a kind-hearted young woman. But after years of being constantly influenced by her relic, watching everyone around her suffer, her heart had eventually broken. The relic slowly corrupted her, turning a gentle girl into one of the most feared relic users in the world. Irina suddenly looked at Joo-Heon with a warm smile. Thank you. Joo-Heon looked at her curiously. For what? She gently brushed a strand of hair behind her ear before answering. For listening to me. And for believing what I said. She smiled softly. Just having someone I can honestly talk to makes me feel so much better. Joo-Heon watches Irina smile brightly after he reassures her. He casually tells her that helping her isn't nearly as difficult as she thinks. However, before he can relax, several system windows suddenly appear before his eyes. The notifications reveal that Irina's relic has grown dramatically stronger, completely unaware of what is happening. Irina laughs cheerfully and asks what he means by it not being difficult. She admits that hearing those words makes her genuinely happy. The moment her happiness grows, the entire building begins to tremble violently. Guests immediately panic, believing an earthquake has struck the auction hall. At the same time, another system message appears. The relic's area of effect has expanded. A terrifying wave of misfortune spreads throughout the building. Joo-Heon's relics begin suffering severe damage, while the cursed aura relentlessly attacks everything around him. His expression hardens as he realizes the situation has become even worse than before. Looking at the completely innocent Irina, Joo-Heon can't believe the truth. The happier she becomes, the stronger the curse surrounding her grows. Fortunately, another notification catches his attention. His tolerance skill is increasing at an incredible rate. Although the constant exposure is strengthening his resistance, he knows there's a limit. If Irina continues getting happier, every relic he possesses could end up completely destroyed. Trying to calm the situation, Joo-Heon quickly tells her not to celebrate just yet. He explains that it would be terrible if they failed to reach an agreement about their deal. His words immediately bring Irina back to reality. She suddenly remembers that they haven't even discussed the actual terms yet. With a serious expression, Joo-Heon asks her an important question. Even if she somehow became luckier, how could she be certain that everyone else around her would stop suffering from bad luck? Irina lowers her head. He's right. There is absolutely no guarantee that her misfortune would disappear just because her own luck improved. As her excitement fades, the system immediately reports that the relic's attack power has decreased. Joo-Heon quietly lets out a sigh of relief. Meanwhile, the auction host awkwardly laughs, before reassuring the audience that the shaking was only a minor tremor and everything is perfectly safe. He then resumes the auction, announcing that the current bid stands at $700,000 and asks whether anyone wishes to raise it. Bidding resumes almost instantly. However, thanks to Irina's relic, the atmosphere inside the hall becomes increasingly chaotic. Several wealthy bidders begin arguing over meaningless items. One arrogantly declares that if his rival doesn't like it, he should simply raise the bid. The other immediately fires back, insisting he isn't capable of outbidding him. Before long, both men are pointing fingers, yelling insults, and recklessly increasing their offers without thinking rationally. Watching the spectacle unfold, Joo-Heon quickly understands what's happening. Irina's relic is clouding everyone's judgment. The participants can no longer think clearly, looking at the depressed Irina sitting beside him. Joo-Heon suddenly comes up with a brilliant plan. If her curse can make everyone waste their fortunes, then there won't be many competitors left when the relics he actually wants finally appear. Turning towards her, he gently tells her not to be discouraged. After all, nobody can say for certain whether increasing her luck will continue affecting everyone else forever. Then, he smiles. It's time to begin their real negotiation. Irina eagerly listens as Joo-Heon explains that he truly knows a method capable of improving her luck. Her eyes widen. She nervously asks whether he's telling the truth. Joo-Heon simply smiles without answering directly. As the conversation continues, he deliberately tells her encouraging things that lift her spirits. He promises that he'll help solve all the problems that have haunted her for so long. Every reassuring word makes Irina happier. And every time her happiness increases, the cursed relic's aura grows even stronger. The disastrous effect immediately spreads throughout the auction hall. One by one, wealthy collectors completely lose control of themselves. People begin bidding insane amounts of money on ordinary relics they don't even need. They recklessly fight over almost every single lot, burning through their fortunes without hesitation. By the time the auction reaches its later stages, nearly everyone has already wasted enormous amounts of money. Now, whenever the relics Joo-Heon actually wants appear, there are barely any serious bidders left. He calmly raises his paddle and effortlessly purchases relic after relic. Only one person continues competing against him. Chairman Kwon Tae-jun. There are still several valuable relics the old man refuses to give up. Joo-Heon immediately realizes why. Unlike everyone else, Kwon Tae-jun isn't completely overwhelmed by Irina's curse. His powerful relic control allows him to resist part of its influence. Even so, Joo-Heon remains confident. His knowledge of relics is far superior. He already knows that many relics Kwon Tae-jun is desperately chasing aren't nearly as valuable as the ones Joo-Heon has chosen. As he quietly writes notes inside his notebook, he reviews everything he has already obtained. The Code of Hammurabi, Shakespeare's pen, Marie Antoinette's pendant. But despite collecting all of them, the divine-grade relic mentioned in the prophecy still hasn't appeared. Joo-Heon frowns. The auction is already approaching its conclusion. Just then, Irina nervously asks whether he truly intends to honor their agreement. She admits it almost feels as though he's simply buying time. Letting out a small sigh, Joo-Heon apologizes. He closes his notebook before telling her it's finally time to become serious. Once the auction ends, they'll move somewhere quieter and discuss every remaining detail of their deal. However, before either of them can stand, the auction host suddenly announces a special final event. He proudly reveals the last item of the evening. A small tree is wheeled onto the stage. The host introduces it as a mysterious almond tree that has recently become the center of enormous public attention. The instant Joo-Heon sees it, his eyes widen. Kwon Tae-jun immediately stares at it as well. Inside the flower pot stands a tiny tree, radiating an extraordinary presence. At that very moment, Joo-Heon hears a voice echo inside his mind. The tree complains that it's tired of surviving under such pitiful lighting before arrogantly demanding proper praise. Joo-Heon's heart skips a beat. He immediately recognizes it. A divine-grade relic. Not only that, it's an incredibly rare healing-type divine relic. Without hesitation, Joo-Heon rises to his feet and raises his bidding paddle. No matter what happens, he absolutely must obtain it. Almost simultaneously, Kwon Tae-jun raises his paddle as well. Both men instantly understand that neither intends to back down. Joo-Heon recalls the relic's history. Qin Shi Huang, the legendary emperor who sought eternal life, spent countless years sending his followers across the world searching for the mythical elixir of immortality. After an endless search, they finally discovered it. That legendary elixir was none other than this very tree. Memories from his previous life flood back. Back then, this relic belonged to Kwon Tae-jun. Because Joo-Heon's body was constantly being destroyed by powerful relics, he desperately needed the tree's miraculous fruit just to stay alive. Kwon Tae-jun exploited that weakness. Instead of giving him freedom, he only handed over the fruit whenever Joo-Heon obeyed his every command. Staring directly at the old man, anger burns inside Joo-Heon's eyes. This time, history will not repeat itself. No matter the cost, that relic will become his. Meanwhile, the auction host laughs loudly before joking that it's no surprise several gentlemen seem interested. After all, the fruit of the tree is famously believed to restore male vitality. Both Joo-Heon and Kwon Tae-jun instantly freeze in embarrassment. Without saying a word, Joo-Heon slowly raises his bidding paddle even higher. Beside him, Irina blushes awkwardly. The bidding begins at $200,000. Joo-Heon immediately raises it by another $100,000. Kwon Tae-jun answers without hesitation. Back and forth they go until the price quickly reaches $800,000. Then new bidders suddenly join the competition. Without warning, Kwon Tae-jun calmly announces an astonishing bid of $10 million while glaring directly at Joo-Heon. Joo-Heon instantly realizes the old man also knows this relic's true value. Clenching his fist, he understands one painful truth. No matter how much knowledge he possesses, he simply cannot compete with Kwon Tae-jun's financial power. Turning towards Irina, Joo-Heon quietly tells her that their agreement begins right now. He promises that if she helps him obtain this relic, he will personally find a way to solve the curse that's been tormenting her. In return, he asks her to purchase the relic for him. Irina smiles warmly. The proposal benefits both of them. Without hesitation, she agrees. Then, with complete confidence, she tells him not to worry about the money. The bidding continues climbing higher and higher. $20 million, $30 million, $50 million. The remaining guests stare in complete disbelief after Irina suddenly joins the bidding war. The host excitedly asks whether anyone else wishes to continue. Without even blinking, Kwon Tae-jun calmly raises the bid to an unbelievable $100 million. The entire auction hall falls silent. Everyone begins whispering about the unimaginable amount of money. Joo-Heon quietly looks away. He already knows the truth. Anything beyond $100 million is completely beyond his reach. From the very beginning, this was never a battle he could win with money alone. The host scans the silent room before announcing once again. The current highest bid is $100 million. Is there anyone else willing to bid? Irina calmly raised her hand and announced a bid of $300 million. The entire auction hall fell silent. Even the host looked stunned by the unbelievable amount. Joo-Heon smiled to himself. This was exactly the moment he had been waiting for. Kwon Tae-jun narrowed his eyes at Irina before slowly standing up. Staring directly at her, he calmly increased the bid to $320 million. Murmurs immediately spread throughout the room as everyone realized the auction had become a battle between two financial monsters. Without showing the slightest hesitation, Irina simply raised two fingers. $500 million. The room exploded into chaos. Even the host struggled to hide his disbelief. Kwon Tae-jun's expression darkened while his assistant Yoon Si-woo hurriedly stepped closer and urged him to stop. There's no point, Chairman. That woman is Irina Hilton, the youngest daughter of one of the richest families in the world. The amount of money at her disposal is beyond imagination. Joo-Heon quietly watched the scene unfold with a satisfied smile. Still unwilling to lose, Kwon Tae-jun glared across the room, but after a long moment of silence, he finally lowered his hand. The auctioneer struck the hammer. The elixir tree was officially sold to Irina Hilton for $500 million. A short while later, Joo-Heon and Irina sat together at a private table. Taking a sip of his whiskey, Joo-Heon looked at her and casually remarked that even for someone as wealthy as her, $500 million was an enormous amount of money. Irina simply smiled. To her, the price hardly mattered. Instead, she was far more interested in one thing. So, how are you going to solve my problem? She had been thinking about it the entire time. Maybe Joo-Heon planned to share some of his incredible luck with her. Or perhaps he owned some kind of lucky charm, like a rabbit's foot, that could cancel her bad fortune. Joo-Heon smiled faintly before shaking his head. He told her he had no lucky charm to give her. Irina's face immediately fell. So, you tricked me? She looked genuinely disappointed. Joo-Heon raised a hand to stop her. Not exactly. Hear me out first. Leaning forward, he folded his hands together and explained that her situation couldn't be solved with ordinary charms or lucky objects. The real problem was something much deeper. There's something inside your body that needs to be removed. Irina blinked in confusion. What do you mean? Joo-Heon explained that she simply needed to hand over one specific thing she possessed. Although he kept his calm expression, his thoughts were completely different. The only real solution was to remove the god-class relic of misfortune attached to her. If he could obtain that relic for himself, not only would Irina finally be freed from its curse, but he would also gain one of the strongest relics imaginable. It was the perfect outcome. Holding out his hand, Joo-Heon asked if she had ever noticed a strange object that constantly stayed with her no matter where she went. If she gave that object to him, her problem should disappear. Irina thought carefully before slowly shaking her head. She couldn't remember owning anything like that. Joo-Heon frowned. That's impossible. He asked whether she had ever tried throwing away everything she carried with her. Surely one of those items had to be the relic. Irina looked embarrassed. I already tried, but everything I threw away somehow came back. That answer caught Joo-Heon off guard. This wasn't behaving like a normal relic at all. After thinking for a moment, he leaned forward, again. Then, do you have a tattoo? A tattoo that suddenly appeared one day? Irina gasped. Her reaction was answer enough. Joo-Heon immediately understood. Relics were generally divided into two categories. The first type consisted of common relics, which anyone could use. However, they always came with limits on how much power they could unleash. The second type was personal relics. Whenever someone formed a bond with one of these relics, a mysterious tattoo would appear somewhere on their body. That mark served as proof that the relic had personally chosen its owner. Unlike common relics, personal relics had no usage limit, but only their chosen owner could ever use them. It was exactly the same phenomenon that had happened with Sasaki Yuka, whose prophecy relic had left a mark on her arm. Irina quietly opened her handbag. Meanwhile, Joo-Heon's thoughts grew even darker. Many of the most powerful relics from his previous life had belonged to the personal relic category. Irina then pulled out her phone. I can't really show you, but I do have a picture. She handed the phone over. The moment Joo-Heon looked at the image, his expression changed. Dark, smoky markings covered large portions of Irina's arms and body. His heart immediately sank. Irina noticed the sudden change on his face. What's wrong? Is something bad? Joo-Heon silently handed the phone back. He had finally figured it out. Irina wasn't carrying an ordinary personal relic. She was infected by a parasite relic. Parasite relics were among the rarest and most dangerous relics in existence. Instead of simply choosing an owner, they forcibly invaded a person's body and lived inside them. Because Irina's parasite was a god-class relic capable of spreading unimaginable misfortune, Joo-Heon had originally expected something like the legendary Golden Apple of Discord. Instead, he had no idea what relic this actually was. Looking at the frightened girl sitting across from him, Joo-Heon realized something important. Right now, he had no way to remove the relic from her body. Taking out a piece of paper, he quickly wrote down his phone number before handing it to her. I thought this would be simple, but I was wrong. When we have more time, let's meet again. We'll figure out a solution together. Irina accepted the note with a bright smile as Joo-Heon stood up to leave. If he couldn't obtain the relic today, then making Irina Hilton his ally was the next best option. Building strong allies would prove invaluable in the future. Turning his attention toward the elixir tree, Joo-Heon smiled. Once the payment was completed, the tree would officially belong to him. The rest of the relics he had purchased could also be collected afterwards. Pulling out his phone, Joo-Heon called his companions, intending to have them bring the money. But no one answered. His expression instantly darkened. Something was wrong. Leaving a bag full of cash with those three idiots had been like leaving a fish beside a hungry cat. Without hesitation, Joo-Heon dialed another number. As soon as the call connected, he calmly said he had a small favor to ask. It's nothing difficult, and I'll make sure you're rewarded generously. Meanwhile, Hyun and the other two men were sprinting through a dark alley. The man in the purple shirt laughed nervously, saying that as long as they kept running, nobody would ever catch them. Another complained that the bags were unbelievably heavy and begged for a short break. Hyun finally stopped to catch his breath before grinning. Let's rest for a minute. He looked at the others. We still have the bags, right? The three of them burst into laughter. They were carrying enough money to live comfortably for the rest of their lives. But the celebration lasted only a second. Something slammed into the wall just inches from Hyun's head. The laughter vanished instantly. Joo-Heon slowly stepped out of the darkness. His eyes were filled with killing intent. You stole my money. Walking toward them, he casually pulled a golden throwing axe from his side. Hyun immediately began making desperate excuses. Joo-Heon raised the axe and coldly interrupted him. If you don't want your head flying off your shoulders, stop making those pathetic excuses. The terrified trio instantly began apologizing, screaming that they had made a terrible mistake. Joo-Heon ignored every word. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out what looked like an ordinary stone used for scrubbing dirt off shoe soles. The three men stared at it in complete confusion. Joo-Heon smirked. Look a little closer. The moment he squeezed it, a brilliant light erupted from the object. The rough stone transformed into an ancient stone tablet. It was none other than the legendary Code of Hammurabi, the ancient code of laws created by King Hammurabi of Babylon. A massive stone monument materialized behind Joo-Heon, radiating overwhelming authority. One of the most famous principles written within that code was simple: an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. It was an extraordinary defensive relic capable of returning any harm inflicted upon its owner back to the attacker. Hyun instinctively stumbled backwards until his back hit the wall. Joo-Heon calmly explained that this was one of the relics he had acquired during today's auction. Thanks to a small favor from one of the auction staff, he had managed to obtain it ahead of schedule. A satisfied smile spread across his face as the tablet's light illuminated him. Then, with an icy voice, he activated its power. An eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. If you chose to betray me, then it's only fair that you suffer the exact same betrayal yourselves. The glowing lines began spreading across the man's hands, wrapping around them like a strange seal. At the same time, the tablet started releasing smoke, and a new inscription slowly appeared across its surface. Joo-Heon watched the scene carefully and finally let out a quiet breath of relief. He hadn't been completely certain that the relic would work exactly as he intended, but fortunately, everything seemed to have gone according to plan. The principle behind the Code of Hammurabi was simple: an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Any attack directed at the owner would be returned to the attacker, regardless of how powerful the original attack had been. But Joo-Heon had another thought. Since the Code of Hammurabi was fundamentally a law, could its power also restrict the actions of the people bound by it, not only in the present, but in the future? That was the true meaning of a law. The glowing lines surrounding the men's hands suddenly disappeared. Hyun looked around in confusion. What just happened? Joo-Heon smiled casually. Nothing special. You could say I was simply testing this relic. He looked directly at the three men. From now on, as long as you don't betray me, nothing will happen to you. His smile became colder. But if you ever try something like this again, Joo-Heon paused, your bodies will be torn apart. The system immediately responded. Joo-Heon turned toward Hyun. You can consider yourself to have signed a contract to become my slave. Hyun's face twisted with displeasure. On what basis? His two companions quickly whispered into his ear. Judging by their expressions, they had realized that Joo-Heon probably wasn't bluffing. After all, that enormous stone pillar had appeared behind him, and something about the relic's power was clearly different from anything they had seen before. Hyun nervously asked, "Are you some kind of psychic?" Joo-Heon pointed toward himself. You idiots should understand something. The world is about to turn upside down. The three men stared at him. But don't worry, you'll be fine, he smiled. Because from now on you're my personal slaves. The men's shoulders immediately dropped. Joo-Heon continued as if he had just offered them a wonderful opportunity. Actually, this is good for you. If you do your jobs properly, I'll reward you. You might even earn more money than what's in the bag you tried to steal from me. Hyun's expression slightly relaxed. You mean, we can actually make that much money? You can earn as much as you want. Hyun finally relaxed. Then what exactly do you want us to do? Joo-Heon gave him a sly smile. You'll find out soon enough. The next day, the three men stood in front of Joo-Heon wearing robes. In front of them sat a large empty flower pot. A pile of soil had been prepared beside it, while the precious almond tree rested nearby. The three men looked at the setup with bewilderment. Joo-Heon frowned. Why are you all so surprised? This is part of your job. The men exchanged annoyed looks. Joo-Heon pointed toward the tree. Look carefully. Your task is simple. Grow this tree and keep it properly fed. The almond tree suddenly reacted. How dare a pathetic human treat me like this? Joo-Heon calmly picked up his cup of tea. Don't worry, the tree won't bite you. He gestured toward the pot. Now hurry up and plant it. And it would be better if I didn't have to repeat myself. Hyun carefully began placing the tree into the pot. Be careful, Joo-Heon warned. That tree is worth $500 million. Hyun's hands immediately became even more cautious. Joo-Heon calmly drank his tea as the tree began grumbling. This is actually rather pleasant. It sounded almost pleased. This is how humans should treat me. The men slowly filled the pot with soil. The tree seemed satisfied. I shall accept this new person. Joo-Heon watched them with interest. These guys actually have some decent experience handling relics. He remembered the trouble he had gone through with this very tree. Back then, Joo-Heon had spent the night fighting with it before finally managing to establish a contract. The worst part was that the tree had been so loud that he couldn't even take a proper nap afterward. Joo-Heon looked at the three men. Elixir plants hate users with a high level of the path of submission. They prefer people with a strong path of communication. And judging by how naturally these three were interacting with the tree, they're practically perfect nannies for this thing. Joo-Heon smiled. He had originally given them this job because he didn't want to get his own hands dirty. He certainly hadn't expected them to be this good at it. Just then, his phone rang. Joo-Heon smiled as he looked at the number. Even though it wasn't saved in his contacts, he would never forget who it belonged to. He answered. A man's voice came through the phone. Am I speaking with CO Joo-Heon? The caller introduced himself. This is Kwon Tae-jun. Joo-Heon smiled. And what business does Chairman Kwon have with me? His expression became slightly colder. If that old bastard is personally calling me, then he's probably already started digging into my affairs. Kwon Tae-jun calmly got straight to the point. I heard that you obtained the almond tree that Irene Holton won at the auction. Joo-Heon remained silent for a moment. He found out faster than expected. Kwon continued. I'd like to arrange a meeting and discuss the matter. Joo-Heon pulled the phone slightly away from his ear. I don't have anything to discuss with you. I'm busy, so I'll end this conversation here. He hung up. Elsewhere, Kwon Tae-jun cursed under his breath. Yoon Si-woo immediately approached him. "Chairman, is something wrong?" Kwon slammed the phone onto the table. "That bastard didn't even listen to what I wanted to say. He simply ended the call." Yoon Si-woo was furious. What kind of disrespect is that? He probably doesn't even realize who he was speaking to. "You are Chairman Kwon Tae-jun." He shook his head. "He even hung up after you introduced yourself." Kwon Tae-jun looked at him. Forget his attitude. His eyes narrowed. Even if he's an ignorant idiot, he has that almond tree. Kwon's expression became serious. "Of all the relics I've encountered, that tree gave off the strongest aura." Yoon Si-woo became nervous. Kwon continued. "I know I need to put everything on the line if I want that relic." He clenched his fist. "If that young bastard hadn't kept raising the price, I would have fought for it until the very end." Yoon Si-woo immediately bowed. "I'm sorry, Chairman." He lowered his head, thinking desperately. "This isn't entirely my fault. I did everything I could, but he knew he still had to solve the problem. This could be my perfect opportunity to prove myself to Chairman Kwon." Kwon looked at him coldly. Yoon Si-woo straightened himself. "I'll take responsibility for this situation. I'll do everything I can to resolve this misunderstanding." Kwon raised an eyebrow. "Can you use whatever methods are necessary?" Yoon Si-woo smiled. "He's just a simpleton. It shouldn't be difficult." He hesitated before continuing. "May I use some of the relics belonging to the company?" Meanwhile, back at the hotel, Hyun couldn't believe what Joo-Heon had done. "You seriously ignored someone like Chairman Kwon?" Joo-Heon was getting dressed without paying much attention to him. Hyun was practically losing his mind. "Do you even understand who that was?" Chairman Kwon is one of the biggest and most influential figures in Korea. Joo-Heon finally turned around. He pulled out an axe. "You're being incredibly annoying." Hyun froze. Joo-Heon continued. "Are you asking me to use this axe and cut you in half?" Hyun gave an awkward smile. "I was just trying to explain." Joo-Heon ignored him. "I'll be going out for a while." He pointed toward the almond tree. "Continue taking care of it." He paused. "And make sure you take a photo of its condition every day. I want a daily report." Joo-Heon waved his hand dismissively. "And if any of you tries something stupid," the three men immediately understood. "You already know what happens." Joo-Heon left. As he walked through the hotel's hallway, Joo-Heon thought about Kwon Tae-jun. That old man is the type who won't stop once he decides he wants something. He would use every method available to obtain it. Soon, he would probably try to locate Joo-Heon. And once he discovered where Joo-Heon was staying, an ambush was almost guaranteed. "If I want to keep the elixir tree safe, I'll have to deal with his people first." Just then, the silver axe began reacting. Joo-Heon smiled. So the old man has already made his move. He walked outside and deliberately traveled through several open areas. He wasn't simply wandering around. He was looking for a tail. After walking for some time, Joo-Heon stopped at a small shop and sat down with a soda. That's when he spotted him. Across the street stood Yoon Si-woo. Joo-Heon narrowed his eyes. So he's working alone. Yoon Si-woo was watching him carefully. Joo-Heon could tell immediately that the man was still looking down on him, just as he had in his previous life. More importantly, there was a faint aura surrounding Yoon Si-woo. Joo-Heon's eyes sharpened. He brought a relic. A small smile appeared on his face. He had already figured out what he was going to do. Young Sik stood at the bar, furiously talking on the phone. His patience had clearly run out. "How many times is this going to happen?" he shouted. "Are you absolutely sure this time? Why should I trust you again?" He clenched his teeth. Is tracking down one person's movements really that difficult? After ending the call, Young Sik glanced toward the alley. "If this keeps happening, I won't even get paid for this." Just then, he noticed something. Across the street, Joo-Heon was sitting calmly at the bar. A smile appeared on Young Sik's face. So there he is. He approached Joo-Heon from behind and casually asked, "Are you CO Joo-Heon?" Joo-Heon didn't even turn around. He already knew. "So I finally caught the bait." Young Sik became irritated. He knew Joo-Heon had heard him perfectly, yet the man deliberately refused to acknowledge him. "He's ignoring me?" Young Sik slammed his hand against the table. He leaned closer. "Did you wash your ears with compost? When someone talks to you, the least you can do is..." Joo-Heon suddenly turned around. The bartender froze in fear. In the next instant, Young Sik was sent crashing to the floor. Joo-Heon looked down at him with a faint smile. "Where did you learn such disgusting manners?" Young Sik stared at him in disbelief. Joo-Heon continued calmly. "How dare you yell at someone you've just met? If you have something to discuss with me, then ask properly." Young Sik angrily glared back. "You started this." Joo-Heon's eyes shifted toward the aura surrounding him. A relic. A small smile appeared on Joo-Heon's face. "I'll be taking that." He already knew why Kwon Tae-jun had sent Young Sik. "Chairman Kwon found out that I have the almond tree. Just as expected, he sent someone to keep an eye on me. And Young Sik wasn't an ordinary subordinate. He was an experienced relic user who possessed several powerful relics. It looks like Kwon didn't intend for this to end with simple surveillance. Young Sik suddenly shouted, "How dare you hit me?" Joo-Heon smiled. So Chairman Kwon still underestimates me. If Kwon truly understood what Joo-Heon was capable of, he wouldn't have sent only young Sik. Joo-Heon calmly decided to take advantage of the situation. He would take every relic young Sik had brought with him. "You should work on your manners," Joo-Heon said. Young Sik slowly stood up. He clearly had business with Joo-Heon, so Joo-Heon decided to hear him out. "Well, go ahead." Young Sik's expression hardened. "For Chairman Kwon's sake, I'll pretend nothing happened." He paused. "Didn't we meet at Midas?" Joo-Heon shook his head. "I don't remember you." Young Sik's expression immediately darkened. "You're lying." Joo-Heon suddenly pointed at him with a smile. "Wait, I remember now." Young Sik looked relieved for half a second. Then Joo-Heon continued. "You're that loser who spends his entire life sucking up to an old man." Young Sik's face turned red with rage. At that exact moment, a system window appeared before Joo-Heon. Joo-Heon immediately understood. So that's his weakness. Young Sik had always been extremely easy to provoke. He constantly tried to prove how important he was because of his deep inferiority complex. In his previous life, young Sik had been expected to take over a major company. But his personality caused him to make a disastrous mistake. He was deceived, his contract was terminated, and he was thrown out. The only reason he managed to recover at all was because of Kwon Tae-jun. Since then, young Sik had worked tirelessly for the old man. Not because of loyalty. He desperately wanted Kwon's recognition. Even during his time at TKVM, Kwon had repeatedly used every opportunity to manipulate and pressure him. But there was one thing Joo-Heon knew better than anyone. If you push young Sik's inferiority complex far enough, he completely loses control. And once that happened, he became reckless. Then I might as well take advantage of this. As he walked away, Joo-Heon suddenly stopped. Come to think of it, he turned around. Chairman Kwon actually called me earlier. Young Sik frowned. Joo-Heon continued casually. He wants the almond tree. Young Sik's expression became serious. Joo-Heon smiled. What should I do? What kind of nonsense are you talking about? Young Sik glared at him. Joo-Heon chuckled. I'm not going to give it up that easily. His smile became mischievous. But if you ask nicely, perhaps I might consider it. He shrugged. After all, the tree was given to me as a gift. If you want it that badly, maybe I'll hand it over. Young Sik's eyebrows twitched. You bastard. He clenched his teeth before forcing himself to bow. Please hand over the tree. His voice was filled with barely contained rage. It is extremely important to us. Inside, however, young Sik was already imagining what he would do once he obtained the tree. Once I have it, I'll tear this bastard apart. Joo-Heon suddenly burst out laughing. You seriously think I'll believe that? He shook his head. I'd love to have an idiot like you as my subordinate. Young Sik's expression finally snapped. He pulled out a flask containing a strange liquid. Enough. He charged toward Joo-Heon, swinging his arm. I should have done this from the beginning. Joo-Heon laughed. You're really going to use that? He effortlessly dodged the attack. If I were you, I wouldn't. Young Sik looked at the flask in confusion. What? Why isn't it working? Joo-Heon appeared behind him. He grabbed young Sik by the back of the head and slammed his face into the floor. Didn't I warn you? Another system notification appeared. Joo-Heon looked down at him. It doesn't work because you've already lost control of your relics. Young Sik's eyes widened. How do you know about my relics? Joo-Heon snatched the flask from his hand. I'm taking this. He examined it carefully. It affects the mind. A smile appeared on his face. Looks like you're getting a new owner. The relic seemed to react. Who are you? Joo-Heon poured a few drops onto young Sik. The relic immediately responded. Your control is quite good. Very well, I shall obey you. The liquid spread across young Sik's back. He screamed, Stop, please. Anything but this. Joo-Heon smiled with satisfaction. This relic is called the zombie powder of the voodoo priest. It was an A-rank relic, but its ability was exceptionally dangerous. Long ago, voodoo beliefs spread throughout Africa during an era when slavery was widespread. One of those beliefs claimed that sinners would eventually be punished and transformed into zombies. Over generations, countless rumors and stories accumulated around the belief. Eventually, people began to believe those stories as truth, and that collective belief gave birth to the relic. Joo-Heon looked down at young Sik. If this powder touches someone, or even gets scattered around them, their mind can be taken away. The victim would effectively become a zombie. Joo-Heon smiled. Being defeated by his own relic is a fitting punishment for him. He turned around and walked away. This should slow Chairman Kwon down for a while. He had no intention of wasting any more time. I need to collect the remaining relics while I still have the chance. With that, Joo-Heon left the area. Meanwhile, Kwon Tae-jun stood inside a room, staring angrily at the completely deranged young Sikh. One of his subordinates cautiously asked, "Is this really your employee?" Kwon turned around and walked away without answering. The subordinate looked at the others. "Isn't he Department Manager Young Sik?" Another employee nodded nervously. Yes. Then someone brought up the news on their phone. A photograph showed a man running naked through the center of Las Vegas the previous night. Kwon read the report. His expression became increasingly grim. Someone nervously addressed him. "Chairman, what should we do? We can't hide something like this." He pointed toward Young Sik, and Department Manager Young Sik still hasn't returned to normal. Kwon remained silent for a moment. Then he spoke coldly. "We can't do anything about this situation." He turned away. "We follow our orders and deal with the consequences." But his anger soon erupted. "This information has spread throughout America." His voice thundered through the room, and now it's spreading across Korea as well. Kwon clenched his fists. "They've dragged my name through the dirt." Everyone remained silent. Kwon turned toward Young Sik. "How dare that idiot disgrace me like this?" No one dared answer. Finally, Kwon gave an order. "Go, immediately recover every relic that man was carrying." His subordinates bowed. "Yes, Chairman." But before they could leave, one of them hesitated. "There's a problem." Kwon looked back. When we found Young Sik, he didn't have a single relic on him. The subordinate swallowed nervously. "It appears that all of Manager Young Sik's relics were either confiscated or stolen." Another employee added, "We'll investigate every location he visited and determine what happened." Kwon shook his head. "There's no need." His eyes narrowed. It's obvious. He already understood what had happened. The person who did this to Young Sik took all of his relics. The subordinates exchanged shocked looks. "You mean someone actually did this to Manager Young Sik?" One of them couldn't hide his disbelief. Who could do something like that to a professional relic user? Kwon's expression darkened. "Joo-Heon." The room went silent. "Most likely someone is backing him." He paused. "Or perhaps that brat himself is capable of using high-level relics." Kwon turned toward his subordinate. "Send my assistant, Lee Ji, to me." A faint smile appeared on his face. In the end, he's still just a kid. Kwon's eyes narrowed. And a child will eventually sit quietly if someone gives him enough sweet candy. At the McCarran International Airport in Las Vegas, Yoon sat behind Joo-Heon, staring suspiciously at the flask filled with yellow powder. "What exactly is going on?" he asked. Joo-Heon glanced back at him. "Make sure you don't lose anything." Hyun looked down at the collection of items around them. "Are any of these things even valuable?" Joo-Heon smiled. To Hyun, they looked like a random collection of strange objects. To Joo-Heon, however, every single one was a priceless relic. He had managed to gather an incredible number of relics in Las Vegas. Now, all that remained was getting them safely back to Korea. Inside the suitcase were the relics he had already obtained in Korea. Then there were the relics he had acquired during the Midas auction, the Hammurabi Code, Shakespeare's pen, and Marie Antoinette's pendant. And most importantly, there was the elixir tree of Emperor Qin Shi Huang. On top of that, Joo-Heon had also taken the zombie powder of the voodoo priest, the foxtail seed, and Homer's glasses from Yongsi. "This is more than enough to form the foundation of my collection." Joo-Heon quietly assessed everything he had acquired, and from this point forward, I'll only get more. Just then, a woman carrying a suitcase approached them. She looked around before asking, "Are you CO Joo-Heon?" Joo-Heon narrowed his eyes. The woman introduced herself as a special agent working for TKVM. His expression immediately hardened. "So she's Kwon Tae-jun's second subordinate." Joo-Heon studied her carefully. What exactly is she after? The two eventually sat down at a table inside the airport. Each of them ordered a drink. The woman calmly placed a folder on the table. "We already know that you took Manager Youngsi's personal belongings." She looked directly at Joo-Heon. There is no point denying it or making excuses. Joo-Heon remained silent. She continued, "However, our president has highly praised your abilities. The fact that you were able to defeat Manager Youngsi was enough to prove your capabilities." She opened the folder. "That's why I've come here with an offer." Joo-Heon smiled faintly. "So that's why you came all the way here?" The woman nodded. "TKVM wants to recruit you into our search party." Joo-Heon took a sip of his lemonade. "So this whole meeting is about some stupid employment contract?" The woman's expression tightened. His attitude was incredibly rude. "You won't receive a better offer than this." She calmly explained the conditions. "Along with a basic salary, you'll receive an advance payment of $100 million. Joo-Heon slowly placed his glass on the table. The woman continued, "TKVM also won't interfere with your personal life. As long as your private affairs don't interfere with our work, you will have complete freedom." Joo-Heon interrupted her. And what happens if I reject the offer? He smiled. Because, frankly, there isn't anything valuable about it to me. His expression became colder. I already know that your chairman is plotting against me. The woman folded her hands over her lap. Allow me to give you some advice. She spoke calmly, almost like a teacher correcting a reckless student. I have considerably more life experience than you. When you're speaking with another person, you should pay more attention to what you say. She paused. It's good practice for you, and it makes things much easier for everyone involved. She smiled faintly. For now, I'll pretend I didn't hear that. The woman remained completely composed. You're still young. You barely understand how the adult world works. Then her tone changed. Have you ever considered what kind of punishment you might receive for stealing from TKVM? Joo-Heon looked at her without answering. What if Director Kwon simply wanted to restore justice? She leaned forward. Think about it. If an ordinary person dies in a small-town store, hardly anyone notices. Joo-Heon smiled. The woman continued. This situation is no different. She stared directly into his eyes. People connected to you could simply disappear without leaving a trace. Her voice remained calm. So don't make the mistake of thinking you're some kind of exception. Joo-Heon suddenly laughed. So that's your true face. His smile disappeared. Are you trying to threaten me? He leaned back. You're basically saying I'll die if I don't join TKVM. Then Joo-Heon smiled again. Well, Miss Lawyer, let me give you a little advice in return. He reached into his pocket. When you're trying to pick a fight with someone, you should always choose an opponent according to your own strength. He pulled out the flask containing the yellow zombie powder. If you value your life, that is. And in this case, the only person who might disappear without a trace, he pointed it toward her, is you. The woman gave a nervous laugh. She wasn't convinced. She knew Joo-Heon wouldn't dare use a relic in a crowded public place. He doesn't want ordinary people to know about relics. That was one of the fundamental rules TKVM followed. Joo-Heon uncorked the flask. The woman's eyes widened. He calmly held it out. That's why you've been so confident, isn't it? His smile became dangerous. You really thought I wouldn't use it? The woman's expression froze. Suddenly scream. A loud cry echoed through the airport. Several people immediately turned around. Hyun looked toward the nearby calf. Did that come from the calf Joo-Heon just entered? He stood up. Should I go check? Meanwhile, the woman frantically brushed the yellow powder from her clothes. Get this crap off me. Joo-Heon simply smiled. The woman stared at him in disbelief. Have you really gone insane? She couldn't believe he had actually used a relic in public. I can't believe you're actually willing to use your relics here. Joo-Heon shrugged. I don't care whether the world finds out about relics. His eyes narrowed. That's where I'm different from TKVM. He turned toward the crowd. Dozens of people had already pulled out their phones and were recording everything. Joo-Heon pointed toward them. What are you all standing around for? He smiled. Go ahead, keep filming. He gestured toward the floating powder. Isn't this exciting? He looked directly at the people recording. Make sure you upload it to the internet too. The woman stared at him in disbelief. Joo-Heon then examined her carefully. She touched the zombie powder and she's still perfectly fine. His eyes narrowed. That means your control over your relics is ridiculously high. The woman glared back. If you have any relics with you, you'd better use them. Her expression became serious. Because my next attack won't be so easy to repel. She suddenly jumped to her feet. With a powerful swing of her arm, a massive stream of water erupted toward Joo-Heon. Joo-Heon calmly watched it approach. Not bad. He immediately activated the Hammurabi code. A massive stone pillar materialized behind him. The water slammed into him, then suddenly reversed direction. The entire attack was reflected straight back toward the woman. Joo-Heon calmly raised his hand. An eye for an eye. The reflected attack struck the woman. A tooth for a tooth. The woman stared at the stone pillar in shock. That relic. Her eyes widened. It's the Hammurabi code. Joo-Heon didn't answer. Instead, he swung the silver axe. Go! The silver axe flew toward the woman. Cut down the enemy who dared to threaten my life. The woman immediately raised her hands. I admit my mistake, but Joo-Heon had already made his decision. Hyun watched the entire scene in horror. What are you doing? He stared at Joo-Heon. Are you seriously trying to kill someone in broad daylight? Joo-Heon looked back at him with a calm smile. Relax, he waved his hand. It won't kill her. Hyun stared at him suspiciously. Joo-Heon continued, but it will destroy something valuable to her. The woman's expression suddenly changed. No. Bang. A tremendous noise exploded from inside the calf. The entire building shook. Several TKVM employees immediately rushed toward the scene. One of them grabbed his radio. He looked toward the smoke. It sounded like an explosion. Could this be a terrorist attack? The moment the warning reached the authorities, the entire area around the calf was thrown into lockdown. Meanwhile, Kwon Tae-jun was standing at a nearby station when one of his men approached him with an urgent report. Director Kwon, There's a strange woman causing trouble near the calf. She seems to be harassing passers-by. Kwon's expression darkened. He gritted his teeth. That brat, how dare he? Before he could finish, Joo-Heon calmly bent down and picked something up from the floor. He examined the object in his hand. I never really believed all those rumors about spirits being sealed inside objects. He turned the strange black box over in his hand. But apparently, there really are relics like that. Joo-Heon's eyes narrowed with interest. This woman dropped a relic. He studied it carefully. I wonder what kind of ability it has. Hyun looked at him in confusion. Relic? What are you talking about? Joo-Heon ignored him. According to the system, the object was identified as ink from an artist in Montmartre, Paris. A strange voice suddenly echoed inside Joo-Heon's mind. Come, Joo-Heon chuckled. So you're the one talking? The relic's voice answered. Follow my voice. Joo-Heon looked around. The strange voice continued. The place where you are standing will soon be plunged into chaos. Joo-Heon raised an eyebrow. Are you a raven? Yoon stared at him strangely. A raven? What are you talking about? Joo-Heon immediately understood. They can't hear it. He turned around with an irritated expression. The voice called out again. Hurry, follow me. Joo-Heon frowned. Stop ordering me around. He swung his arm through the air. Yoon stared at him as if he had completely lost his mind. Inside his head, Joo-Heon cursed the mysterious relic. You sent me back into the past without a single warning and turned my life into some ridiculous game. And now you suddenly decide to start talking to me? Joo-Heon's eyes narrowed. The voice became more threatening. You will regret it if you refuse to listen to me. Joo-Heon scoffed. Enough with the nonsense. Why would he blindly trust the words of a relic? Before he could say anything else, someone approached from behind. You're certainly putting on quite a show. Joo-Heon turned around. A familiar old man stood there. Kwon Tae-jun. The man calmly asked, What is your name? Joo-Heon smiled. I'm Suho Joo-Heon. Hyun's face immediately went pale. He looked between the two men. What's happening? His voice trembled. Is everything really going to be okay? Kwon approached them. This is our first meeting. He gave a faint smile. As I said before, my name is Kwon Tae-jun. Hyun nervously bowed. It's nice to meet you, Director Kwon. Joo-Heon noticed the fear in Hyun's expression. Then he realized something was wrong. Hyun's body had suddenly become stiff. I can't move. A powerful aura radiated from Kwon's body. The old man calmly reached inside his jacket and pulled out a knife. But Joo-Heon reacted instantly. He disappeared from Kwon's line of sight and appeared behind him. The knife was pressed against Kwon's throat. Joo-Heon smiled. It would be troublesome if you started acting carelessly. He pressed the blade slightly closer. You shouldn't use domination on other people so casually. His eyes narrowed, especially when they're someone else's subordinates. Kwon's expression darkened. He slowly tried to turn his head toward Joo-Heon. Don't. Joo-Heon's voice became cold. Stop right there. Kwon's eyes narrowed. Then he suddenly understood. So that's it. Hyun and the others looked down at their hands in confusion. Kwon glanced toward Joo-Heon. Now I understand why Youngzi and that woman ended up in such a state. A faint smile appeared on his face. Your abilities are much greater than I expected. He studied Joo-Heon carefully. You possess a special talent for controlling relics. Joo-Heon smiled. Kwon sighed. Then I suppose I won't hold back anymore. There is a prophecy I heard long ago. Joo-Heon listened carefully. It said that sooner or later humanity would discover the existence of relics. Joo-Heon's expression changed slightly. So he has collected prophecies too. He remembered the future guide. He must have gathered several prophecies through it. Kwon continued. I don't want that day to come. He clenched his fist. I still have plans for these relics. A strange aura began concentrating around his hand. That is why I decided something. His eyes became cold. I'll eliminate everyone who knows about relics. He raised his hand toward Joo-Heon. If I remove those people, I can delay the day described in the prophecy. Purple lightning suddenly erupted. It struck Joo-Heon. Wouldn't that be a wonderful solution? Hyun and the others were knocked back by the overwhelming force. What is happening? But Joo-Heon simply smiled. The purple lightning surrounding him suddenly dispersed, like smoke. Did you really reveal your true intentions that quickly? Kwon stared at him in disbelief. That relic was supposed to send you into an alternate reality. Joo-Heon calmly waved something in front of him. A pair of tickets. Are these what you're talking about? Kwon's eyes widened. Joo-Heon smiled. I stole them beforehand. He casually flipped them between his fingers. I'm pretty good with my hands. Kwon's expression darkened. Joo-Heon smiled. You should have protected your relic better. A system window suddenly appeared. Joo-Heon remembered his earlier praise of his pickpocketing ability. What should I do now? The system immediately responded. Joo-Heon stared at the notification. He turned away in annoyance. Are you seriously still treating my life like a game? He sighed. Whatever, he examined the tickets. Relic appraisal. The information immediately appeared. Joo-Heon's eyes narrowed. So this is a god-class relic. But there was a problem. His current dominance ability wasn't strong enough to forcibly subdue a relic of this level. Joo-Heon simply slipped the tickets into his pocket. I really want to send this old man to another dimension. Kwon's aura suddenly exploded. You're still planning to fight? His voice was filled with confidence. You've made a serious mistake. Kwon's eyes narrowed. You assumed this was my only relic. Joo-Heon's expression became serious. A massive wave of energy suddenly swept across the area, knocking the others away. Joo-Heon immediately understood. As expected, Kwon Tae-jun had brought several powerful relics with him, but there was one in particular that worried Joo-Heon. The Enslaver. It was one of the most terrifying relics he had ever encountered. Its ability allowed the user to dominate another person's mind and gain absolute control over them. It was similar to what had happened with Irina Hilton's parasitic relic. In his previous life, Joo-Heon had never discovered the true identity of Kwon's relic. The old man had kept it hidden for years. All Joo-Heon knew was that the relic was parasitizing somewhere inside Kwon's body. If I cut off his arms and legs, I might be able to uncover more information. But Joo-Heon immediately dismissed the idea. It wouldn't be that easy. Kwon also possessed a powerful defensive relic. The old man confidently walked toward him. What seems to be the problem? He smiled. Are you afraid? Kwon's aura continued to rise. I haven't even fully activated its ability yet. Joo-Heon's expression became grim. In other words, his body is basically an impregnable fortress, armed with powerful weapons. And there was another problem. Once the relic was activated, it affected the user's mental state. Its presence was extremely noisy, while the energy it produced was chaotic and difficult to control. If Kwon continues increasing the relic's influence, Joo-Heon looked around at the chaos spreading throughout the area. Everything here will be swallowed by that chaos. Joo-Heon smiled faintly and asked what had happened. He already understood that Kwon Tae-jun did not want any information about the relics leaking to the outside world. If that was the case, then the old man clearly intended to silence everyone who knew too much. Lightning flashed across Kwon Tae-jun's hand. He calmly said that dealing with the others would not be difficult. The real problem was Joo-Heon. As long as Joo-Heon remained alive, he could become a serious threat. Kwon glared at him and declared that the time had finally come for Joo-Heon to completely submit to him. But before the confrontation could escalate any further, the familiar voice of the Raven echoed through the area. It told Joo-Heon to stop playing around. Both Joo-Heon and Kwon Tae-jun turned toward the strange voice. A raven was floating in the air before them. The mysterious relic warned them that this was a dangerous place where ferocious jackals were sleeping. If they continued causing trouble, they would awaken those creatures from their slumber. The raven spoke as if both men were nothing more than insignificant insects. Kwon narrowed his eyes. The aura coming from the raven was enormous. He immediately realized that it had to be a high-ranking relic. Joo-Heon, however, focused on one particular word, jackals. He wondered if there were any legends or stories involving jackals that could be connected to this place. Then one possibility came to mind, Anubis. If the raven was talking about jackals, then this place could be connected to the Egyptian god of death. And if that was true, this place might actually be a tomb containing a relic. Kwon Tae-jun also seemed to realize how valuable the situation could be. His eyes narrowed as he stared at the raven. He called the situation incredible. Then he released even more of his overwhelming aura. After dealing with Joo-Heon, he declared he would take that relic for himself as well. The raven immediately called him a fool. Before Kwon could respond, Hyun and the others suddenly looked around in fear. The ground began to shake. An earthquake had started. Kwon's expression changed as he looked around in confusion. At the same time, countless system messages appeared in front of Joo-Heon. An enormous amount of aura was attempting to penetrate his body. The relics in his possession were beginning to take damage, and even worse, powerful relics capable of triggering an apocalypse were beginning to appear. A bead of sweat rolled down Joo-Heon's face. He slowly looked toward the window. The disaster had already begun. There was no doubt about it. What he was witnessing was the beginning of the Great Tomb Catastrophe, the event that would mark the start of the era, when countless chaotic relics would suddenly appear throughout the world. The airport began to collapse. Ancient Egyptian structures erupted violently from beneath the ground, destroying everything in their path. Joo-Heon's eyes widened. This wasn't merely an ordinary tomb. It was the tomb of an Egyptian relic connected to Anubis. But then he realized something even more terrifying. It wasn't only the airport. The entire world was being transformed into one enormous tomb. Giant tombs were appearing across the planet. Las Vegas, Tokyo, Seoul, one after another, massive Egyptian tombs began emerging all over the world. A system message appeared before Joo-Heon, confirming the horrifying truth. Deadly Egyptian tombs had begun appearing worldwide. Joo-Heon frowned. He quickly tried to determine what he should do next. Ho-Yoon called out to him in panic. He looked around in terror and asked what the hell was happening. Joo-Heon remained surprisingly calm. He told Hyun that it wasn't anything particularly complicated. They were simply trapped inside a dangerous tomb. Ho-Yoon stared at him in disbelief. Joo-Heon continued explaining that none of this would have happened if Kwon Tae-joon hadn't started recklessly displaying his abilities. Kwon immediately rejected the accusation. He had never encountered anything like this before. Ho-Yoon hurriedly asked Joo-Heon what he meant, and more importantly, how they were supposed to escape. For a moment, everyone fell silent. Joo-Heon finally explained the situation. They couldn't simply leave. They were inside a tomb, and the only way out was to clear it. Unfortunately, clearing a tomb of this scale was anything but easy. Joo-Heon glanced toward Kwon Tae-joon. In his previous life, it had taken him 3 entire months to clear one of the tombs created by the Great Catastrophe. But this time, everything was different. He wasn't the same man he had been in his previous life, and neither was the world. Joo-Heon started walking forward before turning toward the others. He suggested that they begin from the center of the tomb. They needed to find its owner. He ordered everyone to simply follow him. But Kwon Tae-joon wasn't about to listen. He raised his hand and sent a bolt of black lightning toward them. Joo-Heon frowned. It was obvious that they needed to deal with the tomb first, yet Kwon was still obsessed with fighting him. Kwon smiled coldly. He said they could worry about the tomb after he killed Joo-Heon. Besides, once Joo-Heon was dead, Kwon would be able to take the relic belonging to this tomb for himself. Joo-Heon glared at the old man. What a selfish idiot. Something about this entire situation felt wrong. This couldn't simply be a coincidence. Whatever happened next, Joo-Heon decided that he would do everything necessary to escape this place alive. Kwon clenched his fist. He ordered them to obey him. An invisible force immediately slammed into the group. Hyun and the others were crushed against the ground. Joo-Heon resisted the pressure with all his strength. He was furious at how casually Kwon was throwing his power around. The old man walked toward him and criticized Joo-Heon's attitude. He said Joo-Heon's way of speaking was still too rough. After all, that wasn't how someone should speak to the person who was supposed to be his master. Hyun was pressed helplessly against the floor. He screamed that if Kwon didn't stop, they were all going to die. Kwon frowned. Something was strange. Normally, people would lose their minds almost immediately when subjected to his power, yet Joo-Heon and the others were still resisting. The raven spoke again. It agreed with Kwon. These uncivilized humans possess the potential to dominate relics. Joo-Heon and Kwon both turned toward the voice. Then something enormous appeared before them. Unknown creatures towered over the group. Kwon immediately demanded to know who they were. The enormous white creature answered that they were his followers. It then demanded to know who these humans were and how they dared to cause such a mess inside their territory. Joo-Heon exhaled in relief. For some reason, the pressure weighing down on his body had weakened. Most likely, the appearance of these monsters had interfered with Kwon's Dominator relic. Joo-Heon looked at the creature carefully. Its aura was unmistakable. It was a divine rank relic. The massive white four-legged creature stared down at them. Joo-Heon couldn't understand why they had been sent into its tomb. Then the answer came to him. Set. In Egyptian mythology, Set was one of the 9 principal gods. He was associated with the desert, darkness, chaos, violence, and evil. Because of that nature, the relic of Set was infamous for its cruelty and malicious influence. It was also known for bringing ruin to its owner. Another creature appeared. Anubis. He declared that the idea of humans dominating them was completely unacceptable. They needed to get rid of these humans. Set looked down at the people and agreed. Destroying them would simply be doing the world a favor. Everyone stared at the 2 divine beings in terror. Joo-Heon, however, carefully examined them. The Black Hound was clearly Anubis, and hanging around the creature's neck was a strange necklace. The curved shape and chain immediately reminded Joo-Heon of Osiris. Osiris was another of the 9 principal Egyptian gods, associated with fertility and the afterlife. Anubis, meanwhile, was the god of death and the ruler of tombs, the one who guided the dead into the afterlife. Joo-Heon's eyes narrowed, and now Set was here too. 3 divine rank relics had gathered in one place. No wonder his previous life had been filled with endless tombs. These beings were directly connected to the Great Tomb Catastrophe. The divine hounds floated above the humans. Set wondered aloud what kind of tests they should create. Perhaps they could make the humans struggle a little before killing them. Osiris, however, wasn't convinced. Set became irritated and shouted at the necklace. There was no reason to show these humans mercy. Why bother giving them a test? Osiris calmly told Set to be patient. Joo-Heon ignored their argument and focused on the system windows appearing before him. Set continued complaining. He was furious simply because he had been forced to remain in the same place as these insignificant insects. Then another system message appeared. Because of the harmful aura surrounding the divine rank relics, Joo-Heon's immunity was beginning to increase. Joo-Heon looked up at the creatures. He had a feeling these divine relics had absolutely no intention of letting them leave alive. Set grinned viciously. He declared that he would be the first to act. After all, the best way to deal with filthy insects was to demonstrate absolute superiority and overwhelming strength. Joo-Heon's expression became serious. His body tensed. The trial had begun. Seth and Anubis opened their jaws at the same time, gathering enormous spheres of energy between their teeth. The moment Seth released his attack, the others followed, and within seconds, a terrifying wave of aura flooded the entire area. The pressure was overwhelming. Hyun and the others immediately began bleeding from their noses. Their bodies trembled violently as they screamed in pain. One of them coughed up blood before collapsing unconscious. Joo-Heon watched the scene without panic. Just as he expected, without sufficient immunity, an ordinary human body simply couldn't withstand the aura of divine rank relics. The longer someone remained exposed to it, the faster their body deteriorated. Even Kwon Tae-jun dropped to one knee. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth as he struggled to understand what was happening. Hyun looked toward Joo-Heon in desperation. "We need to get out of here. To those relics, we're nothing but bugs. If we hide somewhere, maybe we can survive." One of the men, half-conscious, muttered that he wasn't sure whether he should be relieved or terrified. They quickly dragged their unconscious companions away from the center of the room. Kwon, still coughing blood, looked directly at Joo-Heon. "How are you still standing?" Joo-Heon smiled casually. "Let's just say there's a difference in our abilities." Seth's eyes narrowed. He couldn't understand why Joo-Heon remained completely unaffected. Why is that human still standing? Osiris suggested that perhaps they simply hadn't used enough power. Seth immediately snapped at him, ordering him to stop making excuses and do his job properly. Joo-Heon tightened his grip on the strange ink relic in his hand. Then Seth suddenly froze. "Wait," he leaned forward. "That scent." Behind Joo-Heon, the massive stone pillar of the Code of Hammurabi appeared. Joo-Heon looked at the gods. "Is that really all you've got?" Seth's expression twisted with rage. "The difference between them," he said, "was beyond comparison." Purple light flashed through his eyes. He promised to make Joo-Heon regret looking down on them. Red lightning crashed toward him. Joo-Heon simply smiled. An eye for an eye. The Code of Hammurabi began glowing. A tooth for a tooth. The stone pillar absorbed the lightning. And now, Joo-Heon raised his hand. "Taste your own power." The attack reflected back. The red lightning struck Seth and the others instead. The divine relics recoiled in shock. "How is that possible?" Joo-Heon smiled. "That's what happens when you rely too much on rank and forget to defend yourselves." Anubis growled. They needed to stop underestimating him and attack seriously. Seth immediately refused. Using their full abilities would consume their life energy, and he wasn't willing to waste it on a human. Then, Seth's expression changed again. Now he was certain. The familiar scent he had noticed earlier belonged to the raven. He could still smell it, coming from Joo-Heon. Osiris looked genuinely surprised. The raven? He called it a traitor who had sided with humans, but that should have been impossible. The raven had supposedly been sealed away long ago. Seth snarled. Osiris suggested that Seth's sense of smell had finally failed him. That only made Seth angrier. "How dare you question my nose?" He insisted that his senses were perfectly fine. Joo-Heon watched their argument quietly. Then something clicked. Why aren't they fighting each other? Especially Seth and Osiris. In Egyptian mythology, Seth had always been jealous of his brother Osiris. That jealousy eventually drove him to murder him. The stories people told about relics often influenced how those relics behaved toward one another. If that legend still affected them, then Seth and Osiris were bound to clash eventually. Joo-Heon's eyes narrowed. This was the perfect opportunity. If they became distracted, he could strike. But Anubis noticed him. That human is planning something. He turned toward the other gods. "Stop arguing and focus." Anubis decided he would handle Joo-Heon himself. A powerful aura surrounded him. Joo-Heon realized Anubis was the only one thinking clearly. "Fine, I'll take him down first." Anubis stared at him. "Who does this arrogant human think he is?" He raised his hand. "Let's see if you can survive my trial." A bolt of yellow lightning struck Joo-Heon. Everything around him disappeared. He found himself falling through endless darkness before landing on a gigantic scale. When he looked up, Anubis stood before him in enormous form. "This is the scale of justice." The god's voice echoed through the empty space. "Now your trial begins." Joo-Heon smiled. Anubis had chosen his trump card. If Joo-Heon passed the trial, Anubis himself would become his relic. Joo-Heon immediately understood why Anubis had changed tactics. The god's aura couldn't affect him, so instead, he had created a completely different kind of challenge. And strangely enough, this gave Joo-Heon an opportunity to obtain him. Joo-Heon remembered something from his previous life. He had once met the person who possessed Anubis. That man had explained the trial. Anubis would ask 42 questions. The trick was simple. Answer no to every one of them. According to that man, the questions were so easy that even a child could pass. Joo-Heon hadn't remembered the exact questions, but now they were about to begin. Judges appeared above him. Anubis spoke calmly. I will ask you 42 questions. If you answer no to every question, you pass. But if you lie, the beast hiding in the darkness will read your sinful heart and devour you. Joo-Heon smiled, so the man hadn't lied. Anubis asked the first question. Have you ever stolen something? Joo-Heon's smile disappeared. Sweat formed on his forehead. Of course he had stolen things. Anubis grinned. I knew it. Joo-Heon quickly raised his hand. Wait, I'm thinking. Anubis continued. Have you ever lied? Joo-Heon's jaw tightened. He had lied countless times. Have you ever hit someone? Have you ever destroyed someone else's property? Have you ever desired another person's wealth? With every question, Joo-Heon's expression grew worse. Then he finally understood. The reason children could pass wasn't because the questions were easy. It was because they hadn't lived long enough to commit those sins. Anubis extended his hand. He was certain Joo-Heon couldn't honestly answer no to even one of the questions. As expected, his enormous hand closed around Joo-Heon, a man filled with sins. From the darkness below, a gigantic beast slowly emerged. Its voice echoed through the void. Your heart is heavier than iron. You belong in hell. Joo-Heon's eyes widened. Wait a second. He realized he'd completely messed up. Anubis released him. Joo-Heon fell. The monster opened its jaws. He desperately reached out. Then darkness swallowed him. When he opened his eyes again, he was lying in a desert covered in bones. Pain shot through his body. Ghostly figures surrounded him. Joo-Heon slowly stood. Seriously? He grabbed a bone from the ground and held it like a weapon. I don't even get a second to rest? Spirits and undead creatures crawled from beneath the sand. They charged him. Joo-Heon fought back. He smashed skulls, tore monsters apart, and kept moving despite the endless attacks. But there were too many. One creature nearly bit his face off. Joo-Heon jammed the bone into its mouth just in time. Another knocked him to the ground. More monsters surrounded him. Joo-Heon clenched his teeth. He didn't want to give up. But for the first time, a thought crossed his mind. Am I really going to die again? Then a familiar voice echoed through the darkness. The Raven. You need help. Joo-Heon glared upward. Idiot. Golden light suddenly burst from his body. A massive yellow pillar appeared in the middle of the cave. Above him hovered the Raven. Its 4 eyes glowed. It has been a long time since I did this myself. Joo-Heon stared at it. Isn't this supposed to be the past? Blue energy flowed from the Raven. It laughed. It doesn't matter which timeline we're in. I'm still the same. Joo-Heon frowned. What are you talking about? The undead charged again. The Raven flew closer. Nothing here can be changed. It hovered beside him. But I can help you escape. Joo-Heon looked suspiciously at it. The Raven's voice became colder. And honestly, it would be much more entertaining if those Egyptian gods died to their own powers. Joo-Heon narrowed his eyes. What exactly are you? And why are you helping me? The Raven began glowing. Blue lightning filled the cave. Outside the trial, Seth watched the dark sphere floating before him. It took longer than I expected. Cracks slowly appeared across its surface. Seth smiled. Looks like he's finished. Then the cracks widened. Everyone became alert. The space Anubis had created was collapsing from the inside. Even Kwon, exhausted and covered in blood, stared at it in disbelief. Then the sphere exploded. A blinding light filled the room. Seth's face changed instantly. The power of Ra? He looked toward the Raven floating beside Joo-Heon. I knew it. His voice trembled with anger. I knew it was you. Anubis emerged from the shattered space, exhausted and barely able to stay upright. Seth's power supported him. He glared at the Raven. I still remember. You chose the side of humans. You betrayed your own brothers and helped them take our power. He snarled. Worthless worm. Joo-Heon looked between them. Is that true? Before the Raven could answer, Osiris began glowing. He said it was time for him and Seth to use their powers. They needed to finish this. Seth's rage boiled over. There was no turning back now. He would tear Joo-Heon apart. A massive red aura erupted from his body. The entire space shook. Lightning tore through the building. The dead began rising from the ground. Ghostly spirits seeped through the walls. This time, Seth wasn't holding back. He had unleashed a power far greater than before, and its effects weren't limited to the tomb anymore. Across the world, the dead were beginning to rise. The true catastrophe had only just begun. Joo-Heon smiled at Crow and told him that he had already done enough. He did not need anything else from him. Crow looked at him in disbelief and asked why he was not shaking in fear. Joo-Heon simply drew his sword. Crow warned him that everyone else had already escaped, which meant Joo-Heon could no longer leave this place. Joo-Heon scoffed. Did Crow really take him for a fool? The moment he swung his sword, the situation changed completely. This was different from before. Here, Joo-Heon could use every relic at his disposal. His aura began to smoke around him as he realized something important. The gods they had been fighting were somewhere nearby, but their true forms were nothing more than immobile vessels. Joo-Heon wondered if he was right. Then, without wasting another second, he charged straight into the army of the dead. Crow's 4 eyes stopped glowing. He chuckled and admitted that this was rather amusing. He would definitely keep watching this man. Joo-Heon tore through the undead with his sword, slicing through one after another as he charged deeper into the horde. The more he fought, the faster and more aggressive he became. 3 spirits watched him carefully. They noticed something strange. Joo-Heon was actually enjoying himself. In their true forms, Seth and Osiris remained confident. They believed that even a human had a limit. No matter how strong Joo-Heon was, the army of the dead was endless. Then Anubis finally regained consciousness. He looked around in confusion and asked what was happening. The others told him to pull himself together. Otherwise, they would end up crushing the human instead of Anubis. The 3 gods rose again. Osiris calmly stated that Joo-Heon would have to try much harder this time. Seth laughed and said that he had no objections. Suddenly, the dead began to be wrapped in bandages. Huge mummies with glowing eyes emerged above Joo-Heon. Sweat ran down his face as he stared upward. What the hell were these things? The enormous mummies attacked. Joo-Heon quickly dodged their strikes before swinging his sword and appearing behind one of them. Covered in aura, he muttered that these things were tougher than he had expected. But he still had another option. Joo-Heon reached into his pocket and pulled out the Egyptian funeral blade. He told the blade that he still had something else to try. The relic immediately reacted to the surrounding energy. It seemed to recognize something familiar, almost as if it had returned home. Joo-Heon smiled. He asked whether it was reacting that way because it was also an Egyptian relic. The blade screamed that it felt an overwhelming power nearby. Lord Anubis was close. Joo-Heon grinned and told the blade that it could go ahead and say hello. Then he started walking toward the mummies and ordered the blade to lead him directly to Anubis. Meanwhile, the mummies laughed. Seth declared that now that they had taken this form, they had plenty of room to move around. Surely the human could not possibly escape them. Anubis looked around and noticed his brothers. He asked if they had already used their abilities. They admitted that they had no other choice. Seth then mentioned something else. He said that he did not know why, but the raven that hunted relics had appeared again. Anubis immediately understood, so that was why he had been defeated. The mummy's eyes suddenly flashed. Seth realized that they had chosen a terrible time for this confrontation and said that the others needed to be warned. But before he could do anything, Joo-Heon suddenly appeared. His sword sliced cleanly through the mummy's neck. Seth's body was cut in half. He stared at Joo-Heon in disbelief and demanded to know how he had figured it out. Joo-Heon simply smiled. Then he told the god to die. Half of the White Hound's body crashed to the ground. The next mummy suffered the same fate. Joo-Heon cut its head off before it could even react. Osiris screamed in disbelief. This could not be happening. His servant watched in horror as Lord Osiris was slaughtered. Joo-Heon continued his assault, cutting the god apart until nothing remained but scattered pieces. Anubis was buried beneath the remains of flesh and bandages. Only the amulet around his neck remained floating in the air. It asked Joo-Heon why he was doing this. Joo-Heon shrugged. He had no particular reason. Then he smiled and told Anubis to start the test again. The previous test had been unfair. The Anubis relic immediately objected. It had never given the same person the trial twice, and there was no way Joo-Heon could pass it this time. Joo-Heon smiled even wider. He agreed. This time, he definitely would not pass. He pointed his sword at the amulet and ordered it to change the questions. If it refused, he would simply cut it into pieces. The Anubis relic had no choice. The trial began again. A gigantic scale appeared, accompanied by the same 42 judges. Joo-Heon looked at the exhausted and decayed form of Anubis. Then he grabbed the god by the throat and lifted him off the ground. He told Anubis to shut up and simply ask the questions exactly as he instructed. Did he understand? Joo-Heon suggested starting with the first question. Have you ever stolen? Anubis grew furious. He insisted that the question was supposed to be, have you ever stolen? Joo-Heon stared at him seriously. What was the point of having 42 judges if the questions were going to be phrased so strangely? Why should he care about the original wording? This was not even a posthumous trial. Or did Anubis think Joo-Heon was already dead? Joo-Heon forced the god onto his knees and ordered him to repeat the questions exactly as instructed if he wanted to survive. He reminded Anubis that if he refused, Joo-Heon would cut him into pieces. Anubis asked whether humans did not want to wield divine power. Joo-Heon smiled. Of course he wanted to wield Anubis's power. But if nothing worked, he would simply destroy the relic. If it broke, then perhaps they were never meant to be together. Anubis fell silent. The judges exchanged confused looks. Finally, Anubis agreed. He asked whether Joo-Heon had ever stolen anything. Joo-Heon pretended that he could not hear him. He told Anubis to speak louder. Anubis repeated the question at a higher volume. Joo-Heon kicked him in the face. He ordered the god to watch his language and show some respect. Anubis, now completely defeated, politely asked whether Joo-Heon had ever stolen anything. Joo-Heon smiled. No. He looked away and began thinking about what question should come next. Anubis stared at him in disbelief. Was Joo-Heon seriously going to distort every single question? Joo-Heon simply smiled and continued. After some time, he turned toward the judges with satisfaction and declared that he had answered no to every question. He had simply changed the questions to suit himself. The Anubis relic looked as though it was about to cry. Then the system appeared. The tomb trial has been successfully completed. The tomb of Anubis has been successfully cleared. The enormous sphere surrounding Anubis began to evaporate. Joo-Heon immediately grabbed the amulet. As he looked through the system messages, he noticed that possessing a divine relic had greatly increased several of his abilities and stats. He smiled. Crow was definitely enjoying himself. Joo-Heon held the amulet forward and ordered it to close the tomb. Lightning flashed. The enormous structure began collapsing around them. Kwon, exhausted and covered in blood, stared in shock as Joo-Heon actually took control of such a powerful relic. He called Joo-Heon a brat, but Joo-Heon remained completely unfazed. Kwon then admitted that Joo-Heon was far more capable than he had expected. He was not some inexperienced rookie whom Kwon could simply eliminate. If killing him was no longer an option, then Kwon would have to bring him to his side instead. As the remains of the massive tomb covering the earth began to collapse, the power sustaining it disappeared. Everything around Joo-Heon slowly evaporated. He took a deep breath and smiled. After being trapped inside that tomb, even the fresh air felt incredible. Then Kwon approached him with a smile. He bowed slightly and admitted that he had initially failed to recognize Joo-Heon's true abilities. He had been too rude and wanted to apologize. Kwon extended his hand and offered Joo-Heon a chance to work with him. Joo-Heon looked at the old man coldly. He told Kwon that he wanted to kill him. Kwon simply smiled. He claimed that the problem was that the two of them did not know each other well enough. He explained that relics were going to change the world. And in that transformed world, someone with Joo-Heon's abilities had enormous potential. Kwon continued smiling. As the head of TKBM, he promised to support Joo-Heon in all his endeavors. Joo-Heon had a vast ocean ahead of him, and Kwon offered to help him develop his abilities and reach his full potential. Once again, he offered Joo-Heon a position under him. Joo-Heon glared at the old man and pointed his sword at him. First, Kwon had said they should work together. Now he was asking Joo-Heon to work for him. That alone revealed Kwon's true intentions. Joo-Heon understood exactly how the old man was thinking. Kwon would invest in him, demand results that matched that investment, and then discard him whenever he was no longer useful. To Kwon, he would always be nothing more than an asset. The remains of the tomb dimension continued floating in the air. Joo-Heon told Kwon that all he really wanted was to use him. Yet he had the nerve to call it working together. Kwon laughed. He turned away and said that he was merely making an offer. Why was Joo-Heon taking everything so personally? At the moment, Kwon possessed many things Joo-Heon did not. From the outside, it might naturally look like Joo-Heon would be working under him. Joo-Heon frowned. Kwon then asked what was wrong with expecting results from an investment. He scratched Joo-Heon's back, and Joo-Heon would scratch his. That was simply how the world worked. Joo-Heon immediately realized what kind of person Kwon was. An old snake. Kwon spread his hands and told Joo-Heon to think about it carefully. Joo-Heon would have to go through countless dangerous situations to obtain relics. And dealing with everything alone could eventually become difficult. Kwon smiled and added that if Joo-Heon ever got injured, he could simply contact one of the hospitals affiliated with TKBM. That was the moment Joo-Heon snapped. His sword flashed. He slashed across Kwon's throat. Blood sprayed into the air. Joo-Heon glared at the old man. He had no intention of standing there and listening to Kwon continue talking, as though nothing had happened. Kwon's eyes widened, but Joo-Heon remembered the future. He remembered the day when Bosniak Kija had died in his arms. Kwon had used that tragedy as an excuse to make him work like a slave, claiming that it was necessary to treat his illness. The old man smiled. Then something strange happened. The aura around Kwon's body began flowing toward the wound. Even the blood was being pulled back into it. The enormous cut across his throat began closing before Joo-Heon's eyes. Kwon calmly remarked that the attack had been unexpected, and yet it had healed surprisingly quickly. Joo-Heon narrowed his eyes. He immediately understood. That disgusting ability was the effect of Kwon's protective-type relic. Kwon smiled as the wound on his neck rapidly began to heal. Joo-Heon immediately recognized the ability. This had to be related to Achilles. According to Greek mythology, Achilles was the legendary warrior whose mother, Thetis, was a goddess of the sea. She wanted to make her son immortal, so she dipped him into the river Styx while holding him by the heel. As a result, Achilles gained incredible strength and an immortal body, but the heel she held remained his only weakness. Eventually, an arrow struck that exact spot and killed him. Joo-Heon narrowed his eyes. If Kwon's relic was based on Achilles, then it had to possess a similar weakness. The problem was that Joo-Heon had no idea where that weakness was. He had just sliced through Kwon's neck, yet the old man's entire head had regenerated. Kwon looked at him menacingly. He asked if Joo-Heon finally understood why he was superior. His body was covered in a powerful aura, as he calmly explained that Joo-Heon could never match him in raw strength. Yet despite that difference, Kwon still had no desire to fight him. He wanted Joo-Heon as an ally. Joo-Heon simply smiled. Then he laughed under his breath. His sword began to glow. He ordered the blade to gather every bit of strength it had. The relic seemed confused and asked what he was planning. Joo-Heon gripped the sword with both hands. Then he asked Kwon if he had ever heard of something called rebellion. That was exactly what Joo-Heon intended to do. He looked directly into Kwon's eyes and admitted that the old man's offer was certainly profitable, but he had no intention of accepting it. Kwon's expression changed. Joo-Heon said he simply didn't like Kwon's face. Then he raised Muramasa. This sword was the perfect weapon for rebellion. Its power increased when facing a relic of a higher rank. Joo-Heon grinned. He wondered aloud whether Kwon would finally shut up if he unleashed Muramasa's full power against him. Kwon immediately panicked. He demanded to know why Joo-Heon was taking things this far. Joo-Heon answered with his sword. Muramasa struck Kwon with tremendous force. Blood exploded from the old man's body as a massive shockwave tore through the surroundings. Joo-Heon had poured everything he had into the blade. This allowed Muramasa to unleash power far beyond its normal rank. But there was a price. The force was so great that the relic itself could barely withstand it. Kwon had been right when he warned that Joo-Heon was using far too much power. The sword began to crack. Then crack. Muramasa shattered. Joo-Heon stared at the broken blade. He knew he had pushed it too far, but he had no intention of letting his greatest enemy walk away alive. Kwon screamed in agony. His body floated in the air, surrounded by a violent mass of energy. Joo-Heon immediately understood what was happening. Kwon's protective relic had activated automatically after sensing the threat. That made it extremely dangerous to approach him directly. But Joo-Heon still had one option, the Hammurabi Code. If he could reflect part of Kwon's attack back at him, he could knock the old man down again. A stone pillar appeared behind Joo-Heon. He activated the relic. The Hammurabi Code cracked slightly under the strain, but the incoming attack was reflected back toward Kwon. Another enormous explosion erupted. When the smoke cleared, Kwon was pinned against a wall. His Achilles relic and Dominance relic had both taken tremendous damage. The old man was completely unconscious. Joo-Heon approached him while holding the remains of Muramasa. Unfortunately, his precious sword was broken. The Hammurabi Code was also severely damaged. Joo-Heon sighed. He had gone through all that trouble, yet he still hadn't managed to kill Kwon. It was unbelievably frustrating. Then someone called out to him. Joo-Heon turned around. Hyun and the others were standing there, looking terrified. Joo-Heon was surprised that they had survived. They looked at Kwon and asked why there was a dead body lying there. Joo-Heon corrected them. The old man was still alive. Yoon nervously asked if Joo-Heon intended to finish him off. Kwon remained unconscious. Yoon suggested leaving him alone. Considering the damage he had suffered, he would probably be stuck in a hospital for a very long time. Joo-Heon reluctantly accepted the reality. There was no way he could kill Kwon in his current condition. He let out a long sigh and turned away. He announced that he was hungry and wanted to find something to eat. Hopefully, at least one restaurant had survived the disaster. The world had changed. Buildings lay in ruins, streets were buried beneath rubble, and people everywhere were desperately trying to understand what had happened. A news anchor reported on the destruction caused by the abnormal events. Reports were flooding in from around the world. People spoke about monsters emerging from the ground. Others described corpses rising from beneath the earth. Mummies. At first, many people wanted to believe it was some kind of movie promotion or elaborate hoax, but then came the most unbelievable reports of all. Some people had begun using supernatural powers through strange objects. The existence of relics could no longer be hidden. Meanwhile, Joo-Heon calmly ate a bowl of noodles while watching the news with Hyun. Hyun pointed out that every channel was reporting the same thing. Joo-Heon nodded. The entire world now knew about relics, and that meant the world was about to change. Those who obtained powerful relics would gain extraordinary influence. But Joo-Heon's relics had another problem. One of them complained non-stop that its owner was the only person talking so much. It also warned him that its body would soon collapse. Hyun stared at the damaged relics lying on the bed. He asked if they were seriously being held together by nothing more than sheer luck. Joo-Heon muttered that this was exactly the problem. He pulled out his phone. Fortunately, he already had a solution. He had useful connections. Hyun immediately asked what he meant by useful friends. Joo-Heon ignored the question and called Irene. When she answered, he told her that the timing was terrible, but he had found a possible way to remove her curse. Irene immediately became excited. Was that really true? Joo-Heon smiled. It wasn't completely true. Not yet, anyway. He still needed her help with something. To solve her problem, he needed to become more active. He asked her to find someone for him. Someone named Yoo Jaeha, a genuine expert in repairing relics. Every relic had durability. They could be damaged through excessive use, poor handling, or simply over time. Once a relic broke, it was normally impossible to restore it from scratch. However, some relics possessed the ability to repair other relics. Those who possessed such abilities were known as relic masters, and Yoo Jaeha was the best of them. He had practically monopolized the entire market. People even called him the King of Relics. Joo-Heon remembered what had happened in his previous life. Kwon had taken an interest in Yoo Jaeha, and eventually the two of them had ended up on the same tomb raiding team. Joo-Heon had no intention of letting that happen again. He simply needed to make Yoo Jaeha work for him. Once that happened, repairing his relics would no longer be a problem. Hyun glanced at his watch and complained that Irene apparently considered punctuality to be a joke. Joo-Heon looked out over the city. Hyun then asked who Yoo Jaeha was and why they had traveled all this way just to find him. He admitted that when it came to relics, Joo-Heon seemed to know everything. Joo-Heon agreed, but repairing relics was an extremely expensive business. Most relic masters were also strange people who demanded an absurd level of affinity with their relics. That could become a huge headache. Since Joo-Heon couldn't do it himself, he simply needed to find someone who could. Easy, Joo-Heon smiled to himself. His way of thinking was starting to sound dangerously similar to that of a slave trader. Just then, a helicopter appeared overhead. A voice came through the loudspeaker, announcing that they would land as soon as possible. The helicopter descended. Irene stepped out, practically glowing with excitement. She apologized for being late and explained that she hadn't been far away, but the roads were completely jammed. She had done her best to arrive as quickly as possible. Joo-Heon gave her an awkward smile. He suggested that they find somewhere quiet and make a plan. They eventually sat down inside a cafe. Irene asked about the person Joo-Heon was looking for. Joo-Heon explained that he was Korean and went by the name Yoo Jaeha. He asked whether Irene had ever encountered him. She looked surprised. She had never heard of him. Joo-Heon suspected that was because Yoo Jaeha was probably traveling under a fake identity. He then asked whether she knew anyone who collected art-related items. Irene's eyes lit up. Her brother did. In fact, he had several friends with similar interests. Joo-Heon handed Irene his phone. A photograph of Yoo Jaeha was displayed on the screen. He told her that she should take a good look at the man and ask her brother whether he recognized him. Irene stared at the photograph. Then, her expression changed. She asked Joo-Heon if he was absolutely certain this was the person he was looking for. Apparently, this man had already fooled her brother about a month earlier. Joo-Heon nearly choked on his juice. Irene continued. She remembered seeing Yoo Jaeha when she visited her parents' house. At the time, he had seemed like a perfectly respectable person. That was why she had been shocked to discover that he had deceived her brother. Her brother had purchased several pieces of art from him. Unfortunately, every single piece had been fake, and he wasn't the only victim. Around 20 other people had purchased similar items. Joo-Heon looked away. So the man's reputation for being a master scammer hadn't come from nowhere. He had already been practicing his craft. Irene wasn't sure Joo-Heon would ever be able to find him. Then, she lowered her voice and delivered an even bigger shock. She had heard that Yoo Jaeha was dead. Apparently, he had been caught trying to deceive her brother's friends. Her brother and his friends had witnessed what happened. According to them, Yoo Jaeha had fled in his car. Irene wasn't sure whether the roadside barrier had been weak or whether Yoo Jaeha had simply been driving too fast. Either way, his car smashed straight through the barrier and plunged off a cliff. The police had officially declared him dead. Joo-Heon fell silent. He couldn't believe it. Yoo Jaeha couldn't be dead. He remembered the man clearly. He had been around 26 years old when they first met. That meant, according to the timeline Joo-Heon remembered, he should still have had roughly 5 years before their paths crossed. Something was wrong. Joo-Heon frowned. The future had already begun changing. Not everything was unfolding the same way it had in his previous life. The greatest example was the catastrophe itself. Back then, the relic responsible for the appearance of the giant tombs had been Indian. This time, it was Egyptian. The order of events was completely different. Joo-Heon clenched his fist. He desperately needed Yoo Jaeha's ability. He looked at Irene and told her that they should search for him anyway. Irene asked if Joo-Heon really believed that the man could still be alive. Joo-Heon smiled. Yoo Jaeha was a tough man to kill, and until they had proof otherwise, they might as well believe he was still alive. A cross-shaped sign glowed above the hospital building as the news continued to dominate every screen in the country. The news anchor raised the microphone and reported that the mysterious phenomenon spreading across the planet appeared to share several characteristics with the giant tombs that had emerged earlier. The government had already announced that it would begin investigating the relics and their connection to these bizarre events. On a hospital bed, a heavily bandaged Tae-jun watched the broadcast with a scowl. How long are they planning to keep talking nonsense? He clenched his teeth. He had gone to great lengths to keep the existence of relics hidden, but Joo-Heon had completely ruined everything. Tae-jun slammed his fist down in frustration. I have to get revenge on that bastard. Unfortunately, his battered body had other plans. He was nowhere near recovered enough to fight again. One of the company employees hurried over. Please, director, you need to calm down. Before Tae-jun could respond, another voice came from the doorway. What happened here? Tae-jun turned his head as far as his stiff neck would allow. An elderly man stepped into the room, casually looking over his injured colleague. You don't look very well. He raised an eyebrow before turning toward the employee. Leave us alone. The employee immediately bowed and left. Once they were alone, the old man pulled up a chair and sat down. Well done, Tae-jun. I have to admit, summoning a tomb of that size was quite impressive. Tae-jun frowned. I had no idea there was a tomb underneath the airport. It was an accident. The old man waved his hand dismissively. That doesn't matter. Whether you intended it or not, your relic influenced the appearance of that tomb. That's a fact. He leaned back in his chair. You should keep a low profile for a while. Some of our customers are absolutely furious. Tae-jun's eyes widened. Already? How did they find out so quickly? The old man picked up a bottle of wine and calmly poured himself a glass. Because I told them. Tae-jun stared at him. Why would you do that? The old man took a sip. Because I don't only trade weapons. I trade information too. Tae-jun's expression darkened. So you don't care about your own people's trust? On the contrary, giving people useful information is how you earn their trust. The old man smiled. Everyone should take responsibility for their own actions. His eyes shifted toward Tae-jun's bandaged body. Although I am curious, why hasn't your body healed yet? Tae-jun looked away. He had relied on his relic of immortality, but something had gone wrong. He raised his heavily bandaged hand and clenched his teeth. It's all because of that bastard Joo-Heon. The old man raised an eyebrow. Interesting, he pointed his finger toward Tae-jun, especially if he actually managed to damage a relic powerful enough to grant immortality. He stood up. But don't worry, a damaged relic isn't necessarily useless. It can be repaired. Tae-jun immediately looked at him. There's a way to repair it? Of course. The old man smiled. I know someone who can restore relics. I'll introduce you. Tae-jun narrowed his eyes. And what do you want in return? Other relics. Naturally, Tae-jun sighed. Even injured, he still couldn't escape the man's business deals. Later that night, the old man walked through the hospital corridor with an employee following behind him. Find out everything you can about Joo-Heon. Yes, sir. Elsewhere, a young man sat in front of a computer, clearly irritated by the sudden interruption. Who the hell is calling me at this hour? He glanced at his phone. The caller ID made him raise an eyebrow. It was Edward. He answered. What do you want? Edward was standing in a parking lot, smiling. You picked up surprisingly quickly. The young man glanced around. You know me too well. This young man was Yoo Jaeha, a legendary relic restorer and an equally legendary con artist. He walked over to his refrigerator and grabbed a bottle of soda. Edward chuckled. So, how's life? Yoo Jaeha sighed. Terrible. I got caught cheating someone, so I had to fake my own death. He twisted open the bottle. My car was wrecked, so I had to pay a fortune just to stay hidden. I can't even go outside without worrying about someone recognizing me. I'm going insane. Edward laughed. You actually managed to fake your own death? Jaeha looked annoyed. Is that supposed to be a compliment? It is. Edward leaned against his car. Anyway, I called because I have a job for you. Jaeha immediately became suspicious. What kind of job? A relic restoration job. Jaeha's expression darkened. I hate those. They're exhausting. But what if the client is TKBM? Jaeha suddenly became interested. He straightened up. Are you serious? Edward laughed. Completely. And payment? Don't worry about it. Jaeha's eyes lit up. In that case, I'll definitely take the job. Meanwhile, Joo-Heon and his companions arrived at an art gallery. Hyun looked up at the building. This is the address Irina gave us. But do you really think Yuya is still alive? Joo-Heon walked inside without hesitation. That guy isn't someone who can just die. The others followed him. A receptionist greeted them from behind the counter. Welcome. Joo-Heon stepped forward. Is Yoo Jaeha here? The receptionist blinked. Mr. Yoo? He's not in the office today. Joo-Heon narrowed his eyes. Something felt off. He could sense relic energy nearby. Hyun suddenly slammed his hand on the counter. Are you sure he's not pretending to be dead? The receptionist jumped in fright. Joo-Heon grabbed Hyun by the ear and pulled him back. What the hell are you doing? We need to make her talk. We're here to lure Yuya out, not scare away every employee in the building. Use your brain. Hyun rubbed his ear. Sorry, the receptionist frowned. Our boss died in a car accident. Joo-Heon didn't answer. Instead, one of his men dropped a large duffel bag onto the counter. Joo-Heon placed a hand over his face. What are we supposed to do with all these relics now that Yuya is dead? The receptionist's eyes widened. Those are relics? She stared at the bag, and some of them look extremely high-ranking. Joo-Heon smiled. Exactly. He leaned toward her. So, do these look familiar? The receptionist stared nervously. Joo-Heon pointed toward himself. We need someone to repair them. They're all damaged. He smiled innocently. Since you work for such a genius restorer, maybe you can help us? The woman froze. She clearly had no idea what to say. Finally, she forced a smile. Please wait a moment. I need to use the restroom. Sure, she hurried away. Joo-Heon narrowed his eyes. He already knew what was happening. She took the bait. Inside the restroom, the receptionist immediately pulled out her phone. Minwoo, we have a problem. On the other end, Yoo Jaeha was sitting in front of his computer. What happened? Someone came here asking us to repair their relics. Jaeha frowned. Tell them we're not available. I'm working for TKBM right now. The woman hesitated. They brought around 10 relics. Jaeha's expression changed. 10? One of them even looks like an Egyptian divine relic. His eyes widened. Really? The assistant smiled. So what should I do? Jaeha leaned back with a sly grin. Bring them in. He had just found himself a very easy payday. Take the relics to the restoration room. I'll be there soon. He glanced at the equipment around him. Make the best fakes you can. The receptionist returned a few minutes later. Sorry for the wait. Joo-Heon scratched his head. No problem. How's the restoration going? She smiled. We'll restore them as quickly as possible. She extended her hand. However, we need to take the relics to the restoration room first. We have special equipment there to inspect their condition. Joo-Heon smiled. Go ahead. Yoon looked at him suspiciously. What if they just run away with them? Joo-Heon glanced at him. That's the risk. The receptionist placed a price list on the table. Please take a look at our approximate prices and conditions. Hyun's eyes nearly popped out. Are you kidding me? One scratch costs 10 million won. Joo-Heon calmly folded his arms. Don't worry, we're not paying. Hyun stared at him. We already handed over the relics. We can't do anything now. Joo-Heon smirked. Think of it as a bet. He leaned back. We'll find out whether our plan works or fails. Meanwhile, inside the restoration room, the assistant's eyes sparkled as she looked at the relics. We hit the jackpot. Yoo Jaeha smiled. You were right to call me. Some of these are extremely high-ranking. The assistant glanced toward the door nervously. Are you sure we won't get caught? One of those guests looked like he belonged to a gang. Jaeha waved her concerns away. Just hold them for me. He pointed toward the door. I'll have the replacements ready in minutes. He opened a box and pulled out several black panels. This will be easy. In his possession was a B-rank relic known as the secret signature of the artist. It was a relic that had once shocked the art world. With it, Jaeha could create perfect copies of other relics. He picked up the golden axe and placed the signature against it. A golden glow spread across the table. Within moments, a perfect replica appeared. The fake relic even carried a special aura that made the substitution impossible to detect for 12 hours. Jaeha grinned. With this, stealing from these idiots will be child's play. Back in the gallery, Joo-Heon was sitting on a couch reading a magazine while Hyun examined the price list. This is ridiculous. He pointed at the paper. 10 million won for a single scratch? Joo-Heon barely looked up. It doesn't matter. Hyun frowned. Why? Because we're not paying. After some time, the assistant returned with a bag. Sorry for the wait. Joo-Heon looked up. So? How's the restoration? The girl hesitated. I'm afraid there's a problem. She lowered her head. The relics are too damaged. Joo-Heon's eyes narrowed. They can't be repaired? They're almost completely destroyed. Joo-Heon stared at her. Is that so? Then he opened the sports bag. He pulled out one of the relics. The moment he examined it, his expression changed. He threw the bag onto the floor. The relics scattered across the room. Hyun jumped. What are you doing? Joo-Heon's expression became cold. She replaced them. The assistant froze. These aren't our relics. She immediately backed away. Joo-Heon pointed toward the door. Where are the real ones? The girl swallowed nervously. They're in the restoration room. Hyun stared at her in disbelief. Joo-Heon smiled. Thought so. The assistant tried to escape, but before she could get away, the door suddenly opened. A young man walked straight into Joo-Heon's trap. Yoo Jaeha froze. Joo-Heon stared at him. The two men locked eyes. Jaeha's face went pale. Joo-Heon's lips curled into a satisfied smile. There you are. He immediately pulled out the rope relic. Bind him. The rope shot forward and wrapped tightly around Jaeha's body. What? Jaeha struggled. You actually brought even more relics? The rope tightened until he could barely move. A strange voice echoed from the relic, almost as if it were excited. Joo-Heon stepped closer. Now tell me where my relics are. Jaeha swallowed hard. I put them in the safe. He desperately looked at Joo-Heon. Just let me go. Joo-Heon glanced toward the iron safe in the corner. Crouching beside it, he calmly said that his relics came first. The rope relic immediately lifted Yuja's struggling body into the air. Furious, Yuja glared at the stranger and demanded to know how he had discovered the safe's password. He quickly realized that this man had come here specifically to steal his relics. Joo-Heon opened the safe and began taking everything out. Picking up the bag, he casually remarked that Yuja had only himself to blame. The Tomb Raider narrowed his eyes. His old acquaintance had fallen this far much sooner than expected. Yuja continued struggling against the rope, his expression filled with rage. He ordered Joo-Heon to release him immediately. But Joo-Heon wasn't interested in listening. Years earlier, Yuja had lived an entirely different life. He had entered one of America's most prestigious art schools, hoping to become a great painter. He had developed his own unique style through years of hard work, but then his teacher stole it. Richard took Yuja's style, claimed it as his own, and eventually became a world-famous artist. Yuja tried to expose the truth, but nobody believed him. To everyone else, he was simply a jealous student trying to drag down his successful teacher. His protests were ignored, and one by one, people turned their backs on him. That experience changed Yuja. He stopped believing in the fairness of the art world, and eventually turned his talent toward deception. Then he discovered a relic. The relic allowed him to create perfect copies, and with it, Yuja became one of the greatest art scammers in the world. Now, looking at the struggling Yuja, Joo-Heon couldn't help thinking that things could have ended differently. If Yuja's morals had remained intact, perhaps they could have reached an agreement. But after what he had done, there was no point trying to reason with him. Yuja finally snapped. He demanded to know what had gone wrong. He had expected his fake relics to fool the client completely. Joo-Heon simply smiled. Then he pulled out a familiar pen. Yuja's eyes widened. Joo-Heon asked if he knew what kind of relic it was. It was Shakespeare's pen. A relic capable of turning anything written down into reality. Joo-Heon opened a notebook and began writing. Yuja nervously asked what he planned to do with him. A moment later, Joo-Heon finished writing. He is suffering from unbearable pain. Yuja's expression instantly changed. Then Joo-Heon added another line. The source of the pain is between his legs. Everyone in the room fell silent. Even the thugs looked uncomfortable. Yuja's entire body began twisting as the pain took effect. He desperately begged Joo-Heon to stop, promising to do anything if his life was spared. Joo-Heon smiled. At least Shakespeare's pen was working perfectly. He looked at Yuja and offered him a deal. A quiet life in exchange for becoming his personal relic restorer. Then Joo-Heon wrote the word slave in the signature section of the contract. Yuja stared at it in disbelief. He realized exactly what kind of contract Joo-Heon was proposing. Joo-Heon casually corrected him. Calling it a slave contract made it sound too harsh. It was an exclusive contract. Yoo Jaeha immediately argued that they were exactly the same thing. Under the contract, he would have to restore Joo-Heon's relics whenever necessary, could not accept outside commissions, and would have to obey his employer's orders. And if he broke the agreement, the Code of Hammurabi would punish him. Yoo Jaeha's expression became even darker. He asked what kind of insane contract this was. Joo-Heon told him to keep reading. The signing bonus alone was $6 million. On top of that, Yoo Jaeha would receive additional payment for every relic he successfully restored. Joo-Heon would also provide his food, clothing, housing, comfort, and protection for the entire duration of the contract. Yoo Jaeha stared at him. Joo-Heon smiled and said that full protection from him was something Yoo Jaeha wouldn't find anywhere else. Yoo Jaeha suddenly jumped to his feet. He pointed at Joo-Heon and shouted that he wasn't sure any of those promises were even real. Then he ran away screaming that the contract didn't count. Hyun watched him disappear. He asked whether he should follow Yoo Jaeha. Joo-Heon closed his eyes and sighed. Of course he should. But before Hyun left, Joo-Heon warned everyone not to be too rough with him. The thugs nodded. Joo-Heon knew he needed Yoo Jaeha's cooperation. He couldn't keep forcing him forever. More importantly, Yoo Jaeha would eventually obtain a divine relic, and having a skilled relic restorer on his side would become incredibly valuable. Meanwhile, Yoo Jaeha rushed into his office and immediately called the director of TKBM. After locking the door, he explained that the chairman had heard about him through Edward. Tae-jun admitted that he hadn't expected them to contact Yoo Jaeha directly. When Yoo Jaeha learned that the director himself had requested the restoration, he reluctantly agreed. But the moment the television in the room was turned off, Tae-jun's expression changed. For once, things were going exactly according to plan. He asked Yoo Jaeha to discuss the details of the contract. Yoo Jaeha gritted his teeth. He already had a bad feeling about this. Back in his office, Yoo Jaeha prepared to discuss the restoration. He explained that repairing relics was exhausting, but the job could still be useful. Then someone suddenly screamed through the phone. Tae-jun immediately recognized the voice. Joo-Heon had taken the phone. He calmly asked whether Tae-jun was really planning to restore his relics. The director's expression froze. He recognized Joo-Heon's voice immediately. Joo-Heon smiled. He told Tae-jun that Yoo Jaeha was now his personal relic restorer, so if TKBM wanted someone else to repair their relics, they would have to find another person. Tae-jun clenched his teeth and cursed under his breath. Why did this man always have to interfere with everything? Yoo Jaeha stared at Joo-Heon in confusion. Joo-Heon then asked him a simple question. Did he really understand who he was dealing with? Yoo Jaeha looked suspicious. Joo-Heon warned him that Tae-jun was a terrible person. Then he offered Yoo Jaeha something better. Instead of working for TKBM, Yoo Jaeha could join him, become his partner, restore his relics, and work under much better conditions. Yoo Jaeha dropped to his knees. He complained that he was being forced into this situation. Joo-Heon frowned. He needed to convince this guy without constantly resorting to force, so he picked up a chair and sat down. Then, he calmly told Yoo Jaeha to sit and talk. Yoo Jaeha looked up at him from the floor and demanded to know what was going on. Joo-Heon told him that his biggest problem was that he was far too suspicious. He picked up the notebook from the floor and opened it. Inside was information about Yoo Jaeha's past. It explained how the young artist had possessed incredible talent before becoming a scammer who sold fake paintings. Yoo Jaeha's eyes widened. He demanded to know where Joo-Heon had gotten all this information. Joo-Heon simply continued. He couldn't forge other people's works the way Yoo Jaeha could. But Richard could. Yoo Jaeha's expression instantly turned furious. Joo-Heon mentioned Richard's name again. Yoo Jaeha couldn't hold himself back. He lunged forward and swung his fist. Joo-Heon stopped it effortlessly. He asked whether Richard really had been copying Yoo Jaeha's work. Yoo Jaeha reluctantly admitted that he had. Joo-Heon narrowed his eyes. He asked whether copying someone's style so perfectly wasn't incredibly difficult. Yoo Jaeha nodded. Then, he explained that Richard had always possessed an unusual ability. Richard could somehow reproduce whatever appeared in his mind. It sounded impossible. But Yoo Jaeha had eventually discovered the truth. Richard wasn't doing it through talent. He was using a relic. Joo-Heon revealed that he knew exactly what kind of relic Richard possessed. It could copy almost anything. Objects, skills, knowledge, even abilities. Yoo Jaeha stared at him. Joo-Heon then held out his hand. He had the same relic. Yoo Jaeha's eyes widened. Joo-Heon offered to help him reclaim the reputation Richard had stolen. But there was one condition. Yoo Jaeha had to sign his contract. For the first time, Yoo Jaeha seriously considered it. Getting his stolen glory back was something he couldn't simply ignore. Still, he wasn't ready to agree immediately. He raised his hand and asked for some time to think. Joo-Heon wasn't bothered. He asked whether Yoo Jaeha really wanted something else. Yoo Jaeha smirked and said that he was the only person capable of helping him. Then Joo-Heon asked whether Yoo Jaeha planned to meet Tae-jun. Yoo Jaeha immediately denied it. He had absolutely no intention of doing that. Joo-Heon tossed a phone toward him. Yoo Jaeha caught it. Then Joo-Heon calmly told him that comparing him with Tae-jun was insulting. Regardless, he respected Yoo Jaeha's choice. But before Yoo Jaeha could say anything else, Joo-Heon threw a necklace toward him. Yoo Jaeha caught it. Joo-Heon explained that it was a martial arts type relic that could become extremely useful to him in the future. Yoo Jaeha stared at the necklace. He gritted his teeth. He knew exactly what Joo-Heon was doing, and unfortunately it was working. Later, Yoo Jaeha stood in front of Tae-jun's desk with his hands behind his back. Tae-jun asked what conditions he wanted. Yoo Jaeha immediately mentioned Richard. Tae-jun smiled. Of course he knew the world-famous artist. Yoo Jaeha explained the truth. Richard had been using a relic to steal his ideas and profit from them. His only condition was simple. He wanted the truth about Richard's work to be exposed. Tae-jun's expression changed. Then he suddenly laughed. Yoo Jaeha looked confused. Tae-jun wondered whether choosing Yoo Jaeha had been the right decision. He picked up his phone and called Richard. The conversation was placed on speaker. Richard's voice immediately filled the room. He asked whether his former student really wanted to die. Yoo Jaeha's face became pale. Sweat rolled down his forehead. Tae-jun casually told Richard that he would take care of the situation. Yoo Jaeha clenched his teeth. He immediately regretted coming here. He shouted that he never would have come if he had known things would turn out like this. Tae-jun smiled. Then he asked whether Yoo Jaeha had been sent here by Joo-Heon. Yoo Jaeha froze. Before he could answer, one of Tae-jun's employees grabbed him. The director calmly told him that he wasn't going anywhere until the relic was repaired. Yoo Jaeha screamed that this was kidnapping. Then, he remembered the necklace Joo-Heon had given him. He pulled it from his pocket and held it out. It was time for Tae-jun to pay. The employees looked at him suspiciously. Nothing happened. Yoo Jaeha's expression collapsed. The relic wasn't responding. The employees moved toward him. One of them raised his leg. Yoo Jaeha's eyes widened. He realized his attack had failed. But before they could strike, the office doors exploded open. Joo-Heon stormed inside. He sent the employees flying and immediately moved in front of his future partner. Yoo Jaeha stared at him in shock. Blood was dripping from Joo-Heon's nose. But Joo-Heon simply smiled. He had a feeling this would be more than enough to convince Yoo Jaeha to accept his offer.